Sati continued, thus addressed all the offspring of Kadru assembled together, and, wise in councils, submitted their opinions to one another. One party of the serpents said, we should assume the guise of superior Brahmanas, and beseech Janamejaya, saying, this, intended, sacrifice of yours ought not to take place. Other snakes thinking themselves wise, said, we should all become his favorite counselors. He will then certainly ask for our advice in all projects, and we will then give him such advice that the sacrifice may be obstructed. The king, the foremost of wise men, thinking us of sterling worth, will certainly ask us about his sacrifice. We will say, it must not be. And pointing to many serious evils in this and the next worlds, we will take care that the sacrifice may not take place. Or, let one of the snakes, approaching, bite the person who, intending the monarch's good, and well acquainted with the rites of the snake sacrifice, may be appointed as the sacrificial priest, so that he will die. The sacrificial priest dying, the sacrifice will not be completed. We will also bite all those who, acquainted with the rites of the snake sacrifice, may be appointed ritwiks of the sacrifice, and by that means attain our object. Other snakes, more virtuous and kind, said, oh, this counsel of yours is evil. It is not meet to kill Brahmanas. In danger, that remedy is proper, which is blessed on the practices of the righteous. Unrighteousness finally destroyeth the world. Other serpents said, we will extinguish the blazing sacrificial fire by ourselves becoming clouds luminous with lightning and pouring down showers. Other snakes, the best of their kind, proposed, going, by night, let us steal away the vessel of soma juice. That will disturb the right. Or, at that sacrifice, let the snakes, by hundreds and thousands, bite the people, and spread terror around. Or, let the serpents defile the pure food with their food defiling urine and dung. Others said, let us become the king's ritwiks, and obstruct his sacrifice by saying at the outset, give us the sacrificial fee. He, the king, being placed in our power, will do whatever we like. Others there said, when the king will sport in the waters, we will carry him to our home and bind him, so that that sacrifice will not take place. Other serpents who deemed themselves wise, said, approaching the king, let us bite him. So that our object will be accomplished. By his death the root of all evil will be torn up. This is the final deliberation of us all, O thou who hearest with thy eyes. Then, do speedily what thou deemest proper. Having said this, they looked intently at Vasuki, that best of snakes. And Vasuki also, after reflecting, answered saying, ye snakes, this final determination of you doth not seem worthy of adoption. The advice of you all is not to my liking. What shall I say which would be for your good? I think the grace of the illustrious Kassipa, our father, can alone do us good. Ye snakes, my heart doth not know which of all your suggestions is to be adopted, for the welfare of my race is also of me. That must be done by me which would be to your weal. It is this that makes me so anxious, for the credit or the discredit of the measure is mine alone. So ends the 37th section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva. Section 38. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, hearing the respective speeches of all the snakes, and hearing also the words of Vasuki, Elapatra began to address them, saying, that sacrifice is not one that can be prevented. Nor is King Janamejaya of the Pandava race from whom this fear proceedeth, such that he can be hindered. The person, O king, who is afflicted by fate hath recourse to fate alone, nothing else can be his refuge. Ye best of snakes, this fear of ours hath fate for its root. Fate alone must be our refuge in this. Listen to what I say. When that curse was uttered, ye best of snakes, in fear I lay crouching on the lap of our mother. Ye best of snakes, and O Lord Vasuki, of great splendor, from that place I heard the words the sorrowing gods spake unto the grandsire. The gods said, O grandsire, thou god of gods, who else than the cruel Kadru could thus, after getting such dear children, curse them so, even in thy presence? And, O grandsire, by thee also hath been spoken, with reference to those words of hers, be it so. We wish to know the reason why thou didst not prevent her. Brahman replied, the snakes have multiplied. They are cruel, terrible in form and highly poisonous. From desire of the good of my creatures, I did not prevent Kadru then. Those poisonous serpents and others who are sinful, biting others for no fault, shall, indeed, be destroyed, but not they who are harmless and virtuous. And hear also, how, when the hour comes, the snakes may escape this dreadful calamity. There shall be born in the race of the Yayavaras a great rishi known by the name of Jaratguru, intelligent, with passions under complete control. That Jaratguru shall have a son of the name of Astika. He shall put a stop to that sacrifice. And those snakes who shall be virtuous shall escape therefrom. The gods said, O thou truth-knowing one, on whom will Jaratguru, that foremost Muni, gifted with great energy and asceticism, beget that illustrious son? Brahma answered, gifted with great energy, that best Brahmana shall beget a son possessed of great energy on a wife of the same name as his. Vasuki, the king of the snakes, hath a sister of the name of Jaratguru, the son, of whom I speak, shall be born of her, and he shall liberate the snakes. Elapatra continued, the gods then said unto the grandsire, be it so. And the Lord Brahman, having said so unto the gods, went to heaven. O Vasuki, I see before me that sister of thine known by the name of Jaratguru. For relieving us from fear, give her as alms unto him, i.e., the rishi, Jaratguru, of excellent vows, who shall roam a-begging for a bride. This means of release hath been heard of by me. Section 39. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, O best of regenerate ones, hearing these words of Elipatra, all the serpents, in great delight, exclaimed, Well said, well said. And from that time Vasuki set about carefully bringing up that maiden, viz., his sister Jaraktaru. And he took great delight in rearing her. And much time did not elapse from this, when the gods and the Asuras, assembling together, churned the abode of Varuna. And Vasuki, the foremost of all gifted with strength, became the churning cord. And directly the work was over, the king of the snakes presented himself before the grandsire. And the gods, accompanied by Vasuki, addressed the grandsire, saying, O Lord, Vasuki is suffering great affliction from fear of his mother's curse. It behoveth thee to root out the sorrow, begotten of the curse of his mother, that hath pierced the heart of Vasuki desirous of the weal of his race. The king of the snakes is ever our friend and benefactor. O Lord of the gods, be gracious unto him and assuage his mind's fever. Brahman replied, O ye immortals, I have thought, in my mind, of what ye have said. Let the king of the snakes do that which hath been communicated to him before by Elipatra. The time hath arrived. Those only shall be destroyed that are wicked, not those that are virtuous. Jaraktaru hath been born, and that Brahmana is engaged in hard ascetic penances. Let Vasuki, at the proper time, bestow on him his sister. Ye gods, what hath been spoken by the snake Elipatra for the weal of the snakes is true and not otherwise. Sati continued, Then the king of the snakes, Vasuki, afflicted with the curse of his mother, hearing these words of the grandsire, and intending to bestow his sister of the Rishi Jaraktaru, commanded all the serpents, a large numbers of whom were ever attentive to their duties, to watch the Rishi Jaraktaru, saying, When the Lord Jaraktaru will ask for a wife, come immediately and inform me of it. The weal of our race depends upon it. Section XL. Adi Parva continued. Sanaka said, O son of Sudha, I desire to know the reason why the illustrious Rishi whom thou hast named Jaraktaru came to be so called on earth. It behoveth thee to tell us the etymology of the name Jaraktaru. Sati said, Hara is said to mean waste, and Karu implies huge. This Rishi's body had been huge, and he gradually reduced it by severe ascetic penances. For the same reason, O Brahmanas, the sister of Vasuki was called Jaraktaru. The virtuous Sanaka, when he heard this, smiled and addressing Ugrasravas said, It is even so. Sanaka then said, I have heard all that thou hast before recited. I desire to know how Astika was born. Sati, on hearing these words, began to relate according to what was written in the Sastras. Sati said, Vasuki, desirous of bestowing his sister upon the Rishi Jaraktaru, gave the snakes necessary orders. But days went on, yet that wise Muni of rigid vows, deeply engaged in ascetic devotions, did not seek for a wife. That high-souled Rishi, engaged in studies and deeply devoted to asceticism, his vital seed under full control, fearlessly wandered over the whole earth and had no wish for a wife. Afterwards, once upon a time, there was a king, O Brahmana, of the name of Parikshit, born in the race of the Kauravas. And, like his great-grandfather Pandu of old, he was of mighty arms, the first of all bearers of bows in battle, and fond of hunting. And the monarch wandered about, hunting deer, and wild boars, and wolves, and buffaloes and various other kinds of wild animals. One day, having pierced a deer with a sharp arrow and slung his bow on his back, he penetrated into the deep forest, searching for the animal here and there, like the illustrious Rudra himself of old pursuing in the heavens, bow in hand. The deer which was sacrificed, itself turned into that shape, after the piercing. No deer that was pierced by Parikshit had ever escaped in the wood with life. This deer, however wounded as before, fled with speed, as the proximate cause of the king's attainment to heaven. And the deer that Parikshit, that king of men, had pierced was lost to his gaze and drew the monarch far away into the forest. And fatigued and thirsty, he came across a Muni, in the forest, seated in a cow pen and drinking to his fill the froth oozing out of the mouths of calves sucking the milk of their dams. And approaching him hastily, the monarch, hungry and fatigued, and raising his bow, asked that Muni of rigid vows, saying, O Brahmana, I am King Parikshit, the son of Abhimanyu. The deer pierced by me hath been lost. Hast thou seen it? But that Muni, observing then the vow of silence, spoke not unto him a word. And the king in anger thereupon placed upon his shoulder a dead snake, taking it up with the end of his bow. The Muni suffered him to do it without protest, and he spoke not a word, good or bad. And the king, seeing him in that state, cast off his anger and became sorry. And he returned to his capital, but the Rishi continued in the same state. The forgiving Muni, knowing that the monarch who was a tiger amongst kings was true to the duties of his order, cursed him not though insulted. That tiger amongst monarchs, that foremost one of Bharata's race, also did not know that the person whom he had so insulted was a virtuous Rishi. It was for this that he had so insulted him. That Rishi had a son by name Sringan, of tender years, gifted with great energy, deep in ascetic penances, severe in his vows, very wrathful, and difficult to be appeased. At times, he worshipped with great attention and respect his preceptor seated with ease on his seat and ever engaged in the good of creatures. And commanded by his preceptor, he was coming home when, O best of Brahmanas, a companion of his, a Rishi's son named Krisa in a playful mood laughingly spoke unto him. And Sringan, wrathful and like unto poison itself, hearing these words in reference to his father, blazed up in rage. And Krisa said, Be not proud, O Sringan, for ascetic as thou art and possessed of energy, thy father bears on his shoulders a dead snake. Henceforth speak not a word to sons of rishis like ourselves who have knowledge of the truth, are deep in ascetic penances, and have attained success. Where is that manliness of thine, those high words of thine begotten of pride, when thou must have to behold thy father bearing a dead snake? O best of all the munis, thy father too had done nothing to deserve this treatment, and it is for this that I am particularly sorry as if the punishment were mine. Section Xli. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, being thus addressed, and hearing that his sire was bearing a dead snake, the powerful Shringan burned with wrath. And looking at Krisa, and speaking softly, he asked him, Pray, why doth my father bear today a dead snake? And Krisa replied, even as King Parikshit was roving, for purpose of hunting, O dear one, he placed the dead snake on the shoulder of thy sire. And Shringan asked, what wrong was done to that wicked monarch by my father? O Krisa, tell me this, and witness the power of my asceticism. And Krisa answered, King Parikshit, the son of Abhimanyu, while hunting, had wounded a fleet stag with an arrow and chased it alone. And the king lost sight of the animal in that extensive wilderness. Seeing then thy sire, he immediately accosted him. Thy sire was then observing the vow of silence. Oppressed by hunger, thirst and labor, the prince again and again asked thy sire sitting motionless, about the missing deer. The sage being under the vow of silence, returned no reply. The king thereupon placed the snake on thy sire's shoulder with the end of his bow. O Shringan, thy sire engaged in devotion is in the same posture still. And the king also hath gone to his capital which is named after the elephant. Sati continued, having heard of a dead snake placed upon his father's shoulders, the son of the rishi, his eyes reddened with anger, blazed up with rage. And possessed by anger, the puissant rishi then cursed the king, touching water and overcome with wrath. And Shringan said, that sinful wretch of a monarch who hath placed a dead snake on the shoulders of my lean and old parent, that insulter of Brahmanas and tarnisher of the fame of the Kuras, shall be taken within 7 nights hence to the regions of Yama, death, by the snake Takshaka, the powerful king of serpents, stimulated thereto by the strength of my words. Sati continued, and having thus cursed the king, from anger, Shringan went to his father, and saw the sage sitting in the cow pen, bearing the dead snake. And seeing his parent in that plight, he was again inflamed with ire. And he shed tears of grief, and addressed his sire, saying, Father, having been informed of this thy disgrace at the hands of that wicked wretch, King Parikshit, I have from anger even cursed him, and that worst of Kuras hath richly deserved my potent curse. 7 days hence, Takshaka, the lord of snakes, shall take the sinful king to the horrible abode of death. And the father said to the enraged son, Child, I am not pleased with thee. Ascetics should not act thus. We live in the domains of that great king. We are protected by him righteously. In all he does, the reigning king should by the like of us forgiven. If thou destroy Dharma, verily Dharma will destroy thee. If the king do not properly protect us, we fare very ill, we cannot perform our religious rites according to our desire. But protected by righteous sovereigns, we attain immense merit, and they are entitled to a share thereof. Therefore, reigning royalty is by all means to be forgiven. And Parikshit like unto his great-grandsire, protecteth us as a king should protect his subjects. That penance-practicing monarch was fatigued and oppressed with hunger. Ignorant of my vow, of silence, he did this. A kingless country always suffereth from evils. The king punisheth offenders, and fear of punishments conducteth to peace, and people do their duties and perform their rites undisturbed. The king establisheth religion, establisheth the kingdom of heaven. The king protecteth sacrifices from disturbance, and sacrifices to please the gods. The gods cause rain, and rain produce grains and herbs, which are always useful to man. Manu saith, a ruler of the destinies of men is equal, in dignity, to 10 Veda studying priests. Fatigued and oppressed with hunger, that penance-practicing prince hath done this through ignorance of my vow. Why then hast thou rashly done this unrighteous action through childishness? O son, in no way doth the king deserve a curse from us. Section Xlii. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, and Shringan then replied to his father, saying, whether this be an act of rashness, O father, or an improper act that I have done, whether thou likest it or dislikest it, the words spoken by me shall never be in vain. O father, I tell thee, a curse can never be otherwise. I have never spoken a lie even in jest. And Samika said, Dear child, I know that thou art of great prowess, and truthful in speech. Thou hast never spoken falsehood before, so that thy curse shall never be falsified. The son, even when he attaineth to age, should yet be always counseled by the father, so that crowned with good qualities he may acquire great renown. A child as thou art, how much more dost thou stand in need of counsel? Thou art ever engaged in ascetic penances. The wrath of even the illustrious ones possessing the 6 attributes increaseth greatly. O thou foremost of ordinance-observing persons, seeing that thou art my son and a minor too, and beholding also thy rashness, I see that I must counsel thee. Live thou, O son, inclined to peace and eating fruits and roots of the forest. Kill this thy anger and destroy not the fruit of thy ascetic acts in this way. Wrath surely decreaseth the virtue that ascetics acquire with great pains. And then for those deprived of virtue, the blessed state existeth not. Peacefulness ever giveth success to forgiving ascetics. Therefore, becoming forgiving in thy temper and conquering thy passions, shouldst thou always live. By forgiveness shalt thou obtain worlds that are beyond the reach of Brahman himself. Having adopted peacefulness myself, and with a desire also for doing good as much as lies in my power, I must do something, even must I send to that king, telling him, O monarch, thou hast been cursed by my son of tender years and undeveloped intellect, in wrath, at seeing thy act of disrespect towards myself. Sati continued, and that great ascetic, observer of vows, moved by kindness, sent with proper instructions a disciple of his to King Parikshit. And he sent his disciple Gormukha of good manners and engaged also in ascetic penances, instructing him to first inquire about the welfare of the king and then to communicate the real message. And that disciple soon approached that monarch, the head of the Kuru race. And he entered the king's palace, having first sent notice of his arrival through the servant in attendance at the gate. And the twice-born Gormukha was duly worshipped by the monarch. And after resting for a while, he detailed fully to the king, in the presence of his ministers, the words of Samika, of cruel import, exactly as he had been instructed. And Gormukha said, O king of kings, there is a rishi, Samika, by name, of virtuous soul, his passions under control, peaceful, and given up to hard ascetic devotions, living in thy dominions. By thee, O tiger among men, was placed on the shoulders of that rishi observing at present the vow of silence, a dead snake, with the end of thy bow. He himself forgave thee that act. But his son could not. And by the latter hast thou today been cursed, O king of kings, without the knowledge of his father, to the effect that within 7 nights hence shall the snake Takshaka cause thy death. And Samika repeatedly asked his son to save thee, but there is none to falsify his son's curse. And because he hath been unable to pacify his son possessed by anger, therefore have I been sent to thee, O king, for thy good. And that king of the Kuru race, himself engaged in ascetic practices, having heard these cruel words and recollecting his own sinful act, became exceedingly sorry. And the king, learning that foremost of rishis in the forest had been observing the vow of silence, was doubly afflicted with sorrow, and seeing the kindness of the rishi Samika, and considering his own sinful act towards him, the king became very repentant. And the king, looking like a very god, did not grieve so much for hearing of his death as for having done that act to the rishi. And then the king sent away Gormukha, saying, Let the worshipful one, Samika, be gracious to me. And when Gormukha had gone away, the king, in great anxiety, without loss of time, consulted his ministers. And having consulted them, the king, himself wise in counsels, caused a mansion to be erected upon one solitary column. It was well guarded day and night, and for its protection were placed there physicians and medicines, and Brahmanas skilled in mantras all around. And the monarch, protected on all sides, discharged his kingly duties from that place surrounded by his virtuous ministers. And no one could approach that best of kings there. The air even could not go there, being prevented from entering. And when the 7th day had arrived, that best of Brahmanas, the learned Kasyapa, was coming towards the king's residence, desirous of treating the king, after the snake bite. He had heard all that had taken place, viz. that Takshaka, that first of snakes, would send that best of monarchs to the presence of Yama, death. And he thought, I would cure the monarch after he is bit by that first of snakes. By that I may have wealth and may acquire virtue also. But that prince of snakes, Takshaka, in the form of an old Brahmana, saw Kasyapa approaching on his way, his heart set upon curing the king. And the prince of snakes then spake unto that bull among munis, Kasyapa, saying, Whither dost thou go with such speed? What besides is the business upon which thou art intent? And Kasyapa, thus addressed, replied, Takshaka, by his poison, will today burn King Parikshit of the Kuru race, that oppressor of all enemies. I go with speed, O amiable one, to cure, without loss of time, the king of immeasurable prowess, the sole representative of the Pandava race, after he is bit by the same Takshaka like to Agni himself in energy. And Takshaka answered, I am that Takshaka, O Brahmana, who shall burn that lord of the earth. Stop, for thou art unable to cure one bit by me. And Kasyapa rejoined, I am sure that, possessed, that I am, of the power of learning, going thither I shall cure that monarch bit by thee. Section Xlii. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, and Takshaka, after this, answered, If, indeed, thou art able to cure any creature bitten by me, then, O Kasyapa, revive thou this tree bit by me. O best of Brahmanas, I burn this banyan in thy sight. Try thy best and show me that skill in mantras of which thou hast spoken. And Kasyapa said, If thou art so minded, bite thou then, O king of snakes, this tree. O snake, I shall revive it though bit by thee. Sati continued, that king of snakes, thus addressed by the illustrious Kasyapa, bit then that banyan tree. And that tree, bit by the illustrious snake, and penetrated by the poison of the serpent, blazed up all around. And having burnt the banyan so, the snake then spake again unto Kasyapa, saying, O first of Brahmanas, try thy best and revive this lord of the forest. Sati continued, the tree was reduced to ashes by the poison of that king of snakes. But taking up those ashes, Kasyapa spoke these words, O king of snakes, behold the power of my knowledge is applied to this lord of the forest. O snake, under thy very nose I shall revive it. And then that best of Brahmanas, the illustrious and learned Kasyapa, revived by his vidya that tree which had been reduced to a heap of ashes. And first he created the sprout, then he furnished it with 2 leaves, and then he made the stem, and then the branches, and then the full-grown tree with leaves and all. And Takshaka, seeing the tree revived by the illustrious Kasyapa, said unto him, It is not wonderful in thee that thou shouldst destroy my poison or that of any one else like myself. O thou whose wealth is asceticism, desirous of what wealth goest thou thither? The reward thou hopest to have from that best of monarchs, even I will give thee, however difficult it may be to obtain it. Decked with fame as thou art, thy success may be doubtful on that king affected by a Brahmana's curse and whose span of life itself hath been shortened. In that case, this blazing fame of thine that hath overspread the three worlds will disappear like the sun when deprived of his splendor, on the occasion of the eclipse. Kassipa said, I go there for wealth, give it unto me, O snake, so that taking thy gold, I may return. Takshaka replied, O best of regenerate ones, even I will give thee more than what thou expectest from that king. Therefore do not go. Sati continued, that best of Brahmanas, Kassipa, of great prowess and intelligence, hearing those words of Takshaka, sat in yoga meditation over the king. And that foremost of Munis, viz. Kassipa, of great prowess and gifted with spiritual knowledge, ascertaining that the period of life of that king of the Pandava race had really run out, returned, receiving from Takshaka as much wealth as he desired. And upon the illustrious Kassipa's retracing his steps, Takshaka at the proper time speedily entered the city of Hastinapura. And on his way he heard that the king was living very cautiously, protected by means of poison-neutralizing mantras and medicines. Sati continued, the snake thereupon reflected thus, the monarch must be deceived by me with power of illusion. But what must be the means? Then Takshaka sent to the king some snakes in the guise of ascetics, taking with them fruits, kusa grass, and water, as presents. And Takshaka, addressing them, said, Go ye all to the king, on the pretext of pressing business, without any sign of impatience, as if to make the monarch only accept the fruits and flowers and water that ye shall carry as presents unto him. Sati continued, those snakes, thus commanded by Takshaka, acted accordingly. And they took to the king, kusa grass and water, and fruits. And that foremost of kings, of great prowess, accepted those offerings. And after their business was finished, he said up to them, Retire. Then after those snakes disguised as ascetics had gone away, the king addressed his ministers and friends, saying, Eat ye, with me, all these fruits of excellent taste brought by the ascetics. Impelled by fate in the words of the rishi, the king, with his ministers, felt the desire of eating those fruits. The particular fruit, within which Takshaka had entered, was taken by the king himself for eating. And when he was eating it there appeared, O Sanaka, an ugly insect out of it, of shape scarcely discernible, of eyes black, and of coppery color. And that foremost of kings, taking that insect, addressed his counselors, saying, The sun is setting, today I have no more tear from poison. Therefore, let this insect become Takshaka and bite me, so that my sinful act may be expiated and the words of the ascetic rendered true. And those counselors also, impelled by fate, approved of that speech. And then the monarch smiled, losing his senses, his hour having come. And he quickly placed that insect on his neck. And as the king was smiling, Takshaka, who had, in the form of that insect, come out of the fruit that had been offered to the king, coiled himself round the neck of the monarch. And quickly coiling round the king's neck and uttering a tremendous roar, Takshaka, that lord of snakes, bit that protector of the earth. Section Xlvi. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, Then the counselors beholding the king in the coils of Takshaka, became pale with fear and wept in exceeding grief. And hearing the roar of Takshaka, the ministers all fled. And as they were flying away in great grief, they saw Takshaka, the king of snakes, that wonderful serpent, coursing through the blue sky like a streak of the hue of the lotus, and looking very much like the vermilion-colored line on a woman's crown dividing the dark masses of her hair in the middle. And the mansion in which the king was living blazed up with Takshaka's poison. And the king's counselors, on beholding it, fled away in all directions. And the king himself fell down, as if struck by lightning. And when the king was laid low by Takshaka's poison, his counselors with the royal priest a holy Brahmana performed all his last rites. All the citizens, assembling together, made the minor son of the deceased monarch their king. And the people called their new king, that slayer of all enemies, that hero of the Kuru race, by the name of Janamejaya. And that best of monarchs, Janamejaya, though a child, was wise in mind. And with his counselors and priests, the eldest son Parikshita, that bull amongst the Kurus, ruled the kingdom like his heroic great-grandfather, Yudhishthira. And the ministers of the youthful monarch, beholding that he could now keep his enemies in check, went to Suvarnavarman, the king of Kasi, and asked him his daughter Vapushtama for a bride. And the king of Kasi, after due inquiries, bestowed with ordained rites, his daughter Vapushtama on that mighty hero of Kuru race. And the latter, receiving his bride, became exceedingly glad. And he gave not his heart at any time to any other woman. And gifted with great energy, he wandered in pursuit of pleasure, with a cheerful heart, on expanses of water and amid woods and flowery fields. And that first of monarchs passed his time in pleasure as Pururavas of old did, on receiving the celestial damsel Urvasi. Herself fairest of the fair, the damsel Vapushtama too, devoted to her lord and celebrated for her beauty, having gained a desirable husband, pleased him by the excess of her affection during the period he spent in the pursuit of pleasure. Section Xlvi. Astika Parva continued. Meanwhile the great ascetic Jaratguru wandered over the whole earth, making the place where evening fell his home for the night. And gifted with ascetic power, he roamed, practicing various vows difficult to be practiced by the immature, and bathing also in various sacred waters. And the Muni had air alone for his food and was free from desire of worldly enjoyment. And he became daily emaciated and grew lean-fleshed. And one day he saw the spirits of his ancestors, heads down, in a hole, by a cord of Varana roots having only one thread entire. and that even single thread was being gradually eaten away by a large rat dwelling in that hole. And the Pitris in that hole were without food, emaciated, pitiable, and eagerly desirous of salvation. And Jaraktaru, approaching the pitiable one, himself in humble guise, asked them, Who are ye hanging by this cord of Varana roots? The single weak root that is still left in this cord of Varana roots already eaten away by the rat dwelling in this hole, is itself being gradually eaten away by the same rat with his sharp teeth. The little that remains of that single thread will soon be cut away. It is clear ye shall then have to fall down into this pit with faces downwards. Seeing you with faces downwards, and overtaken by this great calamity, my pity hath been excited. What good can I do to you? Tell me quickly whether this calamity can be averted by a fourth, a third, or even by the sacrifice of a half of this my asceticism. Oh, relieve yourselves even with the whole of my asceticism. I consent to all this. Do ye as ye please. The Pitris said, Venerable Brahmacharan, thou desirest to relieve us. But, O foremost of Brahmanas, thou canst not dispel our affliction by thy asceticism. O child, O first of speakers, we too have the fruits of our asceticism. But, O Brahmana, it is for the loss of children that we are falling down into this unholy hell. The grandsire himself hath said that a son is a great merit. As we are about to be cast in this hole, our ideas are no longer clear. Therefore, O child, we know thee not, although thy manhood is well known on earth. Venerable thou art and of good fortune, thou who thus from kindness grievest for us worthy of pity and greatly afflicted. O Brahmana, listen, who we are. We are rishis of the Yayavara sect, of rigid vows. And, O Muni, from loss of children, we have fallen down from a sacred region. Our severe penances have not been destroyed, we have a thread yet. But we have only one thread now. It matters little, however, whether he is or is not. Unfortunate as we are, we have a thread in one, known as Jaraktaru. The unfortunate one has gone through the Vedas and their branches and is practicing asceticism alone. He being one with soul under complete control, desires set high, observant of vows, deeply engaged in ascetic penances, and free from greed for the merits or asceticism, we have been reduced to this deplorable state. He hath no wife, no son, no relatives. Therefore, do we hang in this hole, our consciousness lost, like men having none to take care of them. If thou meetst him, oh, tell him, from thy kindness to ourselves, thy Pitris, in sorrow, are hanging with faces downwards in a hole. Holy one, take a wife and beget children. O thou of ascetic wealth, thou art, O amiable one, the only thread that remaineth in the line of thy ancestors. O Brahmana, the cord of Varana roots that thou seest we are hanging by, is the cord representing our multiplied race. And, O Brahmana, these threads of the cord of Varana roots that thou seest is eaten away, are ourselves who have been eaten up by time. This root thou seest hath been half eaten, and by which we are hanging in this hole is he that hath adopted asceticism alone. The rat that thou beholdest is time of infinite strength, and he, time, is gradually weakening the wretch Jaraktaru engaged in ascetic penances tempted by the merits thereof but wanting in prudence and heart. O excellent one, his asceticism cannot save us. Behold, our roots being torn, cast down from higher regions, deprived of consciousness by time, we are going downwards like sinful wretches. And upon our going down into this hole with all our relatives, eaten up by time, even he shall sink with us into hell. O child, whether it is asceticism, or sacrifice, or whatever else there be of very holy acts, everything is inferior. These cannot count with a son. O child, having seen all, speak unto that Jaraktaru of ascetic wealth. Thou shouldst tell him in detail everything that thou hast beheld. And, O Brahmana, from thy kindness towards us, thou shouldst tell him all that would induce him to take a wife and beget children. Amongst his friends, or of our own race, who art thou, O excellent one, that thus grievest for us all like a friend? We wish to hear who thou art that stayest here. Section Xlvi. Adi Parva continued. Sati said, Jaraktaru, hearing all this, became excessively dejected. And from sorrow he spoke unto those Pitris in words obstructed by tears. And Jaraktaru said, Ye are even my fathers and grandfathers gone before. Therefore, tell me what I must do for your welfare. I am that sinful son of yours, Jaraktaru. Punish me for my sinful deeds, a wretch that I am. The Pitris replied, saying, O son, by good luck hast thou arrived at this spot in course of thy rambles. O Brahmana, why hast thou not taken a wife? Jaraktaru said, Ye Pitris, this desire hath always existed in my heart that I would, with vital seed drawn up, carry this body to the other world. My mind hath been possessed with the idea that I would not take a wife. But ye grandsires, having seen you hanging like birds, I have diverted my mind from the Brahmacharya mode of life. I will truly do what you like. I will certainly marry, if ever I meet with a maiden of my own name. I shall accept her who, bestowing herself of her own accord, will be as aims unto me, and whom I shall not have to maintain. I shall marry if I get such a one, otherwise, I shall not. This is the truth, ye grandsires. And the offspring that will be begot upon her shall be your salvation. And ye Pitris of mine, ye shall live forever in blessedness and without fear. Sati continued, the Muni, having said so unto the Pitris, wandered over the earth again. And, O Sanaka, being old, he obtained no wife. And he grieved much that he was not successful. But directed, as before, by his ancestors, he continued the search. And going into the forest, he wept loudly in great grief. And having gone into the forest, the wise one, moved by the desire of doing good to his ancestors, said, I will ask for a bride, distinctly repeating these words thrice. And he said, whatever creatures are here, mobile and immobile, so whoever there be that are invisible, oh, hear my words. My ancestors, afflicted with grief, have directed me that am engaged in the most severe penances, saying, marry thou for the acquisition of a son. O ye, being directed by my ancestors, I am roaming in poverty and sorrow over the wide world for wedding a maiden that I may obtain as alms. Let that creature, amongst those I have addressed, who hath a daughter, bestow on me that am roaming far and near. Such a bride as is of same name with me, to be bestowed on me as alms, and whom, besides, I shall not maintain, will bestow on me. Then those snakes that had been set upon Jaratkaru's track, ascertaining his inclination, gave information to Vasuki. And the king of the snakes, hearing their words, took with him that maiden decked with ornaments, and went into the forest unto that rishi. And, O Brahmana, Vasuki, the king of the snakes, having gone there, offered that maiden as alms unto that high-souled rishi. But the rishi did not at once accept her. And the rishi, thinking her not to be of the same name with himself, and seeing that the question of her maintenance also was unsettled, reflected for a few moments, hesitating to accept her. And then, O son of Bhrigu, he asked Vasuki the maiden's name, and also said unto him, I shall not maintain her. Section Xlvi. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, then Vasuki spake unto the rishi Jaratkaru these words, O best of Brahmanas, this maiden is of the same name with thee. She is my sister and hath ascetic merit. I will maintain thy wife, accept her. O thou of ascetic wealth, I shall protect her with all my ability. And, O foremost of the great munis, she hath been reared by me for thee. And the rishi replied, this is agreed between us that I shall not maintain her, and she shall not do aught that I do not like. If she do, I leave her. Sati continued, when the snake had promised, saying, I shall maintain my sister, Jaratkaru then went to the snake's house. Then that first of mantra-knowing Brahmanas, observing rigid vows, that virtuous and veteran ascetic, took her hand presented to him according to Shastric rites. And taking his bride with him, adored by the great rishi, he entered the delightful chamber set apart for him by the king of the snakes. And in that chamber was a bedstead covered with very valuable coverlets. And Jaratkaru lived there with his wife. And the excellent rishi made an agreement with his wife, saying, nothing must ever be done or said by thee that is against my liking. And in case of thy doing any such thing, I will leave thee and no longer continue to stay in thy house. Bear in mind these words that have been spoken by me. And then the sister of the king of the snakes in great anxiety and grieving exceedingly, spoke unto him, saying, be it so. And moved by the desire of doing good to her relatives, that damsel, of unsullied reputation, began to attend upon her lord with the wakefulness of a dog, the timidity of a deer, and knowledge of signs possessed by the crow. And one day, after the menstrual period, the sister of Vasuki, having purified herself by a bath according to custom, approached her lord the great Muni, and thereupon she conceived. And the embryo was like unto a flame of fire, possessed of great energy, and resplendent as fire itself. And it grew like the moon in the bright fortnight. And one day, within a short time, Jaratkaru of great fame, placing his head on the lap of his wife, slept looking like one fatigued. And as he was sleeping, the sun entered his chambers in the western mountain and was about to set. And, O Brahmana, as the day was fading, she, the excellent sister of Vasuki, became thoughtful, fearing the loss of her husband's virtue. And she thought, what should I now do? Shall I wake my husband or not? He is exacting and punctilious in his religious duties. How can I act as not to offend him? The alternatives are his anger and the loss of virtue of a virtuous man. The loss of virtue, I ween, is the greater of the two evils. Again, if I wake him, he will be angry. But if twilight passeth away without his prayers being said, he shall certainly sustain loss of virtue. And having resolved at last, the sweet-speeched Jaratkaru, the sister of Vasuki, spake softly unto that rishi resplendent with ascetic penances, and lying prostrate like a flame of fire, O thou of great good fortune, awake, the sun is setting. O thou of rigid vows, O illustrious one, do your evening prayer after purifying yourself with water and uttering the name of Vishnu. The time for the evening sacrifice hath come. Twilight, O Lord, is even now gently covering the western side. The illustrious Jaratkaru of great ascetic merit, thus addressed, spake unto his wife these words, his upper lip quivering in anger, O amiable one of the Naga race, thou hast insulted me. I shall no longer abide with thee, but shall go where I came from. O thou of beautiful thighs, I believe in my heart that the sun hath no power to set in the usual time, if I am asleep. An insulted person should never live where he hath met with the insult, far less should I, a virtuous person, or those that are like me. Jaratkaru, the sister of Vasuki, thus addressed by her lord, began to quake with terror, and she spake unto him, saying, O Brahmana, I have not waked thee from desire of insult, but I have done it so that thy virtue may not sustain any loss. The rishi Jaratkaru, great in ascetic merit, possessed with anger and desirous of forsaking his spouse, thus addressed, spake unto his wife, saying, O thou fair one, never have I spoken a falsehood. Therefore, go I shall. This was also settled between ourselves. O amiable one, I have passed the time happily with thee. And, O fair one, tell thy brother, when I am gone, that I have left thee. And upon my going away, it behoveth thee not to grieve for me. Thus addressed Jaratkaru, the fair sister of Vasuki, of faultless features, filled with anxiety and sorrow, having mustered sufficient courage and patience, though her heart was still quaking, then spake unto Rishi Jaratkaru. Her words were obstructed with tears and her face was pale with fear. And the palms of her hands were joined together, and her eyes were bathed in tears. And she said, It behoveth thee not to leave me without a fault. Thou treadest over the path of virtue. I too have been in the same path, with heart fixed on the good of my relatives. O best of Brahmanas, the object for which I was bestowed on thee hath not been accomplished yet. Unfortunate that I am, what shall the Suki say unto me? O excellent one, the offspring desired of by my relatives afflicted by a mother's curse do not yet appear. The welfare of my relatives dependeth on the acquisition of offspring from thee. And in order that my connection with thee may not be fruitless, O illustrious Brahmana, moved by the desire of doing good to my race do I entreat thee. O excellent one, high-souled thou art, so why shalt thou leave me faultless? This is what is not just clear to me. Thus addressed, the Muni of great ascetic merit spake unto his wife Jaratkaru these words that were proper and suitable to the occasion. And he said, O fortunate one, the being thou hast conceived, even like unto Agni himself, is a rishi of soul highly virtuous, and a master of the Vedas and their branches. Having said so, the great rishi, Jaratkaru of virtuous soul, went away, his heart firmly fixed on practicing again the severest penances. Section Xlvi. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, O thou of ascetic wealth, soon after her lord had left her, Jaratkaru went to her brother. And she told him everything that had happened. And the prince of snakes, hearing the calamitous news, spake unto his miserable sister, himself more miserable still. And he said, Thou knowest, O amiable one, the purpose of thy bestowal, the reason thereof. If from that union, for the welfare of the snakes, a son be born, then he, possessed of energy, will save us all from the snake sacrifice. The grandsire had said so, of old, in the midst of the gods. O fortunate one, hast thou conceived from thy union with that best of rishis? My heart's desire is that my bestowal of thee on that wise one may not be fruitless. Truly, it is not proper for me to ask thee about this. But from the gravity of the interests I ask thee this. Knowing also the obstinacy of thy lord, ever engaged in severe penances, I shall not follow him, for he may curse me. Tell me in detail all that thy lord, O amiable one, hath done, and extract that terribly afflicting dart that lies implanted for a long time past in my heart. Jaratkaru, thus addressed, consoling the Suki, the king of the snakes, at length replied, saying, Asked by me about offspring, the high-souled and mighty ascetic said, There is, and then he went away. I do not remember him to have ever before speak even in jest out that is false. Why should he, O king, speak a falsehood on such a serious occasion? He said, Thou shouldst not grieve, O daughter of the snake race, about the intended result of our union. A son shall be born to thee, resplendent as the blazing sun. O brother, having said this to me, my husband of ascetic wealth went away, therefore, let the deep sorrow cherished in thy heart disappear. Sati continued, thus addressed Vasuki, the king of the snakes, accepted those words of his sister, and in great joy said, Be it so. And the chief of the snakes then adored his sister with his best regards, gift of wealth, and fitting eulogies. Then, O best of Brahmanas, the embryo endued with great splendor, began to develop, like the moon in the heavens in the bright fortnight. And in due time, the sister of the snakes, O Brahmana, gave birth to a son of the splendor of a celestial child, who became the reliever of the fears of his ancestors and maternal relatives. The child grew up there in the house of the king of the snakes. He studied the Vedas and their branches with the ascetic Chiyavana, the son of Bhrigu. And though but a boy, his vows were rigid. And he was gifted with great intelligence, and with the several attributes of virtue, knowledge, freedom from the world's indulgences, and saintliness. And the name by which he was known to the world was Astika. And he was known by the name of Astika, whoever is, because his father had gone to the woods, saying, Their eyes, when he was in the womb. Though but a boy, he had great gravity and intelligence. And he was reared with great care in the palace of the snakes. And he was like the illustrious lord of the celestials, Mahadeva of the golden form, the wielder of the trident. And he grew up day by day, the delight of all the snakes. Section XLIX. Astika Parva continued. Sanaka said, Tell me again, in detail, all that King Janamejaya had asked his ministers about his father's ascension to heaven. Sati said, O Brahmana, hear all that the king asked his ministers, and all that they said about the death of Parikshit. Janamejaya asked, Know ye all that befell my father? How did that famous king, in time, meet with his death? Hearing from you the incidents of my father's life in detail, I shall ordain something, if it be for the benefit of the world. Otherwise, I shall do nothing. The minister replied, Hear, O monarch, what thou hast asked, viz., an account of thy illustrious father's life, and how also that king of kings left this world. Thy father was virtuous and high-souled, and always protected his people. Oh, hear, how that high-souled one conducted himself on earth. Like unto an impersonation of virtue and justice, the monarch, cognizant of virtue, virtuously protected the four orders, each engaged in the discharge of their specified duties. Of incomparable prowess, and blessed with fortune, he protected the goddess earth. There was none who hated him, and he himself hated none. Like unto Prajapati, Brahma, he was equally disposed towards all creatures. O monarch, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaisyas and Sudras, all engaged contentedly in the practice of their respective duties, were impartially protected by that king. Widows and orphans, the maimed and the poor, he maintained. Of handsome features, he was unto all creatures like a second Soma. Cherishing his subjects and keeping them contented, blessed with good fortune, truth-telling, of immense prowess, he was the disciple of Saradwat in the science of arms. And, O Janamejaya, thy father was dear unto Govinda. Of great fame, he was loved by all men. And he was born in the womb of Uttara when the Kuru race was almost extinct. And, therefore, the mighty son of Abhimanyu came to be called Parikshit, born in an extinct line. Well versed in the interpretation of treatises on the duties of kings, he was gifted with every virtue. With passions under complete control, intelligent, possessing a retentive memory, the practicer of all virtues, the conqueror of his 6 passions of powerful mind, surpassing all, and fully acquainted with the science of morality and political science, the father had ruled over these subjects for 60 years. And he then died, mourned by all his subjects. And, after him, O first of men, thou hast acquired this hereditary kingdom of the Kurus for the last 1,000 years. Thou wast installed while a child, and art thus protecting every creature. Janamejaya said, There hath not been born in our race a king who hath not sought the good of his subjects or been loved by them. Behold especially the conduct of my grandsires ever engaged in great achievements. How did my father, blessed with many virtues, meet with his death? Describe everything to me as it happened. I am desirous of hearing it from you. Sati continued, thus directed by the monarch, those counselors, ever solicitous of the good of the king, told him everything exactly as it had occurred. And the counselors said, O king, that father of thine, that protector of the whole earth, that foremost of all persons obedient to the scriptures, became addicted to the sports of the field, even as Pandu of mighty arms, that foremost of all bearers of the bow in battle. He made over to us all the affairs of state from the most trivial to the most important. One day, going into the forest, he pierced a deer with an arrow. And having pierced it, he followed it quickly on foot into the deep woods, armed with sword and quiver. He could not, however, come upon the lost deer. 60 years of age and decrepit, he was soon fatigued and became hungry. He then saw in the deep woods a high-souled rishi. The rishi was then observing the vow of silence. The king asked him about the deer, but though asked, he made no reply. At last the king, already tired with exertion and hunger, suddenly became angry with that rishi sitting motionless like a piece of wood in observance of his vow of silence. Indeed, the king knew not that he was a muni observing the vow of silence. Swayed by anger, thy father insulted him. O excellent one of the Bharata race, the king, thy father taking up from the ground with the end of his bow a dead snake placed it on the shoulders of that muni of pure soul. But the muni spake not a word good or bad and was without anger. He continued in the same posture, bearing the dead snake. Section L. Astika Parva continued. Sati continued, the ministers said, that king of kings then, spent with hunger and exertion, and having placed the snake upon the shoulders of that muni, came back to his capital. The muni had a son, born of a cow, of the name of Sringan. He was widely known, possessed of great prowess and energy, and very wrathful. Going, every day, to his preceptor he was in the habit of worshipping him. Commanded by him, Sringan was returning home, when he heard from a friend of his about the insult of his father by thy parent. And, O tiger among kings, he heard that his father, without having committed any fault, was bearing, motionless like a statue, upon his shoulders a dead snake placed thereon. O king, the rishi insulted by thy father was severe in ascetic penances, the foremost of munis, the controller of passions, pure, and ever engaged in wonderful acts. His soul was enlightened with ascetic penances, and his organs and their functions were under complete control. His practices and his speech were both very nice. He was contented and without avarice. He was without meanness of any kind and without envy. He was old and used to observe the vow of silence. And he was the refuge whom all creatures might seek in distress. Such was the rishi insulted by thy father. The son, however, of that rishi, in wrath cursed thy father. Though young in years, the powerful one was old in ascetic splendor. Speedily touching water, he spake burning as it were with spiritual energy and rage these words in allusion to thy father, behold the power of my asceticism. Directed by my words, the snake Takshaka of powerful energy and virulent poison, shall, within 7 nights hence, burn, with his poison the wretch that hath placed the dead snake upon my unoffending father. And having said this, he went to where his father was. And seeing his father he told him of his curse. The tiger among rishis thereupon sent to thy father a disciple of his, named Gormukha, of amiable manners and possessed of every virtue. And having rested a while, after arrival at court, he told the king everything, saying in the words of his master, Thou hast been cursed, O king, by my son. Takshaka shall burn thee with his poison. Therefore, O king, be careful. O Janamejaya, hearing those terrible words, thy father took every precaution against the powerful snake Takshaka. And when the 7th day had arrived, a Brahmana rishi, named Kassipa, desired to come to the monarch. But the snake Takshaka saw Kassipa. And the prince of snakes spake unto Kassipa without loss of time, saying, Where dost thou go so quickly, and what is the business on which thou goest? Kassipa replied, saying, O Brahmana, I am going whither King Parikshit, that best of the Kurus, is. He shall today be burnt by the poison of the snake Takshaka. I go there quickly in order to cure him, in fact, in order that, protected by me, the snake may not bite him to death. Takshaka answered, saying, Why dost thou seek to revive the king to be bidden by me? I am that Takshaka. O Brahmana, behold the wonderful power of my poison. Thou art incapable of reviving that monarch when bid by me. So saying, Takshaka, then and there, bid a lord of the forest, a banyan tree. And the banyan, as soon as it was bid by the snake, was converted into ashes. But Kassapa, O king, revived it. Takshaka thereupon tempted him, saying, Tell me thy desire. And Kassapa, too, thus addressed, spake again unto Takshaka, saying, I go there from desire of wealth. And Takshaka, thus addressed, then spake unto the high-souled Kassapa in these soft words, O sinless one, take from me more wealth than what thou expectest from that monarch, and go back. And Kassapa, that foremost of men, thus addressed by the snake, and receiving from him as much wealth as he desired, wended his way back. And Kassapa going back, Takshaka, approaching in disguise, blasted, with the fire of his poison, thy virtuous father, the first of kings, then staying in his mansion with all precautions. And after that thou wast, O tiger among men, been installed, on the throne. And, O best of monarchs, we have thus told thee all that we have seen and heard, cruel though the account is. And hearing all about the discomfiture of thy royal father, and of the insult to the Rishi Utanka, decide thou that which should follow. Sati continued, King Janamejaya, that chastiser of enemies, then spake up to all his ministers. And he said, When did ye learn all that happened upon that banyan reduced to ashes by Takshaka, and which, wonderful as it is, was afterwards revived by Kassapa? Assuredly, my father could not have died, for the poison could have been neutralized by Kassapa with his mantras. That worst of snakes, of sinful soul, thought within his mind that if Kassapa resuscitated the king bid by him, he, Takshaka, would be an object of ridicule in the world owing to the neutralization of his poison. Assuredly, having thought so, he pacified the Brahmana. I have devised a way, however, of inflicting punishment upon him. I like to know, however, what ye saw or heard, what happened in the deep solitude of the forest, viz. The words of Takshaka and the speeches of Kassapa. Having known it, I shall devise the means of exterminating the snake race. The ministers said, Hear, O monarch of him who told us before of the meeting between that foremost Brahmana and that prince of snakes in the woods. A certain person, O monarch, had climbed up that tree containing some dry branches with the object of breaking them for sacrificial fuel. He was not perceived either by the snake or by the Brahmana. And, O king, that man was reduced to ashes along with the tree itself. And, O king of kings, he was revived with the tree by the power of the Brahmana. That man, a Brahmana's menial, having come to us, represented fully everything as it happened between Takshaka and the Brahmana. Thus have we told thee, O king, all that we have seen and heard. And having heard it, O tiger among kings, ordain that which should follow. Sati continued, King Janamejaya, having listened to the words of his ministers, was sorely afflicted with grief, and began to weep. And the monarch began to squeeze his hands. And the lotus-eyed king began to breathe a long and hot breath, shed tears, and shrieked aloud. And possessed with grief and sorrow, and shedding copious tears, and touching water according to the form, the monarch spake. And reflecting for a moment, as if settling something in his mind, the angry monarch, addressing all ministers, said these words. I have heard your account of my father's ascension to heaven. Know ye now what my fixed resolve is? I think no time must be lost in avenging this injury upon the wretch Takshaka that killed my father. He burned my father, making Sringan only a secondary cause. From malignity alone he made Kassapa return. If that Brahmana had arrived, my father assuredly would have lived. What would he have lost if the king had revived by the grace of Kassapa and the precautionary measures of his ministers? From ignorance of the effects of my wrath, he prevented Kassapa, that excellent of Brahmanas whom he could not defeat, from coming to my father with the desire of reviving him. The act of aggression is great on the part of the wretch Takshaka who gave wealth unto that Brahmana in order that he might not revive the king. I must now avenge myself on my father's enemy to please myself, the Rishi Utanka, and you all. Section Li. Adi Parva continued. Sati said, King Janamejaya having said so, his ministers expressed their approbation. And the monarch then expressed his determination to perform a snake sacrifice. And that lord of the earth, that tiger of the Bharata race, the son of Parikshit, then called his priest and Ritwiks. And accomplished in speech, he spake unto them these words relating to the accomplishment of his great task. I must avenge myself on the wretch Takshaka who killed my father. Tell me what I must do. Do you know any act by which I may cast into the blazing fire the snake Takshaka with his relatives? I desire to burn that wretch even as he burnt, of York, by the fire of his poison, my father. The chief priest answered, There is, O king, a great sacrifice for thee devised by the gods themselves. It is known as the snake sacrifice, and is read of in the Puranas. O king, thou alone canst accomplish it, and no one else. Men versed in the Puranas have told us there is such a sacrifice. Sati continued, thus addressed the king, O excellent one, thought Takshaka to be already burnt and thrown into the blazing mouth of Agni, the eater of the sacrificial butter. The king then said unto those Brahmanas versed in mantras, I shall make preparations for that sacrifice. Tell me the things that are necessary. And the king's Ritwiks, O excellent Brahmana, versed in the Vedas and acquainted with the rites of that sacrifice, measured, according to the scriptures, the land for the sacrificial platform. And the platform was decked with valuable articles and with Brahmanas. And it was full of precious things and paddy. And the Ritwika sat upon it at ease. And after the sacrificial platform had been thus constructed according to rule and as desired, they installed the king at the snake sacrifice for the attainment of its object. And before the commencement of the snake sacrifice that was to come, there occurred this very important incident foreboding obstruction to the sacrifice. For when the sacrificial platform was being constructed, a professional builder of great intelligence and well-versed in the knowledge of laying foundations, a Sutta by caste, well acquainted with the Puranas, said, the soil upon which and the time at which the measurement for the sacrificial platform has been made, indicate that this sacrifice will not be completed, a Brahmana becoming the reason thereof. Hearing this, the king, before his installation, gave orders to his gatekeepers not to admit anybody without his knowledge. Section Li. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, the snake sacrifice then commenced according to due form. And the sacrificial priests, competent in their respective duties according to the ordinance, clad in black garments and their eyes red from contact with smoke, poured clarified butter into the blazing fire, uttering the appropriate mantras. And causing the hearts of all the snakes to tremble with fear, they poured clarified butter into the mouth of Agni, uttering the names of the snakes. And the snakes thereupon began to fall into the blazing fire, benumbed and piteously calling upon one another. And swollen and breathing hard, and twining each other with their heads and tails, they came in large numbers and fell into the fire. The white, the black, the blue, the old and the young all fell alike into the fire, uttering various cries. Those measuring a krosa, and those measuring a yahana, and those of the measure of a gokarna, fell continuously with great violence into that first of all fires. And hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of snakes, deprived of all control over their limbs, perished on that occasion. And amongst those that perished there were some that were like horses, other like trunks of elephants, and others of huge bodies and strength like maddened elephants of various colors and virulent poison, terrible and looking like maces furnished with iron spikes, of great strength, ever inclined to bite the snakes, afflicted with their mother's curse, fell into the fire. Section Liii. Astika Parva continued. Sanaka asked, what great rishis became the Ritwiks at the snake sacrifice of the wise king Janamejaya of the Pandava line? Who also became the Sadasiyas in that terrible snake sacrifice, so frightful to the snakes, and begetting such sorrow in them. It behoveth thee to describe all these in detail, so that, O son of Sutta, we may know who were acquainted with the rituals of the snake sacrifice. Sati replied, I will recite the names of those wise ones who became the monarchs Ritwiks and Sadasiyas. The Brahmana Chandabhargava became the Hatri in that sacrifice. He was of great reputation, and was born in the race of Chiyavana and was the foremost of those acquainted with the Vedas. The learned old Brahmana, Kautsa, became the Udgatri, the chanter of the Vedic hymns. Jaimini became the Brahmana, and Sarngarva and Pingala the Advaryas, Vyasa with his son and disciples, and Uddalaka, Pramataka, Sweetakatu, Pingala, Asita, Devala, Narada, Parvata, Aitreya, Kundajathara, the Brahmana Kalagata, Vatsya, old Srutasravas ever engaged in japa and the study of the Vedas. Kohala Devasarman, Madhgalya, Samasorava, and many other Brahmanas who had got through the Vedas became the Sadasiyas at that sacrifice of the son of Parikshit. When the Ritwiks in that snake sacrifice began to pour clarified butter into the fire, terrible snakes, striking fear into every creature, began to fall into it. And the fat and the marrow of the snakes thus falling into the fire began to flow in rivers. And the atmosphere was filled with an insufferable stench owing to the incessant burning of the snakes. And incessant also were the cries of the snakes fallen into the fire and those in the air about to fall into it. Meanwhile, Takshaka, that prince of snakes, as soon as he heard that King Janamejaya was engaged in the sacrifice, went to the palace of Purandara, Indra. And that best of snakes, having represented all that had taken place, sought in terror the protection of Indra after having acknowledged his fault. And Indra, gratified, told him, O prince of snakes, O Takshaka, here thou hast no fear from that snake sacrifice. The grandsire was pacified by me for thy sake. Therefore, thou hast no fear. Let this fear of thy heart be allayed. Sati continued, thus encouraged by him, that best of snakes began to dwell in Indra's abode in joy and happiness. But Vasuki, seeing that the snakes were incessantly falling into the fire and that his family was reduced to only a few, became exceedingly sorry. And the king of the snakes was afflicted with great grief, and his heart was about to break. And summoning his sister, he spake unto her, saying, O amiable one, my limbs are burning and I no longer see the points of the heavens. I am about to fall down from loss of consciousness. My mind is turning, my sight is falling and my heart is breaking. Benumbed, I may fall today into that blazing fire. This sacrifice of the son of Parikshit is for the extermination of our race. It is evident I also shall have to go to the abode of the king of the dead. The time is come, O my sister, on account of which thou wert bestowed by me on Jaratkaru to protect us with our relatives. O best of the women of the snake race, Astika will put an end to the sacrifice that is going on. The grandsire told me this of old. Therefore, O child, solicit thy dear son who is fully conversant with the Vedas and regarded even by the old, for the protection of myself and also of those dependent on me. Section Live. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, then the snake dame Jaratkaru, calling her own son, told him the following words according to the directions of Vasuki, the king of the snakes. O son, the time is come for the accomplishment of that object for which I was bestowed on thy father by my brother. Therefore, do thou that which should be done. Astika asked, Why wert thou, O mother, bestowed on my father by my uncle? Tell me all truly so that on hearing it, I may do what is proper. Then Jaratkaru, the sister of the king of the snakes, herself unmoved by the general distress, and even desirous of the welfare of her relatives, said unto him, O son, it is said that the mother of all the snakes is Kadru. Know thou why she cursed in anger her sons. Addressing the snakes she said, As ye have refused to falsely represent Uchchizravas, the prince of horses, for bringing about Vinata's bondage according to the wager, therefore, shall he whose charioteer is Vayu burn you all in Janamejaya's sacrifice. And perishing in that sacrifice, ye shall go to the region of the unredeemed spirits. The grandsire of all the world spake unto her while uttering this curse, Be it so, and thus approved of her speech. Vasuki, having heard that curse and then the words of the grandsire, sought the protection of the gods, O child, on the occasion when the Amrita was being churned for. And the gods, their object fulfilled, for they had obtained the excellent Amrita, with Vasuki ahead, approached the grandsire. And all the gods, with King Vasuki, sought to incline him who was born of the lotus to be propitious, so that the curse might be made abortive. And the gods said, O Lord, Vasuki, the king of the snakes, is sorry on account of his relatives. How may his mother's curse prove abortive? Brahman thereupon replied, saying, Jaratkaru will take unto himself a wife of the name of Jaratkaru, the Brahmana born of her will relieve the snakes. Vasuki, the best of snakes, hearing those words, bestowed me, O thou of godlike looks, on thy high-souled father some time before the commencement of the sacrifice. And from that marriage thou art born of me. That time has come. It behoveth thee to protect us from this danger. It behoveth thee to protect my brother and myself from the fire, so that the object, viz., our relief, for which I was bestowed on thy wise father, may not be unfulfilled. What dost thou think, O son? Sati continued, thus addressed, Astika said unto his mother, Yes, I will. And he then addressed the afflicted Vasuki, and as if infusing life into him, said, O Vasuki, thou best of snakes, thou great being, truly do I say, I shall relieve thee from that curse. Be easy, O snake. There is no fear any longer. I shall strive earnestly so that good may come. Nobody hath ever said that my speech, even in jest, hath proved false. Hence on serious occasions like this, I need not say anything more. O uncle, going thither today I shall gratify, with words mixed with blessings, the monarch Janamejaya installed at the sacrifice, so that, O excellent one, the sacrifice may stop. O high-minded one, O king of the snakes, believe all that I say. Believe me, my resolve can never be unfulfilled. And Vasuki then said, O Astika, my head swims and my heart breaks. I cannot discern the points of the earth, as I am afflicted with a mother's curse. And Astika said, Thou best of snakes, it behoveth thee not to grieve any longer. I shall dispel this fear of thine from the blazing fire. This terrible punishment, capable of burning like the fire at the end of the yuga, I shall extinguish. Nurse not thy fear any longer. Sati continued, then that best of Brahmanas, Astika, quelling the terrible fear of the Vasuki's heart, and taking it, as it were, on himself, wended, for the relief of the king of the snakes, with speed to Janamejaya's sacrifice blessed with every merit. And Astika having gone thither, beheld the excellent sacrificial compound with numerous Sadasiyas on it whose splendor was like unto that of the sun or Agni. But that best of Brahmanas was refused admittance by the doorkeepers. And the mighty ascetic gratified them, being desirous of entering the sacrificial compound. And that best of Brahmanas, that foremost of all virtuous men, having entered the excellent sacrificial compound, began to adore the king of infinite achievements, Ritwiks, the Sadasiyas, and also the sacred fire. Section LV. Astika Parva continued. Astika said, Soma and Varuna and Prajapati performed sacrifices of old in Prayaga. But thy sacrifice, O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Parikshit, is not inferior to any of those. Let those dear unto us be blessed. Sakra performed 100 sacrifices. But this sacrifice of thine, O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Parikshit, is fully equal to 10,000 sacrifices of Sakra. Let those dear unto us be blessed. Like the sacrifice of Yama, of Harameta, or of King Rantadeva, is the sacrifice of thine, O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Parikshit. Let those dear unto us be blessed. Like the sacrifice of Maya, of King Sasavindu, or of King Vaisravana, is this sacrifice of thine, O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Satyavati, in which he himself was the chief priest, is this sacrifice of Enriga, of Ajamita, of the son of Dasaratha, is this sacrifice of thine, O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Parikshit. Let those dear unto us be blessed. Like the sacrifice of King Yudhishthira, the son of a god and belonging to Ajamita race, heard of even in the heavens, is this sacrifice of thine. O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Parikshit, let those dear unto us be blessed. Like the sacrifice of Krishna, Dvaipayana, the son of Satyavati, in which he himself was the chief priest, is this sacrifice of thine, O foremost one of Bharata's race, O son of Parikshit, let those dear unto us be blessed. These Ritwiks and Sadasiyas that are here engaged in making thy sacrifice, like unto that of the slayer of Vritra, are of splendor equal to that of the sun. There now remains nothing for them to know, and gifts made to them become inexhaustible, in merit. It is my conviction that there is no Ritvik in all the world who is equal to thy Ritvik, Dvaipayana. His disciples, becoming Ritwiks, competent for their duties, travel over the earth. The high-souled bearer of libation, viz., Agni, called also Vaibhavasu and Chitrabhanu, having gold for his vital seed and having his path marked by black smoke, blazing up with flames inclined to the right, bereath these thy libations of clarified butter to the gods. In this world of men there is no other monarch equal to thee in the protection of subjects. I am ever well pleased with thy abstinence. Indeed, thou art either Varuna, or Yama, the god of justice. Like Sakra himself, thunderbolt in hand, thou art, in this world, the protector of all creatures. In this earth there is no man so great as thou and no monarch who is thy equal in sacrifice. Thou art like Katwenga, Nabhaga, and Dilapa. In prowess thou art like Yayati and Mandatri. In splendor equal to the sun, and of excellent vows thou art O monarch, like Bhishma. Like Valmiki thou art of energy concealed. Like Vasistha thou hast controlled thy wrath. Like Indra is thy lordship. Thy splendor also shines like that of Narayana. Like Yama art thou conversant with the dispensation of justice. Thou art like Krishna adorned with every virtue. Thou art the home of the good fortune that belongs to the Vasas. Thou art also the refuge of the sacrifices. In strength thou art equal to Dambadbhava. Like Rama, the son of Jamadagni, thou art conversant with the scriptures and arms. In energy thou art equal to Orva and Trita. Thou inspirest terror by thy looks like Bhagiratha. Sati said, Astika, having thus adored them, gratified them all, viz., the king, the Sadasiyas, the Ritwiks and the sacrificial fire. And King Janamejaya, beholding the signs and indications manifested all around, addressed them as follows. Section LVI. Astika Parva continued. Janamejaya said, though this one is but a boy, he speaks yet like a wise old man. He is not a boy but one wise and old. I desire to bestow on him a boon. Therefore, ye Brahmanas, give me the necessary permission. The Sadasiyas said, a Brahmana, though a boy, deserves the respect of kings. The learned ones do more so. This boy deserves every desire of his being fulfilled by thee, but not before Takshaka comes with speed. Sati continued, the king, being inclined to grant the Brahmana a boon, said, ask thou a boon. The Hatri, however, being rather displeased, said, Takshaka hath not come as yet into this sacrifice. Janamejaya replied, exert ye to the best of your might, so that this sacrifice of mine may attain completion, and Takshaka also may soon come here. He is my enemy. The Ritwiks replied, as the scriptures declare unto us, and as the fire also saith, O monarch, it seems that Takshaka is now staying in the abode of Indra, afflicted with fear. Sati continued, the illustrious Sudha named Lohitaksha also, conversant with the Puranas, had said so before. Asked by the king on the present occasion, he again told the monarch, Sire, it is even so as the Brahmanas have said, knowing the Puranas, I say, O monarch, that Indra hath granted him this boon, saying, dwell with me in concealment, and Agni shall not burn thee. Sati continued, hearing this, the king installed in the sacrifice became very sorry and urged the Hatri to do his duty. And as the Hatri, with mantras, began to pour clarified butter into the fire, Indra himself appeared on the scene. And the illustrious one came in his car, adorned by all the gods standing around, followed by masses of clouds, celestial singers, and the several bevies of celestial dancing girls. And Takshaka, anxious with fear, hid himself in the upper garment of Indra and was not visible. Then the king in his anger again said unto his mantra knowing Brahmanas these words, bent upon the destruction of Takshaka, if the snake Takshaka be in the abode of Indra, cast him into the fire with Indra himself. Sati continued, urged thus by the king Janamejaya about Takshaka, the Hatri poured libations, naming that snake then staying there. And even as the libations were poured, Takshaka, with Purandara himself, anxious and afflicted, became visible in a moment in the skies. Then Purandara, seeing that sacrifice, became much alarmed, and quickly casting Takshaka off, went back to his own abode. After Indra had gone away, Takshaka, the prince of snakes, insensible with fear, was by virtue of the mantras brought near enough the flames of the sacrificial fire. The Ritwiks then said, O king of kings, the sacrifice of thine is being performed duly. It behoveth thee, O Lord, to grant a boon now to this first of Brahmanas. Janamejaya then said, Thou immeasurable one of such handsome and childlike features, I desire to grant thee a worthy boon. Therefore, ask thou that which thou desirest in thy heart. I promise thee, that I will grant it even if it be ungrantable. The Ritwiks said, O monarch, behold, Takshaka is soon coming under thy control. His terrible cries and loud roar is being heard. Assuredly, the snake hath been forsaken by the wielder of thunder. His body being disabled by your mantras, he is falling from heaven. Even now, rolling in the skies, and deprived of consciousness, the prince of snakes cometh breathing loudly. Sati continued, while Takshaka, the prince of snakes, was about to fall into the sacrificial fire. During those few moments Astika spoke as follows, O Janamejaya, if thou wouldst grant me a boon, let this sacrifice of thine come to an end and let no more snakes fall into the fire. O Brahmana, the son of Parikshit, being thus addressed by Astika, became exceedingly sorry and replied unto Astika thus, O illustrious one, gold, silver, kine, whatever other possessions thou desirest I shall give unto thee. But let not my sacrifice come to an end. Astika thereupon replied, Gold, silver or kine, I do not ask of thee, O monarch. But let thy sacrifice be ended so that my maternal relations be relieved. Sati continued, the son of Parikshit, being thus addressed by Astika, repeatedly said this unto that foremost of speakers, best of the Brahmanas, ask some other boon. Oh, blessed be thou. But, O thou of Bhrigu's race, he did not beg any other boon. Then all the Sadasiyas conversant with the Vedas told the king in one voice, let the Brahmana receive his boon. Section LVII. Astika Parva continued. Sanaka said, O son of Asuta, I desire to hear the names of all those snakes that fell into the fire of this snake sacrifice. Sati replied, many thousands and tens of thousands and billions of snakes fell into the fire. O most excellent Brahmana, so great is the number that I am unable to count them all. So far, however, as I remember, hear the names I mention of the principal snakes cast into the fire. Hear first the names of the principal ones of the Suki's race alone, of color blue, red and white, of terrible form and huge body and deadly poison. Helpless and miserable and afflicted with their mother's curse, they fell into the sacrificial fire like libations of butter. Kodisa, Manasa, Purna, Kala, Palahalmaka, Pikchala, Kanapa, Kakra, Kalavega, Prakalana, Hiranyavahu, Karana, Kakshaka, Kaladantaka. These snakes born of the Suki fell into the fire. And, O Brahmana, numerous other snakes well born, and of terrible form and great strength, were burnt in the blazing fire. I shall now mention those born in the race of Takshaka. Hear thou their names. Puchchandaka, Mandalaka, Pindasectri, Ravanaka, Uchakika, Karava, Bongas, Vilwatehas, Vairahana, Sili, Salakara, Muka, Sukumara, Pravpana, Mudgara and Sisiroman, Siroman and Mahahanu. These snakes born of Takshaka fell into the fire. And Paravata, Parajata, Pandara, Harina, Krisa, Vihanga, Saraba, Meta, Pramoda, Sauhadapana. These born in the race of Aravata fell into the fire. Now hear, O best of Brahmanas, the names of the snakes I mentioned born in the race of Kauravya, Araka, Kundalaveni, Veniskanda, Kumaraka, Vihuka, Sringavara, Dirtaka, Pratara and Astaka. They are born in the race of Kauravya fell into the fire. Now hear the names I mention, in order, of those snakes endued with the speed of the wind and with virulent poison, born in the race of Dhritarashtra, Sankakarna, Pitharaka, Kathara, Sukana, and Shechaka, Purnangada, Purnamuka, Prahasa, Sakuni, Dari, Amahatha, Kumathaka, Sushina, Vyaya, Bhairava, Mundavidanga, Pisanga, Udraparaka, Rishabha, Vegavat, Pindaraka, Raktanga, Sarvasaranga, Samrita, Patha and Visaka, Varahaka, Vairanaka, Sachitra, Chitravejika, Parasara, Taranaka, Maniskanda and Aruni. O Brahmana, thus I have recited the names of the principal snakes known widely for their achievements. I have not been able to name all, the number being countless. The sons of these snakes, the sons of those sons that were burnt having fallen into the fire, I am unable to mention. They are so many, some of 3 heads, some of 7, others of 10, a poison like unto the fire at the end of the yuga and terrible in form, they were burnt by thousands. Many others, of huge bodies, of great speed, tall as mountain summits, of the length of a yama, of a yahana, and of 2 yahanas, capable of assuming at will any form and of mastering at will any degree of strength, a poison like unto blazing fire, afflicted by the curse of a mother, were burnt in that great sacrifice. Section LVIII. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, listen now to another very wonderful incident in connection with Astika. When King Janamejaya was about to gratify Astika by granting the boon, the snake Takshaka, thrown off Indra's hands, remained in midair without actually falling. King Janamejaya thereupon became curious, for Takshaka, afflicted with fear, did not at once fall into the fire although libations were poured in proper form into the blazing sacrificial Agni in his name. Sanaka said, was it, O Suta, that the mantras of those wise Brahmanas were not potent, since Takshaka did not fall into the fire? Sati replied, unto the unconscious Takshaka, that best of snakes, after he had been cast off Indra's hands, Astika had thrice said, stay, stay, stay. And he succeeded in staying in the skies, with afflicted heart, like a person somehow staying between the welkin and the earth. The king then, on being repeatedly urged by his Sadasiyas, said, let it be done as Astika hath said. Let the sacrifice be ended, let the snakes be safe, let this Astika also be gratified, O Suta, thy words also be true. When the boon was granted to Astika, plaudits expressive of joy rang through the air. Thus the sacrifice of the son of Parikshit, that king of the Pandava race, came to an end. The king Janamejaya of the Bharata race was himself pleased, and on the Ritwiks with the Sadasiyas, and on all who had come there, the king bestowed money by hundreds and thousands. And unto Suta Lohidiksha, conversant with the rules of building and foundations, who had at the commencement said that a Brahmana would be the cause of the interruption of the snake sacrifice, the king gave much wealth. The king, of uncommon kindness, also gave him various things, with food and wearing apparel, according to his desire, and became very much pleased. Then he concluded his sacrifice according to the prescribed rites, and after treating him with every respect, the king in joy sent home the wise Astika exceedingly gratified, for he had attained his object. And the king said unto him, thou must come again to become a Sadasiya in my great horse sacrifice. And Astika said, yes, and then returned home in great joy, having achieved his great end after gratifying the monarch. And returning in joy to his uncle and mother and touching their feet, he recounted to them everything as it had happened. Sati continued, hearing all he had said, the snakes that had come thither became very much delighted, and their fears were allayed. They were much pleased with Astika and asked him to solicit a boon, saying, O learned one, what good shall we do unto thee? We have been very much gratified, having been all saved by thee. What shall we accomplish for thee, O child? Astika said, let those Brahmanas, and other men, who shall, in the morning or in the evening, cheerfully and with attention, read the sacred account of this my act, have no fear from any of you. And the snakes in joy thereupon said, O nephew, in the nature of thy boon, let it be exactly as thou sayest. That which thou askest we all shall cheerfully do, O nephew. And those also that call to mind Astika, Artaman and Sunita, in the day or in the night, shall have no fear of snakes. He again shall have no fear of snakes who will say, I call to mind the famous Astika born of Jaratkaru, that Astika who saved the snakes from the snake sacrifice. Therefore, ye snakes of great good fortune, it behoveth you not to bite me. But go ye away, blessed be ye, or go away thou snake of virulent poison, and remember the words of Astika after the snake sacrifice of Janamejaya. That snake who does not cease from biting after hearing such mention of Astika, shall have his hood divided 100-fold like the fruit of Simsa tree. Sati continued, that first of Brahmanas, thus addressed by the foremost of the chief snakes assembled together, was very much gratified. And the high-souled one then set his heart upon going away. And that best of Brahmanas, having saved the snakes from the snake sacrifice, ascended to heaven when his time came, leaving sons and grandsons behind him. Thus have I recited to thee this history of Astika exactly as it happened. Indeed, the recitation of this history dispelleth all fear of snakes. Sati continued, O Brahmanas, O foremost one of Bhrigu's race, as thy ancestor Pramati had cheerfully narrated unto his inquiring son Ruru, and as I had heard it, thus have I recited this blessed history, from the beginning, of the learned Astika. And, O Brahmana, O oppressor of all enemies, having heard this holy history of Astika that increaseth virtue, and which thou hadst asked me about after hearing the story of the Dunduba, let thy ardent curiosity be satisfied. Section Lix. Adi Parva. Sanaka said, O son, thou hast narrated to me this extensive and great history commencing from the progeny of Bhrigu. O son of Sudha, I have been much gratified with thee. I ask thee again, to recite to me, O son of Asuda, the history composed by Vyasa. The varied and wonderful narrations that were recited amongst those illustrious Sadasiyas assembled at the sacrifice, in the intervals of their duties of that long extending ceremony, and the objects also of those narrations, I desire to hear from thee, O son of Asuda. Recite therefore, all those to me fully. Sati said, the Brahmanas, in the intervals of the duties, spoke of many things founded upon the Vedas. But Vyasa recited the wonderful and great history called the Bharata. Sanaka said, that sacred history called the Mahabharata, spreading the fame of the Pandavas, which Krishna Dvaipayana, asked by Janamejaya, caused to be duly recited after the completion of the sacrifice. I desire to hear duly. That history hath been born of the ocean-like mind of the great Rishi of soul purified by yoga. Thou foremost of good men, recite it unto me, for, O son of Asuda, my thirst hath not been appeased by all thou hast said. Sati said, I shall recite to thee from the beginning of that great and excellent history called the Mahabharata composed by Vyasa. O Brahmana, listen to it in full, as I recite it. I myself feel a great pleasure in reciting it. Section LX. Adi Parva continued. Sati said, hearing that Janamejaya was installed in the snake sacrifice, the learned Rishi Krishna Dvaipayana went thither on the occasion. And he, the grandfather of the Pandavas, was born in an island of the Yamuna, of the virgin Kali by Sakti's son, Parasara. And the illustrious one developed by his will alone his body as soon as he was born, and mastered the Vedas with their branches, and all the histories. And he readily obtained that which no one could obtain by asceticism, by the study of the Vedas, by vows, by fasts, by progeny, and by sacrifice. And the first of Veda-knowing ones, he divided the Vedas into 4 parts. And the Brahmana Rishi had knowledge of the supreme Brahma, knew the past by intuition, was holy, and cherished truth. Of sacred deeds and great fame, he begot Pandu and Dhritarashtra and Vidura in order to continue the line of Santanu. And the high-souled Rishi, with his disciples all conversant with the Vedas and their branches, entered the sacrificial pavilion of the royal sage Janamejaya. And he saw that the king Janamejaya was seated in the sacrificial region like the god Indra, surrounded by numerous Sadasiyas, by kings of various countries whose coronal locks had undergone the sacred bath, and by competent Ritwiks like unto Brahman himself. And that foremost one of Bharata's race, the royal sage Janamejaya, beholding the Rishi come, advanced quickly with his followers and relatives in great joy. And the king with the approval of his Sadasiyas gave the Rishi a golden seat as Indra did to Brihaspati. And when the Rishi, capable of granting boons and adored by the celestial Rishis themselves, had been seated, the King of Kings worshipped him according to the rites of the scriptures. And the king then offered him his grandfather Krishna, who fully deserved them, water to wash his feet and mouth, and the arghya, and kine. And accepting those offerings from the Pandava Janamejaya and ordering the kine also not to be slain, Vyasa became much gratified. And the king, after those iterations, bowed to his great-grandfather, and sitting in joy asked him about his welfare. And the illustrious Rishi also, casting his eyes upon him and asking him about his welfare, worshipped the Sadasiyas, having been before worshipped by them all. And after all this, Janamejaya with all his Sadasiyas, questioned that first of Brahmanas, with joined palms as follows. O Brahmana, thou hast seen with thy own eyes the acts of the Kuras and the Pandavas. I am desirous of hearing thee recite their history. What was the cause of the disunion amongst them that was fruitful of such extraordinary deeds? Why also did that great battle, which caused the death of countless creatures, occur between all my grandfathers, their clear sense overclouded by fate? O excellent Brahmana, tell me all this in full as everything had happened. Hearing those words of Janamejaya, Krishna Dwaipayana directed his disciple Vaisampayana seated by his side, saying, the discord that happened between the Kurus and the Pandavas of old, narrate all to the king even as thou hast heard from me. Then that blessed Brahmana, at the command of his preceptor, recited the whole of that history unto the king, the Sadasiyas, and all the chieftains there assembled. And he told them all about the hostility and the utter extinction of the Kurus and the Pandavas. Section L Xi. Advancavatarana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, bowing down in the first place to my preceptor with the 8 parts of my body touching the ground, with devotion and reverence, and with all my heart worshipping the whole assembly of Brahmanas and other learned persons, I shall recite in full what I have heard from the high-souled and great Rishi Vyasa, the first of intelligent men in the 3 worlds. And having got it within thy reach, O monarch, thou also art a fit person to hear the composition called Bharata. Encouraged by the command of my preceptor, my heart feeleth no fear. Hear, O monarch, why that disunion occurred between the Kurus and the Pandavas, and why also that exile into the woods immediately proceeding from the game at dice prompted by the desire of the Kurus for rule. I shall relate all to thee who askest it, thou best of the Bharata race. On the death of their father those heroes, the Pandavas, came to their own home. And within a short time they became well versed in archery. And the Kurus, beholding the Pandavas gifted with physical strength, energy, and power of mind, popular also with the citizens, and blessed with good fortune, became very jealous. Then the crooked-minded Duryodhana and Karna, with the former's uncle, the son of Subala, began to persecute them and devise means for their exile. Then the wicked Duryodhana, guided by the counsels of Sakuni, his maternal uncle, persecuted the Pandavas in various ways for the acquirement of undisputed sovereignty. The wicked son of Dhritarashtra gave poison to Bhima, but Bhima of the stomach of the wolf digested the poison with the food. Then the wretch again tied the sleeping Bhima on the margin of the Ganges and, casting him into the water, went away. But when Bhimasena of strong arms, the son of Kunti, woke, he tore the strings with which he had been tied and came up, his pains all gone. And while asleep and in the water, black snakes of virulent poison bit him in every part of his body. But that slayer of foes did not still perish. And in all those persecutions of the Pandavas by their cousins, the Kurus, the high-minded Vidura attentively engaged himself, neutralizing those evil designs and rescuing the persecuted ones. And as Sakra from the heavens keeps in happiness the world of men, so did Vidura always keep the Pandavas from evil. When Duryodhana, with various means, both secret and open, found himself incapable of destroying the Pandavas, who were protected by the fates and kept alive for grave future purposes, such as the extermination of the Kuru race, then called together his counselors consisting of Virisha, Karna, Dusasana and others, and with the knowledge of Dhritarashtra caused a house of lac to be constructed. And King Dhritarashtra, from affection for his children, and prompted by the desire of sovereignty, sent the Pandavas tactfully into Varanavada. And the Pandavas then went away with their mother from Hastinapura. And when they were leaving the city, Vidura gave them some idea of impending danger and how they could come out of it. The sons of Kunti reached the town of Varanavada and lived there with their mother. And, agreeably to the command of Dhritarashtra, those illustrious slayers of all enemies lived in the palace of Lac while in that town. And they lived in that place for 1 year, protecting themselves from Purochana very wakefully. And causing a subterranean passage to be constructed, acting according to the directions of Vidura, they set fire to that house of Lac and burnt Purochana, their enemy and the spy of Duryodhana, to death. Those slayers of all enemies, anxious with fear, then fled with their mother. In the woods beside a fountain they saw a Rakshasa. But, alarmed at the risk they ran of exposure by such an act, the Pandavas fled in the darkness, out of fear from the sons of Dhritarashtra. It was here that Bhima gained Hidamba, the sister of the Rakshasa he slew, for a wife, and it was of her that Katakacha was born. Then the Pandavas, of rigid vows, and conversant with the Vedas, wended to a town of the name of Ekachakra and dwelt there in the guise of Brahmakarans. And those bulls among men dwelt in that town in the house of a Brahmana for some time, with temperance and abstinence. And it was here that Bhima of mighty arms came upon a hungry and mighty and man-eating Rakshasa of the name of Baka. And Bhima, the son of Pandu, that tiger among men, slew him speedily with the strength of his arms and made the citizens safe and free from fear. Then they heard of Krishna, the princess of Panchala, having become disposed to select a husband from among the assembled princes. And, hearing of it, they went to Panchala, and there they obtained the maiden. And having obtained Draupadi, as their common wife, they then dwelt there for a year. And after they became known, those chastisers of all enemies went back to Hastinapura. And they were then told by King Dhritarashtra and the son of Santanu, Bhishma, as follows, in order, O dear ones, dissensions may not take place between you and your cousins, we have settled that Kandavaprastha should be your abode. Therefore, go ye, casting off all jealousy, to Kandavaprastha, which contains many towns served by many broad roads, for dwelling there. And accordingly the Pandavas went, with all their friends and followers, to Kandavaprastha, taking with them many jewels and precious stones. And the sons of Pritha dwelt there for many years. And they brought by force of arms, many a prince under their subjection. And thus, setting their hearts on virtue and firmly adhering to truth, unruffled by affluence, calm in deportment, and putting down numerous evils, the Pandavas gradually rose to power. And Bhima of great reputation subjugated the east, the heroic Arjuna, the north, Nakula, the west, Sahadeva that slayer of all hostile heroes, the south. And this having been done, their domination was spread over the whole world. And with the 5 Pandavas, each like unto the sun, the earth looked as if she had 6 suns. Then, for some reason, Yudhishthira the just gifted with great energy and prowess, sent his brother Arjuna who was capable of drawing the bow with the left hand, dearer unto him than life itself, into the woods. And Arjuna, that tiger among men, of firm soul, and gifted with every virtue, lived in the woods for 11 years and months. And during this period, on a certain occasion, Arjuna went to Krishna in Dwaravati. And Baibatsu, Arjuna, there obtained for a wife the lotus-eyed and sweet-speeched younger sister of Vasudeva, Subhadra by name. And she became united, in gladness, with Arjuna, the son of Pandu, like Sakti with the great Indra, or Shri with Krishna himself. And then, O best of monarchs, Arjuna, the son of Kunti, with Vasudeva, gratified Agni, the carrier of the sacrificial butter, in the forest of Kandava by burning the medicinal plants in that woods to cure Agni of his indigestion. And to Arjuna, assisted as he was by Kesava, the task did not at all appear heavy, even as nothing is heavy to Vishnu with immense design and resources in the matter of destroying his enemies. And Agni gave unto the son of Pritha the excellent bow Gandiva and a quiver that was inexhaustible, and a war chariot bearing the figure of Garuda on its standard. And it was on this occasion that Arjuna relieved the great Asura, Maya, from fear of being consumed in the fire. And Maya, in gratitude, built for the Pandavas a celestial palace decked with every sort of jewels and precious stones. And the wicked Duryodhana, beholding that building, was tempted with the desire of possessing it. And deceiving Yudhishthira by means of the dice played through the hands of the son of Subala, Duryodhana sent the Pandavas into the woods for 12 years and 1 additional year to be passed in concealment, thus making the period full 13. And the 14th year, O monarch, when the Pandavas returned and claimed their property, they did not obtain it. And thereupon war was declared, and the Pandavas, after exterminating the whole race of Kshatriyas and slaying King Duryodhana, obtained back their devastated kingdom. This is the history of the Pandavas who never acted under the influence of evil passions, and this the account, O first of victorious monarchs, of the disunion that ended in the loss of their kingdom by the Kurus and the victory of the Pandavas. Section L Xiii. Adi Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O excellent Brahmana, thou hast, indeed, told me, in brief, the history, called Mahabharata, of the great acts of the Kurus. But, O thou of ascetic wealth, recite now that wonderful narration fully. I feel a great curiosity to hear it. It behoveth thee to recite it, therefore, in full. I am not satisfied with hearing in a nutshell the great history. That could never have been a trifling cause for which the virtuous ones could slay those whom they should not have slain, and for which they are yet applauded by men. Why also did those tigers among men, innocent and capable of avenging themselves upon their enemies, calmly suffer the persecution of the wicked Kurus? Why also, O best of Brahmanas, did Bhima of mighty arms and of the strength of 10,000 elephants, control his anger, though wronged? Why also did the chaste Krishna, the daughter of Drupada, wronged by those wretches and able to burn them, not burn the sons of Dhritarashtra with her wrathful eyes? Why also did the 2 other sons of Pritha, Bhima and Arjuna, and the 2 sons of Madri, Nakula and Sahadeva, themselves injured by the wretched Kurus, follow Yudhishthira who was greatly addicted to the evil habit of gambling? Why also did Yudhishthira, that foremost of all virtuous men, the son of Dharma himself, fully acquainted with all duties, suffer that excess of affliction? Why also did the Pandava Dhananjaya, having Krishna for his charioteer, who by his arrows sent to the other world that dauntless host of fighting men, suffer such persecution? O thou of ascetic wealth, speak to me of all these as they took place, and everything that those mighty charioteers achieved. Vaisampayana said, O monarch, appoint thou a time for hearing it. This history told by Krishna Dvaipayana is very extensive. This is but the beginning. I shall recite it. I shall repeat the whole of the composition in full, of the illustrious and great Rishi Vyasa of immeasurable mental power, and worshipped in all the worlds. This Bharata consists of 100,000 sacred slokas composed by the son of Satyavati, of immeasurable mental power. He that reads it to others, and they that hear it read, attain to the world of Brahman and become equal to the very gods. This Bharata is equal unto the Vedas, is holy and excellent, is the worthiest of all to be listened to, and is a Purana worshipped by the rishis. It contains much useful instruction on artha and kama, profit and pleasure. This sacred history maketh the heart desire for salvation. Learned persons by reciting this Veda of Krishna Dvaipayana to those that are liberal, truthful and believing, earn much wealth. Sins, such as killing the embryo in the womb, are destroyed assuredly by this. A person, however cruel and sinful, by hearing this history, escapes from all his sins like the sun from Rahu after the eclipse is over. This history is called Jaya. It should be heard by those desirous of victory. A king by hearing it may bring the whole world under subjection and conquer all his foes. This history in itself is a mighty act of propitiation, a mighty sacrifice productive of blessed fruit. It should always be heard by a young monarch with his queen, for then they beget a heroic son or a daughter to occupy a throne. This history is the high and sacred science of Dharma, Artha, and also of Moksha. It hath been so said by Vyasa himself of mind that is immeasurable. This history is recited in the present age and will be recited in the future. They that hear it read, have sons and servants always obedient to them and doing their behests. All sins that are committed by body, word, or mind, immediately leave them that hear this history. They who hear, without the spirit of fault-finding, the story of the birth of the Bharata princes, can have no fear of maladies, let alone the fear of the other world. For extending the fame of the high-souled Pandavas and of other Kshatriyas versed in all branches of knowledge, high-spirited, and already known in the world for their achievements, Krishna Dvaipayana, guided also by the desire of doing good to the world, hath composed this work. It is excellent, productive of fame, grants length of life, is sacred and heavenly. He who, from desire of acquiring religious merit, causeth this history to be heard by sacred Brahmanas, acquireth great merit and virtue that is inexhaustible. He that recites the famous generation of the Kurus becometh immediately purified and acquireth a large family himself, and becometh respected in the world. That Brahmana who regularly studies this sacred Bharata for the 4 months of the rainy season, is cleansed from all his sins. He that has read the Bharata may be regarded as one acquainted with the Vedas. This work presents an account of the gods and royal sages and sacred regenerate rishis, the sinless Kesava, the god of gods, Mahadeva, and the goddess Parvati, the birth of Kartikeya who sprang from union of Parvati with Mahadeva and was reared by many mothers, the greatness of Brahmanas and of kind. This Bharata is a collection of all the Srutas, and is fit to be heard by every virtuous person. That learned man who recites it to Brahmanas during the sacred lunations, becometh cleansed of all sins, and, not caring for heaven as it were, attaineth to a union with Brahma. He that causeth even a single foot of this poem to be heard by Brahmanas during the performance of a Shraddha, maketh that Shraddha inexhaustible, the Pitras becoming ever gratified with the articles once presented to them. The sins that are committed daily by our senses are the mind, those that are committed knowingly or unknowingly by any man, are all destroyed by hearing the Mahabharata. The history of the exalted birth of the Bharata princes is called the Mahabharata. He who knoweth this etymology of the name is cleansed of all his sins. And as this history of the Bharata race is so wonderful, that, when recited, it assuredly purifieth mortals from all sins. The sage Krishna Dvaipayana completed his work in 3 years. Rising daily and purifying himself and performing his ascetic devotions, he composed this Mahabharata. Therefore, this should be heard by Brahmanas with the formality of a vow. He who recites this holy narration composed by Krishna, Vyasa, for the hearing of others, and they who hear it, in whatever state he or they may be, can never be affected by the fruit of deeds, good or bad. The man desirous of acquiring virtue should hear it all. This is equivalent to all histories, and he that heareth it always attaineth to purity of heart. The gratification that one deriveth from attaining to heaven is scarcely equal to that which one deriveth from hearing this holy history. The virtuous man who with reverence heareth it or causeth it to be heard, obtaineth the fruit of the Rajasuya and the horse sacrifice. The Bharata is said to be as much a mine of gems as the vast ocean or the great mountain Meru. This history is sacred and excellent, and is equivalent to the Vedas, worthy of being heard, pleasing to the ear, sin cleansing, and virtue increasing. O monarch, he that giveth a copy of the Bharata to one that asketh for it doth indeed make a present of the whole earth with her belt of seas. O son of Parikshit, this pleasant narration that giveth virtue and victory I am about to recite in its entirety, listen to it. The sage Krishna Dvaipayana, regularly rising for 3 years, composed this wonderful history called Mahabharata. O bull, amongst the Bharata monarchs, whatever is spoken about virtue, wealth, pleasure, and salvation may be seen elsewhere, but whatever is not contained in this is not to be found anywhere. Section L Xiii. Adavansavatarana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, there was a king of the name of Aparachara. That monarch was devoted to virtue. He was very much addicted also to hunting. That king of the Paurava race, called also Vasu, conquered the excellent and delightful kingdom of Chedi under instructions from Indra. Some time after, the king gave up the use of arms and, dwelling in a secluded retreat, practiced the most severe austerities. The gods with Indra at their head once approached the monarch during this period, believing that he sought the headship of the gods by those severe austerities of his. The celestials, becoming objects of his sight, by soft speeches succeeded in winning him away from his ascetic austerities. The gods said, O Lord of the earth, thou shouldst take care so that virtue may not sustain a diminution on earth. Protected by thee, virtue itself will in return protect the universe. And Indra said, O king, protect virtue on earth attentively and rigidly. Being virtuous, thou shalt, for all time, behold, in afterlife, many sacred regions. And though I am of heaven, and thou art of earth, yet art thou my friend and dear to me. And, O king of men, dwell thou in that region on earth which is delightful, and aboundeth in animals, is sacred, full of wealth and corn, is well protected like heaven, which is of agreeable climate, graced with every object of enjoyment, and blessed with fertility. And, O monarch of Chedi, this thy dominion is full of riches, of gems and precious stones, and containeth, besides, much mineral wealth. The cities and towns of this region are all devoted to virtue, the people are honest and contented, they never lie even in jest. Sons never divide their wealth with their fathers and are ever mindful of the welfare of their parents. Lean cattle are never yoked to the plow or the cart or engaged in carrying merchandise, on the other hand, they are well fed and fattened. In Chedi the 4 orders are always engaged in their respective vocations. Let nothing be unknown to thee that happens in the 3 worlds. I shall give thee a crystal car such as the celestials alone are capable of carrying the car through mid-air. Thou alone, of all mortals on earth, riding on that best of cars, shall course through mid-air like a celestial endued with a physical frame. I shall also give thee a triumphal garland of unfading lotuses, with which in battle, thou shalt not be wounded by weapons. And, O king, this blessed and incomparable garland, widely known on earth as Indra's garland, shall be thy distinctive badge. The slayer of Vritra, Indra, also gave the king, for his gratification, a bamboo pole for protecting the honest and the peaceful. After the expiry of a year, the king planted it in the ground for the purpose of worshipping the giver thereof, viz., Sakra. From that time forth, O monarch, all kings, following Vasu's example, began to plant a pole for the celebration of Indra's worship. After erecting the pole, they decked it with golden cloth and scents and garlands and various ornaments. And the god Vasava is worshipped in due form with such garlands and ornaments. And the god, for the gratification of the illustrious Vasu, assuming the form of a swan, came himself to accept the worship thus offered. And the god, beholding the auspicious worship thus made by Vasu, that first of monarchs, was delighted, and said unto him, Those men, and kings also, who will worship me and joyously observe this festival of mine like the king of Chedi, shall have glory and victory for their countries and kingdom. Their cities also shall expand and be ever in joy. King Vasu was thus blessed by the gratified Maghavat, the high-souled chief of the gods. Indeed, those men who cause this festivity of Sakra to be observed with gifts of land, of gems and precious stones, become the respected of the world. And King Vasu, the lord of Chetis, bestowing boons and performing great sacrifices and observing the festivity of Sakra, was much respected by Indra. And from Chedi he ruled the whole world virtuously. And for the gratification of Indra, Vasu, the lord of the Chetis, observed the festivity of Indra. And Vasu had 5 sons of great energy and immeasurable prowess. And the emperor installed his sons as governors of various provinces. And his son Brihadratha was installed in Magadha and was known by the name of Maharatha. Another son of his was Pratygraha, and another, Kusumba, who was also called Manibahana. And the 2 others were Mabala and Yadu of great prowess and invincible in battle. These, O monarch, were the sons of that royal sage of mighty energy. And the 5 sons of Vasu planted kingdoms and towns after their own names and founded separate dynasties that lasted for long ages. And when King Vasu took his seat in that crystal car, with the gift of Indra, and coursed through the sky, he was approached by Gandharvas and Apsaras, the celestial singers and dancers. And as he coursed through the upper regions, he was called Aparachara. And by his capital flowed a river called Suktimati. And that river was once attacked by a life-endued mountain called Kolahala, maddened by lust. And Vasu, beholding the foul attempt, struck the mountain with his foot. And by the indentation caused by Vasu's stamp, the river came out of the embraces of Kolahala. But the mountain begat on the river 2 children that were twins. And the river, grateful to Vasu for his having set her free from Kolahala's embraces, gave them both to Vasu. And the son was made the generalissimo to his forces by Vasu, that best of royal sages and giver of wealth and punisher of enemies. And the daughter called Garika, was wedded by Vasu. And Garika, the wife of Vasu, after her menstrual course, purifying herself by a bath, represented her state unto her lord. But that very day the Pitras of Vasu came unto that best of monarchs and foremost of wise men, and asked him to slay deer for their Shraddha. And the king, thinking that the command of the Pitras should not be disobeyed, went a-hunting, thinking of Garika alone, who was gifted with great beauty and like unto another Shri herself. And the season being the spring, the woods within which the king was roaming, had become delightful like unto the gardens of the king of the Gandharvas himself. There were Asokas and Champakas and Chutas and Adamuktas in abundance, and there were Panagas and Karnakaras and Vikulas and Divyapatalas and Patalas and Narikelas and Chandanas and Arjunas and similar other beautiful and sacred trees resplendent with fragrant flowers and sweet fruits. And the whole forest was maddened by the sweet notes of the kokila and echoed with the hum of maddened bees. And the king became possessed with desire, and he saw not his wife before him. Maddened by desire he was roaming hither and thither, when he saw a beautiful asoka decked with dense foliage, its branches covered with flowers. And the king sat at his ease in the shade of that tree. And excited by the fragrance of the season and the charming odors of the flowers around, and excited also by the delicious breeze, the king could not keep his mind away from the thought of the beautiful Garika. And beholding that a swift hawk was resting very near to him, the king, acquainted with the subtle truths of Dharma and Artha, went unto him and said, Amiable one, carry thou this seed, semen, for my wife Garika, and give it unto her. Her season hath arrived. The hawk, swift of speed, took it from the king and rapidly coursed through the air. While thus passing, the hawk was seen by another of his species. Thinking that the first one was carrying meat, the second one flew at him. The 2 fought with each other in the sky with their beaks. While they were fighting, the seed fell into the waters of the Yamuna. And in those waters dwelt an Aspara of the higher rank, known by the name of Adrika, transformed by a Brahmana's curse into a fish. As soon as Vasu's seed fell into the water from the claws of the hawk, Adrika rapidly approached and swallowed it at once. That fish was, some time after, caught by the fisherman. And it was the 10th month of the fish's having swallowed the seed. From the stomach of that fish came out a male and a female child of human form. The fisherman wondered much, and wending unto King Aparachara, for they were his subjects, told him all. They said, O king, these 2 beings of human shape have been found in the body of a fish. The male child amongst the 2 was taken by Aparachara. That child afterwards became the virtuous and truthful monarch Matsya. After the birth of the twins, the Aspara herself became freed from her curse. For she had been told before by the illustrious one, who had cursed her, that she would, while living in her piscatorial form, give birth to 2 children of human shape and then would be freed from the curse. Then, according to these words, having given birth to the 2 children, and been killed by the fisherman, she left her fish form and assumed her own celestial shape. The Aspara then rose up on the path trodden by the Siddhas, the Rishis and the Charanas. The fish-smelling daughter of the Aspara in her piscatorial form was then given by the king unto the fisherman, saying, Let this one be thy daughter. That girl was known by the name of Satyavati, and gifted with great beauty and possessed of every virtue, she of agreeable smiles, owing to contact with fishermen, was for some time of the fishy smell. Wishing to serve her father she plied a boat on the waters of the Yamuna. While engaged in this vocation, Satyavati was seen one day by the great Rishi Parasara, in course of his wanderings. As she was gifted with great beauty, an object of desire even with an anchorite, and of graceful smiles, the wise sage, as soon as he beheld her, desired to have her. And that bull amongst Munis addressed the daughter of Vasu of celestial beauty and tapering thighs, saying, Accept my embraces, O blessed one. Satyavati replied, O holy one, behold the rishis standing on either bank of the river. Seen by them, how can I grant thy wish? Thus addressed by her, the ascetic thereupon created a fog, which existed not before and which enveloped the whole region in darkness. And the maiden, beholding the fog that was created by the great rishi, wondered much. And the helpless one became suffused with the blushes of bashfulness. And she said, O holy one, note that I am a maiden under the control of my father. O sinless one, by accepting your embraces my virginity will be sullied. O best of Brahmanas, my virginity being sullied, how shall I, O Rishi, be able to return home? Indeed, I shall not then be able to bear life. Reflecting upon all this, O illustrious one, do that which should be done. That best of Rishis, gratified with all she said, replied, Thou shalt remain a virgin even if thou grantest my wish. And, O timid one, O beauteous lady, solicit the boon that thou desirest. O thou of fair smiles, my grace hath never before proved fruitless. Thus addressed, the maiden asked for the boon that her body might emit a sweet scent, instead of the fish odor that it had. And the illustrious Rishi thereupon granted that wish of her heart. Having obtained her boon, she became highly pleased, and her season immediately came. And she accepted the embraces of that Rishi of wonderful deeds. And she thenceforth became known among men by the name of Gandhavati, the sweet-scented one. And men could perceive her scent from the distance of a yahana. And for this she was known by another name which was Yojanaganda, one who scatters her scent for a yahana all around. And the illustrious Parasara, after this, went to his own asylum. And Satyavati, gratified with having obtained the excellent boon in consequence of which she became sweet-scented and her virginity remained unsullied, conceived through Parasara's embraces. And she brought forth the very day, on an island in the Yamuna, the child begot upon her by Parasara and gifted with great energy. And the child, with the permission of his mother, set his mind on asceticism. And he went away saying, As soon as thou rememberest me when occasion comes, I shall appear unto thee. And it was thus that Vyasa was born of Satyavati through Parasara. And because he was born in an island, he was called Dwaipayana, Dwaipa or Iceland-born. And the learned Dwaipayana, beholding that virtue is destined to become lame by one leg each yuga, she having 4 legs in all, and that the period of life and the strength of men followed the yugas, and moved by the desire of obtaining the favor of Brahman and the Brahmanas, arranged the Vedas. And for this he came to be called Vyasa, the arranger or compiler. The boon-giving great one then taught Sumanta, Jaimini, Pala, his son Suka, and Vaisampayana, the Vedas having the Mahabharata for their 5th. And the compilation of the Bharata was published by him through them separately. Then Bhishma, of great energy and fame and of immeasurable splendor, and sprung from the component parts of the Vasas, was born in the womb of Ganga through King Santanu. And there was a rishi of the name of Anumandavya of great fame. And he was conversant with the interpretations of the Vedas, was illustrious, gifted with great energy, and of great reputation. And, accused of theft though innocent, the old rishi was impaled. He thereupon summoned Dharma and told him these words, In my childhood I had pierced a little fly on a blade of grass, O Dharma. I recollect that one sin, but I cannot call to mind any other. I have, however, since practiced penances 1,000-fold. Hath not that one sin been conquered by this my asceticism? And because the killing of a Brahmana is more heinous than that of any other living thing, therefore, hast thou, O Dharma, been sinful. Thou shalt, therefore, be born on earth in the Sudra order. And for that curse Dharma was born a Sudra in the form of the learned Vidura of pure body who was perfectly sinless. And the Sudha was born of Kunti in her maidenhood through Surya. And he came out of his mother's womb with a natural coat of mail and face brightened by ear rings. And Vishnu himself, of worldwide fame, and worshipped of all the worlds, was born of Devaki through Vasudeva, for the benefit of the 3 worlds. He is without birth and death, of radiant splendor, the creator of the universe and the Lord of all. Indeed, he who is the invisible cause of all, who knoweth no deterioration, who is the all-pervading soul, the center round which everything moveth, the substance in which the 3 attributes of sattva, rajas and tamas cohere, the universal soul, the immutable, the material out of which hath been created this universe, the creator himself, the controlling Lord, the invisible dweller in every object, progenitor of this universe of 5 elements, who is united with the 6 high attributes, is the pranava or Om of the Vedas. is infinite, incapable of being moved by any force save his own will, illustrious, the embodiment of the mode of life called sannyasa, who floated on the waters before the creation, who is the source whence hath sprung this mighty frame, who is the great combiner, the uncreate, the invisible essence of all, the great immutable, bereft of those attributes that are knowable by the senses, who is the universe itself, without beginning, birth, and decay, is possessed of infinite wealth, that grandsire of all creatures, became incarnate in the race of the Andaka Vrishnas for the increase of virtue. And Satyaki and Kritavarma, conversant with the use of weapons, possessed of mighty energy, well versed in all branches of knowledge, and obedient to Narayana in everything and competent in the use of weapons, had their births from Satyaka and Haridika. And the seed of the great Rishi Bharadwaja of severe penances, kept in a pot, began to develop. And from that seed came Drona, the pot-born. And from the seed of Gautama, fallen upon a clump of reeds, were born two that were twins, the mother of a Swadhaman, called Kripi, and Kripa of great strength. Then was born Drishtadyumna, of the splendor of Agni himself, from the sacrificial fire. And the mighty hero was born with bow in hand for the destruction of Drona. And from the sacrificial altar was born Krishna, Draupadi, resplendent and handsome, of bright features and excellent beauty. Then was born the disciple of Prahlada, viz. Nagnajit, and also Subala. And from Subala was born a son, Sakuni, who from the curse of the gods became the slayer of creatures and the foe of virtue. And unto him was also born a daughter, Gandhari, the mother of Duryodhana. And both were well versed in the arts of acquiring worldly profits. And from Krishna was born, in the soil of Vichitravirya, Dhritarashtra, the lord of men, and Pandu of great strength. And from Dwaipayana also born, in the Sudra caste, the wise and intelligent Vidura, conversant with both religion and profit, and free from all sins. And unto Pandu by his two wives were born 5 sons like the celestials. The eldest of them was Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira was born, of the seed, of Dharma, Yama, the god of justice, and Bhima of the wolf's stomach was born of Marut, the god of wind, and Dhananjaya, blessed with good fortune and the first of all wielders of weapons, was born of Indra, and Nakula and Sahadeva, of handsome features and ever engaged in the service of their superiors, were born of the twin twins. And unto the wise Dhritarashtra were born 100 sons, viz. Duryodhana and others, and another, named Yuyutsu, who was born of a Vaisya woman. And amongst those 101, 11, viz. Dusasana, Dusaha, Dharmarshana, Vikarna, Chitrasena, Vivinsati, Jaya, Satyavrata, Parumitra, and Yuyutsu by a Vaisya wife, were all Maharatha's great car warriors. And Abhimanyu was born of Subhadra, the sister of Vasudeva through Arjuna, and was, therefore, the grandson of the illustrious Pandu. And unto the 5 Pandavas were born 5 sons by their common wife Panchali. And these princes were all very handsome and conversant with all branches of knowledge. From Yudhishthira was born Pritavindya, from Vrakodara, Sudasoma, from Arjuna, Srutakirti, from Nakula, Satanika, and from Sahadeva, Srudasena of great prowess, and Bhima, in the forest begot on Hidamba a son named Katatkacha. And from Drapada was born a daughter Sikandin, who was afterwards transformed into a male child. Sikandini was so transformed into a male by Yaksha named Stuna from the desire of doing her good. In that great battle of the Kuras came hundreds of thousands of monarchs for fighting against one another. The names of the innumerable host I am unable to recount even in 10,000 years. I have named, however, the principal ones who have been mentioned in this history. Section L Xiv. Advancavatarana Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O Brahmana, those thou hast named and those thou hast not named, I wish to hear of them in detail, as also of other kings by thousands. And, O thou of great good fortune, it behoveth thee to tell me in full the object for which those Maharathas, equal unto the celestials themselves, were born on earth. Vaisampayana said, It hath been heard by us, O monarch, that what thou askest is a mystery even to the gods. I shall, however, speak of it unto thee, after bowing down to the self-born. The son of Jamadagni, Parashurama, after 21 times making the earth bereft of Kshatriyas, wended to that best of mountains Mahendra, and there began his ascetic penances. And at that time when the earth was bereft of Kshatriyas, the Kshatriya ladies, desirous of offspring, used to come, O monarch, to the Brahmanas, and Brahmanas of rigid vows had connection with them during the womanly season alone, but never, O king, lustfully and out of season. And Kshatriya ladies by thousands conceived from such connection with Brahmanas. Then, O monarch, were born many Kshatriyas of greater energy, boys and girls, so that the Kshatriya race might thrive. And thus sprang the Kshatriya race from Kshatriya ladies by Brahmanas of ascetic penances. And the new generation, blessed with long life, began to thrive in virtue. And thus were the 4 orders having Brahmanas at their head re-established. And every man at that time went in unto his wife during her season, and never from lust and out of season. And, O bull of the Bharata race, in the same way, other creatures also, even those born in the race of birds, went in unto their wives during the season alone. And, O protector of the earth, hundreds of thousands of creatures were born, and all were virtuous and began to multiply in virtue, all being free from sorrow and disease. And, O thou of the elephant's tread, this wide earth having the ocean for her boundaries, with her mountains and woods and towns, was once more governed by the Kshatriyas. And when the earth began to be again governed virtuously by the Kshatriyas, the other orders having Brahmanas for their first were filled with great joy. And the kings, giving up all vices born of lust and anger, and justly awarding punishments to those that deserved them, protected the earth. And he of 100 sacrifices, possessed also of 1,000 eyes, beholding that the Kshatriya monarchs ruled so virtuously, poured down vivifying showers at proper times and places and blessed all creatures. Then, O king, no one of immature years died, and none knew a woman before attaining to age. And thus, O bull of the Bharata race, the earth to the very coasts of the ocean became filled with men that were all long-lived. The Kshatriyas performed great sacrifices bestowing much wealth, and the Brahmanas also all studied the Vedas with their branches and the Upanishads. And, O king, no Brahmana in those days ever sold the Vedas, i.e., taught for money, or ever read aloud the Vedas in the presence of a Sudra. The Vaisyas, with the help of bullocks, caused the earth to be tilled. And they never yoked the cattle themselves. And they fed with care all cattle that were lean. And men never milked kine as long as the calves drank only the milk of their dams without having taken to grass or any other food. And no merchant in those days ever sold his articles by false scales. And, O tiger among men, all persons, holding to the ways of virtue, did everything with eyes set upon virtue. And, O monarch, all the orders were mindful of their own respective duties. Thus, O tiger among men, virtue in those days never sustained any diminution. And, O bull of the Bharata race, both kine and women gave birth to their offspring at the proper time. And trees bore flowers and fruit duly according to the seasons. And thus, O king, the Krita age having then duly set in, the whole earth was filled with numerous creatures. And, O bull of the Bharata race, when such was the blessed state of the terrestrial world, the Asuras, O lord of men, began to be born in kingly lines. And the sons of Diti, Daityas, being repeatedly defeated in war by the sons of Aditi, celestials, and deprived also of sovereignty in heaven, began to be incarnated on the earth. And, O king, the Asuras being possessed of great powers, and desirous of sovereignty began to be born on earth amongst various creatures, such as kine, horses, asses, camels, buffaloes, among creatures such as Rakshasas and others, and among elephants and deer. And, O protector of the earth, owing to those already born and to those that were being born, the earth became incapable of supporting herself. And amongst the sons of Diti and of Danu, cast out of heaven, some were born on the earth as kings of great pride and insolence. Possessed of great energy, they covered the earth in various shapes. Capable of oppressing all foes, they filled the earth having the ocean for its boundaries. And by their strength they began to oppress Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaisyas and Sudras and all other creatures also. Terrifying and killing all creatures, they traversed the earth, O king, in bands of hundreds and thousands. Devoid of truth and virtue, proud of their strength, and intoxicated with the wine of insolence, they even insulted the great rishis in their hermitages. And the earth, thus oppressed by the mighty Asuras endued with great strength and energy and possessed of abundant means, began to think of waiting on Brahman. The united strength of the creatures, such as Sesha, the tortoise, and the huge elephant, and of many Seshas too, became capable of supporting the earth with her mountains, burdened as she was with the weight of the Danavas. And then, O king, the earth, oppressed with weight and afflicted with fear, sought the protection of the grandsire of all creatures. And she beheld the divine Brahman, the creator of the world, who knoweth no deterioration, surrounded by the gods, Brahmanas, and great rishis, of exceeding good fortune, and adored by delighted Gandharvas and Apsaras, always engaged in the service of the celestials. And the earth, desirous of protection, then represented everything to him, in the presence, O Bharata, of all the regents of the worlds. But, O king, the earth's object had been known beforehand to the omniscient, self-create, and supreme Lord. And, O Bharata, creator as he is of the universe, why should he not know fully what is in the minds of his creatures, including the very gods and the Asuras? O king, the Lord of the earth, the creator of all creatures, also called Isa, Sambhu, Prajapati, then spake unto her. And Brahman said, O holder of wealth, for the accomplishment of the object for which thou hast approached me, I shall appoint all the dwellers in the heavens. Vaisampayana continued, having said so unto the earth, O king, the divine Brahman bade her farewell. And the Creator then commanded all the gods, saying, To ease the earth of her burden, go ye and have your births in her according to your respective parts, and seek ye strife with the Asuras already born there. And the Creator of all, summoning also all the tribes of the Gandharvas and the Apsaras, spake unto them these words of deep import, Go ye and be born amongst men according to your respective parts and forms that ye like. And all the gods with Indra, on hearing these words of the Lord of the Celestials, words that were true, desirable under the circumstances, and fraught with benefit, accepted them. And they all, having resolved to come down on earth in their respected parts, then went to Narayana, the slayer of all foes, at vacant, the one who has the discus and the mace in his hands, who is clad in purple, who is of great splendor, who hath the lotus on his navel, who is the slayer of the foes of the gods, who is of eyes looking down upon his wide chest, in yoga attitude, who is the lord of the Prajapati himself, the sovereign of all the gods, of mighty strength, who hath the mark of the auspicious whirl on his breast, who is the mover of every one's faculties, and who is adored by all the gods. Him, Indra, the most exalted of persons, addressed, saying, Be incarnate. And Hari replied, Let it be. Section L Xlvi. Sambhava Parva. Vaisampayana said, Then Indra had a consultation with Narayana about the latter's descent on the earth from heaven with all the gods according to their respective parts. And, having commanded all the dwellers in heaven, Indra returned from the abode of Narayana. And the dwellers in heaven gradually became incarnate on earth for the destruction of the Asuras and for the welfare of the three worlds. And then, O tiger among kings, the celestials had their births, according as they pleased, in the races of Brahmarshis and royal sages. And they slew the Danavas, Rakshasas, Gandharvas and snakes, other man-eaters, and many other creatures. And O bull in the Bharata race, the Danavas, Rakshasas and Gandharvas and snakes could not slay the incarnate celestials even in their infancy, so strong they were. Janamejaya said, I desire to hear from the beginning of the births of the gods, the Danavas, the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, men, Yakshas and Rakshasas. Therefore, it behoveth thee to tell me about the births of all creatures. Vaisampayana said, Indeed, I shall, having bowed down to the self-create, tell thee in detail the origin of the celestials and other creatures. It is known that Brahman hath 6 spiritual sons, viz. Marichi, Atri, Angiras, Pulastya, Pulaha and Kritu. And Marichi's son is Kasyapa, and from Kasyapa have sprung these creatures. Unto Daksha, one of the Prajapatis, were born 13 daughters of great good fortune. The daughters of Daksha are, O tiger among men and prince of the Bharata race, Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kala, Danayu, Sinhika, Krata, Prata, Viswa, Vineta, Kapila, Muni, and Kadru. The sons and grandsons of these, gifted with great energy, are countless. From Aditi have sprung the 12 Adityas who are the lords of the universe. And, O Bharata, as they are according to their names, I shall recount them to thee. They are Datri, Mitra, Aryaman, Sakra, Varuna, Ansa, Vega, Vivaswat, Asha, Savitri, Kavastri, and Vishnu. The youngest, however, is superior to them all in merit. Diti had one son called Hiranyakasipu, and the illustrious Hiranyakasipu had 5 sons, all famous throughout the world. The eldest of them all was Prahlada, the next was Sarada, the third was Anuradha, and after him were Sivi and Vashkala. And, O Bharata, it is known everywhere that Prahlada had 3 sons. They were Vairashana, Kumbha, and Nikumba. And unto Vairashana was born a son, Vali, of great prowess. And the son of Vali is known to be the great Asura, Vana. And blessed with good fortune, Vana was a follower of Rudra and was known also by the name of Mahakala. And Danu had 40 sons, O Bharata. The eldest of them all was Viprachiti of great fame Sambara, and Namuchi and Palaman, Asilaman, and Kesi and Durjaya, Ayasiras, Aswasiras, and the powerful Aswasanku, also Gaganamardan, and Vagavat, and he called Ketumit, Swarbanu, Aswa, Aswapati, Vrishaparvan, and then Ayaka, and Aswagriva, and Sukshama, and Tuhunda of great strength, Ekapada, and Ekachakra, Virapaksha, Mayadara, and Nichandra, and Nikumba, Kapada, and then Kapada, Saraba, and Sulabha, Surya, and then Chandramas. These in the race of Danu are stated to be well known. The Surya and Chandramas, the sun and the moon, of the celestials are other persons, and not the sons of Danu as mentioned above. The following 10, gifted with great strength and vigor, were also, O king, born in the race of Danu, Akaksha, Amritapa of heroic courage, Pralamba and Naraka, Vitrapi, Satrudapana, and Satha, the great Asura, Gavishta, and Vanayu, and the Danava called Durgajiva. And, O Bharata, the sons and the grandsons of these were known to be countless. And Sinhika gave birth to Rahu, the persecutor of the sun and the moon, and to 3 others, Suchandra, Chandrahantri, and Chandrapramardana. And the countless progeny of Krura Krata were as crooked and wicked as herself. And the tribe was wrathful, of crooked deeds, and persecutors of their foes. And Danayu also had 4 sons who were bulls among the Asuras. They were Vikshara, Bala, Vira, and Vritra the great Asura. And the sons of Kala were all like Yama himself and smiter of all foes. And they were of great energy, and oppressors of all foes. And the sons of Kala were Venasana and Krata, and then Kratahantri, and Kratasatru. And there were many others among the sons of Kala. And Sukra, the son of Arishi, was the chief priest of the Asuras. And the celebrated Sukra had 4 sons who were priests of the Asuras. And they were Tashtadara and Atri, and 2 others of fierce deeds. They were like the sun himself in energy, and set their hearts on acquiring the regions of Brahman. Thus hath been recited by me, as heard in the Purana, a progeny of the gods and the Asuras, both of great strength and energy. I am incapable, O king, of counting the descendants of these, countless as they are not much known to fame. And the sons of Vineta were Tarkya and Arishtanemi, and Garuda and Aruna, and Aruni and Varuni. And Sesha or Ananta, Vasuki, Takshaka, Kumara, and Kulika are known to be the sons of Kadru, and Bhimasena, Ugrasena, Saparna, Varuna, Gopati, and Dhritarashtra, and Suryavarchas the 7th, Satyavakas, Arkaparna, Prayuta, Bhima, and Chitraratha known to fame, of great learning, and a controller of his passions, and then Kalasiras, and, O king, Parjanya, the 14th in the list, Kali, the 15th, and Narda, the 16th. These Devas and Gandharvas are known to be the sons of Muni, Daksha's daughter as mentioned before. I shall recount many others, O Bharata. Vanavadya Manu, Vansa, Asura, Marganapriya, Anupa, Subhaga, Vasi, were the daughters brought forth by Prata, Siddha, and Purna, and Varhan, and Purnaeus of great fame, Brahmakaran, Radaguna, and Saparna who was the 7th, Viswavasu, Banu, and Suchandra who was the 10th, were also the sons of Prata. All these were celestial Gandharvas. And it is also known that this Prata of great fortune, through the celestial Rishi Kasyapa, her husband, brought forth the sacred of the Apsaras, Alambusha, Misraksi, Vidyuparna, Tilatama, Aruna, Rakshita, Ramba, Manorama, Kasini, Subahu, Sarada, Saraja, and Supriya were the daughters, and Adavahu and the celebrated Haha and Huhu, and Tumhiru were the sons, the best of Gandharvas of Prata and Amrita. The Brahmanas, Kine, Gandharvas, and Apsaras were born of Kapila as stated in the Purana. Thus hath been recited to thee by me the birth of all creatures duly of Gandharvas and Apsaras, of snakes, Suparnas, Rudras, and Maruts, of kine and of Brahmanas blessed with great good fortune, and of sacred deeds. And this account, if read, extendeth the span of life, is sacred, worthy of all praise, and giveth pleasure to the ear. It should be always heard and recited to others, in a proper frame of mind. He who duly readeth this account of the birth of all high-souled creatures in the presence of the gods and Brahmanas, obtaineth large progeny, good fortune, and fame, and attaineth also to excellent worlds hereafter. Section L Xvi. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, it is known that the spiritual sons of Brahman were the 6 great rishis already mentioned. There was another of the name of Stanu. And the sons of Stanu, gifted with great energy, were, it is known, 11. They were Marigavayada, Sarpa, Nirati of great fame, Ajikapit, Ahiradna, and Pinaki, the oppressor of foes, Dahana and Iswara, and Kapali of great splendor, and Stanu, and the illustrious Bharga. These are called the 11 Rudras. It hath been already said, that Marichi, Angiras, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, and Kritu, these 6 great rishis of great energy are the sons of Brahman. It is well known in the world that Angiras' sons are 3, Brihaspati, Udadaya, and Samvarta, all of rigid vows. And, O king, it is said that the sons of Atri are numerous. And, being great rishis, they are all conversant with the Vedas, crowned with ascetic success, and of souls in perfect peace. And, O tiger among kings, the sons of Pulastya of great wisdom are Rakshasas, monkeys, Kinnaras, half men and half horses, and Yakshas. And, O king, the son of Pulaha were, it is said, the Salabas, the winged insects, the lions, the Kimpurushas, half lions and half men, the tigers, bears, and wolves. And the sons of Kritu, sacred as sacrifices, are the companions of Surya, the Valakilyas, known in 3 worlds and devoted to truth and vows. And, O protector of the earth, the illustrious Rishi Daksha, of soul in complete peace, and of great asceticism, sprung from the right toe of Brahman. And from the left toe of Brahman sprang the wife of the high-souled Daksha. And the Muni begat upon her 50 daughters, and all those daughters were of faultless features and limbs and of eyes like lotus petals. And the Lord Daksha, not having any sons, made those daughters his putrikas, so that their sons might belong both to himself and to their husbands. And Daksha bestowed, according to the sacred ordinance, 10 of his daughters on Dharma, 27 on Chandra the moon, and 13 on Kassipa. Listen as I recount the wives of Dharma according to their names. They are 10 in all: Kirti, Lakshmi, Dhriti, Meta, Pushti, Shraddha, Kriya, Buddy, Laja, and Mali. These are the wives of Dharma as appointed by the self-create. It is known also throughout the world that the wives of Soma, moon, are 27. And the wives of Soma, all of sacred vows, are employed in indicating time, and they are the Nakshatras and the Yoginis, and they became so for assisting the courses of the worlds. And Brahman had another son named Manu. And Manu had a son of the name of Prajapati. And the sons of Prajapati were 8 and were called Vasus, whom I shall name in detail. They were Dara, Dhruva, Soma, Aha, Anila, Anala, Pratyusha, and Prabhasa. These 8 are known as the Vasus. Of these, Dara and the truth-knowing Dhruva were born of Dhumra, Chandramas, Soma, and Swasana. Anila were born of the intelligent Swasa. Aha was the son of Radha, and Hudasana, Anala, of Sandalya, and Pratyusha and Prabhasa were the sons of Prabhata. And Dara had 2 sons, Dravina and Hudahavyavaha. And the son of Dhruva is the illustrious Kala, time, the destroyer of the worlds. And Soma's son is the resplendent Varchas. And Varchas begot upon his wife Manahara 3 sons, Sasira, and Ramana. And the son of Aha were Yada, Sama, Santa, and also Muni. And the son of Agni is the handsome Kumara born in a forest of reeds. And he is also called Kartikeya because he was reared by Kritika and others. And after Kartikeya, there were born his 3 brothers Saka, Vizaka, Negamaya. And the wife of Anila is Shiva, and Shiva's son were Manahava and Avijnatagadi. These 2 were the sons of Anila. The son of Pratyusha, you must know, is the rishi named Devala, and Devala had 2 sons who were both exceedingly forgiving and of great mental power. And the sister of Brihaspati, the first of women, uttering the sacred truth, engaged in ascetic penances, roamed over the whole earth, and she became the wife of Prabhasa, the 8th Vasu. And she brought forth the illustrious Viswakarman, the founder of all arts. And he was the originator of 1,000 arts, the engineer of the immortals, the maker of all kinds of ornaments, and the first of artists. And he it was who constructed the celestial cars of the gods, and mankind are enabled to live in consequence of the inventions of that illustrious one. And he is worshipped, for that reason, by men. And he is eternal and immutable, this Viswakarman. And the illustrious Dharma, the dispenser of all happiness, assuming a human countenance, came out through the right breast of Brahman. And Ahasta, Dharma, hath 3 excellent sons capable of charming every creature. And they are Sama, Kama, Harsha, peace, desire, and joy. And by their energy they are supporting the worlds. And the wife of Kama is Rati, of Sama is Prapti, and the wife of Harsha is Nanda. And upon them, indeed, are the worlds made to depend. And the son of Marichi is Kassipa. And Kassipa's offspring are the gods and the Asuras. And, therefore, is Kassipa, the father of the worlds. And Tavashtri, of the form of Vadava, a mare, became the wife of Savitri. And she gave birth, in the skies, to 2 greatly fortunate twins, the Aswins. And, O king, the sons of Aditi are 12 with Indra heading them all. And the youngest of them all was Vishnu upon whom the worlds depend. These are the 33 gods, the 8 Vasis, the 11 Rudras, the 12 Adityas, Prajapati, and Vashatkara. I shall now recount their progeny according to their Pakshas, Kulas, and Ganas. The Rudras, the Satyas, the Maruts, the Vasis, the Bhargavas, and the Visdevas are each reckoned as a Paksha. Garuda the son of Vineta and the mighty Aruna also, and the illustrious Vrahaspati are reckoned among the Adityas. The twins, all annual plants, and all inferior animals, are reckoned among the Guyakas. These are the Ganas of the gods recited to thee, O king. This recitation washes men of all sins. The illustrious Bhrigu came out ripping open the breast of Brahman. The learned Sukra is Bhrigu's son, and the learned Sukra becoming a planet and engaged according to the command of the self-existent in pouring and withholding rain, and in dispensing and remitting calamities, traverses, for sustaining the lives of all the creatures in the 3 worlds, through the skies. And the learned Sukra, of great intelligence and wisdom, of rigid vows, leading the life of a Brahmacharan, divided himself in twain by power of asceticism, and became the spiritual guide of both the Daityas and the gods. And after Sukra was thus employed by Brahman in seeking the welfare of the gods and the Asuras, Bhrigu begot another excellent son. This was Chiyavana, who was like the blazing sun, a virtuous soul, and of great fame. And he came out of his mother's womb in anger and became the cause of his mother's release, O king, from the hands of the Rakshasas. And Arushi, the daughter of Manu, became the wife of the wise Chiyavana. And Andhra was begotten Orva of great reputation. And he came out ripping open the thigh of Arushi. And Orva begot Richika, and Richika even in his boyhood became possessed of great power and energy, and of every virtue. And Richika begot Jamadagni, and the high-souled Jamadagni had 4 sons. And the youngest of them all was Rama Parashurama. And Rama was superior to all his brothers in the possession of good qualities. And he was skillful in all weapons, and became the slayer of the Kshatriyas. And he had his passions under complete control. And Orva had 100 sons with Jamadagni the eldest. And these 100 sons had offspring by thousands spread over this earth. And Brahman had 2 other sons, viz. Datri and Vidatri, who stayed with Manu. Their sister is the auspicious Lakshmi, having her abode amid lotuses. And the spiritual sons of Lakshmi are the sky-ranging horses. And the daughter born of Sukra, named Devi, became the eldest wife of Varuna. Of her were born a son named Vala and a daughter named Sura, wine, to the joy of the gods. And Adharma, sin, was born when creatures, from want of food, began to devour one another. And Adharma always destroys every creature. And Adharma hath Nirati for his wife, whence the Rakshasas who are called Niritas, offspring of Nirati. And she hath also 3 other cruel sons always engaged in sinful deeds. They are Bhaya, fear, Mahabhaya, terror, and Maridyu, death, who is always engaged in slaying every created thing. And, as he is all-destroying, he hath no wife, and no son. And Tamar brought forth 5 daughters known throughout the worlds. They are Kaki, crow, Sayini, hawk, Fasi, hen, Dhritarashtra, goose, and Suki, parrot. And Kaki brought forth the crows, Sayini, the hawks, the cocks and vultures, Dhritarashtra, all ducks and swans, and she also brought forth all Chakravakas, and the fair Suki, of amiable qualities, and possessing all auspicious signs brought forth all the parrots. And Krata gave birth to 9 daughters, all of wrathful disposition. And their names were Mrigi, Marigamanda, Hari, Bhadramana, Matangi, Sarduli, Sweta, Sarabi, and the agreeable Sarasa, blessed with every virtue. And, O foremost of men, the offspring of Mrigi are all animals of the deer species. And the offspring of Marigamanda are all animals of the bear species, and those called Srimara, sweet-footed. And Bhadramana begot the celestial elephants, Airavata. And the offspring of Hari are all animals of the simian species endued with great activity, so also all the horses. And those animals also, that are called Golangula, the cow-tailed, are said to be the offspring of Hari. And Sarduli begot lions and tigers in numbers, and also leopards and all other strong animals. And, O king, the offspring of Matangi are all the elephants. And Sweta begat the large elephant known by the name of Sweta, endued with great speed. And, O king, Sarabi gave birth to 2 daughters, the amiable Rahini and the far-famed Gandharvi. And, O Virata, she had also 2 other daughters named Vimala and Anala. From Rahini have sprung all kind, and from Gandharvi all animals of the horse species. And Anala begat the 7 kinds of trees yielding pulpy fruits. They are the date, the palm, the hintela, the talai, the little date, the nut, and the coconut. And she had also another daughter called Suki, the mother of the parrot species. And Sarasa bore a son called Kanka, a species of long-feathered birds. And Sayini, the wife of Aruna, gave birth to 2 sons of great energy and strength, named Sampati and the mighty Jatayu. Sarasa also bore the Nagas, and Kadru, the Panagas, snakes. And Vineta had 2 sons Garuda and Aruna, known far and wide. And, O king of men, O foremost of intelligent persons, thus hath the genealogy of all the principal creatures been fully described by me. By listening to this, a man is fully cleansed of all his sins, and acquireth great knowledge, and finally attaineth to the first of states in afterlife. Section L Xvii. Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O worshipful one, I wish to hear from thee in detail about the birth, among men, of the gods, the Danavas, the Gandharvas, the Rakshasas, the lions, the tigers, and the other animals, the snakes, the birds, and in fact, of all creatures. I wish also to hear about the acts and achievements of those, in due order, after they became incarnate in human forms. Vaisampayana said, O king of men, I shall first tell thee all about those celestials and Danavas that were born among men. The first of Danavas, who was known by the name of Viprachati, became that bull among men, noted as Jarasandha. And, O king, that son of Diti, who was known as Hiranyakasipu, was known in this world among men as the powerful Sisupala. He who had been known as Samlata, the younger brother of Prahlada, became among men the famous Salya, that bull amongst Valhikas. The spirited Anulata, who had been the youngest, became noted in the world as Drishtakatu. And, O king, that son of Diti who had been known as Sivi became on earth the famous monarch Druma. And he who was known as the great Asura Bashkala became on earth the great Bhagadatta. The 5 great Asuras gifted with great energy, Ayasira, Aswasira, the spirited Asanku, Gaganamardhan, and Bhagavat, were all born in the royal line of Kekaya and all became great monarchs. That other Asura of mighty energy who was known by the name of Kedumit became on earth the monarch Amitu of terrible deeds. That great Asura who was known as Swarbhanu became on earth the monarch Agrasena of fierce deeds. That great Asura who was known as Aswa became on earth the monarch Asoka of exceeding energy and invincible in battle. And, O king, the younger brother of Aswa who was known as Aswapati, a son of Diti, became on earth the mighty monarch Hardakya. The great and fortunate Asura who was known as Vrishaparvan became noted on earth as King Durgaprajna. And, O king, the younger brother of Vrishaparvan who was known by the name of Ayaka became noted on earth as King Salwa. The powerful and mighty Asura who was known as Aswagriva became noted on earth as King Rochamana. And, O king, the Asura who was known as Sukshma, endued with great intelligence and whose achievements also were great, became on earth the famous King Brihadratha. And that first of Asuras who was known by the name of Tuhanda became noted on earth as the monarch Senavendu. That Asura of great strength who was known as Ishupa became the monarch Nagnahita of famous prowess. The great Asura who was known as Ekachakra became noted on earth as Pridavindya. The great Asura Virupaksha capable of displaying various modes of fight became noted on earth as King Chitravarman. The first of Danavas, the heroic Hara, who humbled the pride of all foes, became on earth the famous and fortunate Subahu. The Asura Sutra of great energy and the destroyer of foemen became noted on earth as the fortunate monarch Munjakesa. That Asura of great intelligence called Nikumba, who was never vanquished in battle, was born on earth as King Devadipa, the first among monarchs. That great Asura known amongst the sons of Diti by the name of Sarava became on earth the royal sage called Paurava. And, O king, the great Asura of exceeding energy, the fortunate Kupatha, was born on earth as the famous monarch Suparswa. The great Asura, O king, who was called Kratha, was born on earth as the royal sage Parvataya of form resplendent like a golden mountain. He amongst the Asura who was known as Salabha II became on earth the monarch Prahlada in the country of the Valhikas. The foremost, among the sons of Diti known by the name of Chandra and handsome as the lord of the stars himself became on earth noted as Chandravarman, the king of the Kamboyas. That bull amongst the Danavas who was known by the name of Arka became on earth, O king, the royal sage Rishika. That best of Asuras who was known as Mri Tapa became on earth, O best of kings, the monarch Pasamanupaka. That great Asura of surpassing energy known as Garisha became noted on earth as King Drumasena. The great Asura who was known as Mayura became noted on earth as the monarch Viswa. He who was the younger brother of Mayura and called Saparna became noted on earth as the monarch Kalakirti. The mighty Asura who was known as Chandrahantri became on earth the royal sage Sanaka. The great Asura who was called Chandravinasana became noted on earth as the monarch Janaki. That bull amongst the Danavas, O prince of the Kuru race, who was called Durgajiva, became noted on earth as Kasaraja. The Graha who was brought forth by Sinhika and who persecuted the sun and the moon became noted on earth as the monarch Kratha. The eldest of the 4 sons of Danayu, who was known by the name of Vikshara, became known on earth the spirited monarch Basamitra. The second brother of Vikshara, the great Asura, was born on earth as the king of the country, called Pandya. That best of Asuras who was known by the name of Valina became on earth the monarch Pandramatsyaka. And, O king, that great Asura who was known as Britra became on earth the royal sage known by the name of Manamat. That Asura who was the younger brother of Britra and known as Kratahantri became noted on earth as King Danda. That other Asura who was known by the name Kratavardhana became noted on earth as the monarch Dandadara. The 8 sons of the Kalias that were born on earth all became great kings endued with the prowess of tigers. The eldest of them all became King Jayatsena in Magadha. The second of them, in prowess, like Indra, became noted on earth as a Parahita. The third of them, endued with great energy and power of producing deception, was born on earth as the king of the Nishadas gifted with great prowess. That other amongst them who was known as the fourth was noted on earth as Srenamat, that best of royal sages. That great Asura amongst them who was the fifth became noted on earth as King Mahanhes, the oppressor of enemies. That great Asura possessing great intelligence who was the sixth of them became noted on earth as Avaru, that best of royal sages. The seventh of them became known throughout earth from the center to the sea, as King Samudrasena well acquainted with the truths of the scriptures. The eighth of the Kalias known as Brihad became on earth a virtuous king ever engaged in the good of all creatures. The mighty Danava known by the name of Kukshi became on earth as Parvatiya from his brightness as of a golden mountain. The mighty Asura Krathana gifted with great energy became noted on earth as the monarch Suryaksha. The great Asura of handsome features known by the name of Surya became on earth the monarch of the Valhikas by name Dharata, that foremost of all kings. And, O king, from the tribe of Asuras called Kratavasa, of whom I have already spoken to thee, were born many heroic kings on earth. Madraka, and Karnaveshta, Siddhartha, and also Kataka, Suvira, and Subahu, and Mahavira, and also Valhika, Kratha, Vichitra, Suratha, and the handsome King Nila, and Chiravasa, and Bhumipala, and Dantavakra, and he who was called Durjaya, that tiger amongst kings named Rukmi, and King Janamejaya, Ashada, and Vayuvega, and also Giritehas, Ekalavya, and Sumitra, Vadadana, and also Gomukha, the tribe of kings called the Karushakas, and also Kamadharti, Sruteu, and Udvaha, and also Vrahatsena, Kshama, Ugradartha. The king of the Kalingas, and Madamat, and he was known as King Iswara. These first of kings were all born of the Asura class called Kratavasa. There was also born on earth a mighty Asura known amongst the Danavas by the name of Kalanemi, endued with great strength, of grand achievements, and blessed with a large share of prosperity. He became the mighty son of Ugrasena and was known on earth by the name of Kansa. And he who was known among the Asuras by the name of Devaka and was besides in splendor like unto Indra himself, was born on earth as the foremost king of the Gandharvas. And, O monarch, know thou that Drona, the son of Bharadwaja, not born of any woman, sprung from a portion of the celestial Rishi Vrahaspati of grand achievements. And he was the prince of all bowmen, conversant with all weapons, of mighty achievements, of great energy. Thou shouldst know he was also well acquainted with the Vedas and the science of arms. And he was of wonderful deeds and the pride of his race. And, O king, his son the heroic Aswadhaman, of eyes like the lotus petals, gifted with surpassing energy, and the terror of all foes, the great oppressor of all enemies, was born on earth, of the united portions of Mahadeva, Yama, Kama, and Krata. And from the curse of Vasistha and the command also of Indra, the 8 Vasis were born of Ganga by her husband Santanu. The youngest of them was Bhishma, the dispeller of the fears of the Kurus, gifted with great intelligence, conversant with the Vedas, the first speakers, and the thinner of the enemy's ranks. And possessed of mighty energy and the first of all persons acquainted with weapons, he encountered the illustrious Rama himself, the son of Jamadagni of the Bhrigu race. And, O king, that Brahmin sage who, on earth, was known by the name of Kripa and was the embodiment of all manliness, was born of the tribe of the Rudras. And the mighty chariot fighter and king who on earth was known by the name of Sakuni, that crusher of foes, thou shouldst know, O king, was Dwapara himself, the 3rd Yuga. And he who was Satyaki of Sharaim, that upholder of the pride of Vrishni race, that oppressor of foes, begotten of the portion of gods called the Maruts. And that royal sage Drapada who on earth was a monarch, the first among all persons bearing arms, was also born of the same tribe of the Celestials. And, O king, thou shouldst also know that Kritavarman, that prince among men, of deeds unsurpassed by any one, and the foremost of all bulls amongst Kshatriyas, was born of the portion of the same Celestials. And that royal sage also, Bharata by name, the scorcher of the kingdoms of others, and the great oppressor of all foes, was born of the portion of the same gods. That son of Arishta who was known by the name of Hansa, was born in the Kuru race and became the monarch of the Gandharvas. He who was known as Dhritarashtra, born of the seed of Krishna Dwaipayana, and gifted with long arms and great energy, also a monarch, of the prophetic eye, became blind in consequence of the fault of his mother and the wrath of the Rishi. His younger brother who was possessed of great strength and was really a great being known as Pandu, devoted to truth and virtue, was purity's self. And, O king, thou shouldst know that he who was known on earth as Vidura, who was the first of all virtuous men, who was the god of justice himself, was the excellent and greatly fortunate son of the Rishi Atri. The evil-minded and wicked king Duryodhana, the destroyer of the fair fame of the Kurus, was born of a portion of Kali on earth. He it was who caused all creatures to be slain and the earth to be wasted, and he it was who fanned the flame of hostility that ultimately consumed all. They who had been the sons of Pulastya, the Rakshasas, were born on earth among men of Duryodhana's brothers, that century of wicked individuals commencing with Duhasasana as their first. And, O bull among the Bharata princes, Dharmaka, Dasaha, and others whose names I do not mention, who always supported Duryodhana in all his schemes, were, indeed, the sons of Pulastya. And over and above these 100, Dhritarashtra had one son named Yuyutsu, born of a Vasya wife. Janamejaya said, O illustrious one, tell me the names of Dhritarashtra's sons according to the order of their birth beginning from the eldest. Vaisampayana said, O king, they are as follows, Duryodhana, and Yuyutsu, and also Dasasana, Dasaha and Dashala, and then Dharmaka, Vivansati, and Vikarna, Jalasanda, Salokna, Vinda and Anuvinda, Durdarsha, Subahu, Dashpradarshana, Dharmarshana, and Dashkarna, and Karna, Chitra and Vipachitra, Chitraksha, Sharuchitra, and Angada, Dharmata, and Dashpradarsha, Vivitsu, Vikata, Sama, Urananaba, and Padmanabha, Nanda and Upanandaka, Sanapati, Sushina, Kundodara, Mayadara, Chitravahu, and Chitravarman, Suvarman. Durvairashana, Iovahu, Mahabahu, Chitrachapa and Sukandala, Bhimavega, Bhimavala, Valaki, Bhimavikrama, Ugrayuda, Bhimayura, Kanakayu, Dridhayuda, Dridavarman, Dridakshatra Somakurti, Anadara, Jarasanda, Dridasanda, Satyasanda, Sahasrabaya, Ugrazravas, Ugrasena, and Kshimamurti, Aprajita, Pandataka, Visalaksha, Duradara, Dridahasta, and Sahasta, Vitavega, and Suvarchasa, Adityaketu, Vavesan, Nagadatta and Anayayana, Nishanji, Kuvachi, Dandi, Dandadara, Danugraha, Ugra, Bhimaratha, Vira, Bhairavahu. Alalupa, Abhaya, and Radrakarman, also he who was Dhritartha, Anadrishaya, Kundaveda, Bhairavi, Durgalochana, Durgabahu, Mahabahu, Vyadhoru, Kanakangana, Kundaha and Chitraka. There was also a daughter named Dusala who was over and above the 100. And Uyutsu who was Dhritarashtra's son by Vasia wife, was also over and above the 100. Thus, O king, have I recited the names of the 100 sons and also that of the daughter of Dhritarashtra. Thou hast now known their names according to the order of their births. All of them were heroes and great car warriors, and skilled in the art of warfare. Besides, all of them were versed in the Vedas, and, O king, all of them had got through the scriptures. All of them were mighty in attack and defense, and all were graced with learning. And, O monarch, all of them had wives suitable to them in grace and accomplishments. And, O king, when the time came, the Kaurava monarch bestowed his daughter Dusala on Jayadratha, the king of the Sindhus, agreeably to the counsels of Sakuni. And, O monarch, learn that King Yudhishthira was a portion of Dharma, that Bhimasena was of the deity of wind, that Arjuna was of Indra, the chief of the celestials, and that Nakula and Sahadeva, the handsomest beings among all creatures, and unrivaled for beauty on earth, were similarly portions of the twinest winds. And he who was known as the mighty Varchas, the son of Soma, became Abhimanyu of wonderful deeds, the son of Arjuna. And before his incarnation, O king, the god Soma had said these words to the celestials, I cannot give part with my son. He is dearer to me than life itself. Let this be the compact and let it be not transgressed. The destruction of the Asuras on earth is the work of the celestials, and therefore, it is our work as well. Let this Varchas, therefore, go thither, but let him not stay there long. Nara, whose companion is Narayana, will be born as Indra's son and indeed, will be known as Arjuna, the mighty son of Pandu. This boy of mine shall be his son and become a mighty car warrior in his boyhood. And let him, ye best of immortals, stay on earth for 16 years. And when he attaineth to his 16th year, the battle shall take place in which all who are born of your portion shall achieve the destruction of mighty warriors. But a certain encounter shall take place without both Nara and Narayana taking any part in it. And, indeed, your portions, ye celestials, shall fight, having made that disposition of the forces which is known by the name of the Chakravyuha. And my son shall compel all foes to retreat before him. The boy of mighty arms having penetrated the impenetrable array, shall range within it fearlessly and send a fourth part of the hostile force, in course of half a day, unto the regions of the king of the dead. Then when numberless heroes and mighty car warriors will return to the charge towards the close of the day, my boy of mighty arms shall reappear before me. And he shall beget one heroic son in his line, who shall continue the almost extinct Bharata race. Hearing these words of Soma, the dwellers in heaven replied, so be it. And then all together applauded and worshipped Soma, the king of stars. Thus, O king, have I recited to thee the particulars of the birth of thy father's father. Know also, O monarch, that the mighty car warrior Drishtadhyumna was a portion of Agni. And know also that Sikandhan, who was at first a female, was the incarnation of a Rakshasa. And, O bull in Bharata's race, they who became the 5 sons of Draupadi, those bulls amongst the Bharata princes, were the celestials known as the Viswas. Their names were Pritavindya, Sudasoma, Srutakirti, Satanika, Nikula, and Srudasena, endued with mighty energy. Sura, the foremost of the Yadis, was the father of Vasudeva. He had a daughter called Pritha, who for her beauty, was unrivaled on earth. And Sura, having promised in the presence of fire that he would give his firstborn child to Kuntiboha, the son of his paternal aunt, who was without offspring, gave his daughter unto the monarch in expectation of his favors. Kuntiboha thereupon made her his daughter. And she became, thenceforth, in the house of her adoptive father, engaged in attending upon Brahmanas and guests. One day she had to wait upon the wrathful ascetic of rigid vows, Durvasa by name, acquainted with truth and fully conversant with the mysteries of religion. And Pritha with all possible care gratified the wrathful rishi with soul under complete control. The Holy One, gratified with the attentions bestowed on him by the maiden, told her, I am satisfied, O fortunate one, with thee. By this mantra that I am about to give thee, thou shalt be able to summon to thy side whatever celestials thou likest. And, by their grace, shalt thou also obtain children. Thus addressed, the girl, a little while after, seized with curiosity, summoned, during the period of her maidenhood, the god Surya. And the Lord of Light thereupon made her conceive and begot on her a son who became the first of all wielders of weapons. From fear of relatives she brought forth in secrecy that child who had come out with earrings and coat of mail. And he was gifted with the beauty of a celestial infant, and in splendor was like unto the maker of day himself. And every part of his body was symmetrical and well adorned. And Kunti cast the handsome child into the water. But the child thus thrown into the water was taken up by the excellent husband of Radha and given by him to his wife to be adopted by her as their son. And the couple gave him the name of Vasasana, by which appellation the child soon became known all over the land. And, as he grew up, he became very strong and excelled in all weapons. The first of all successful persons, he soon mastered the sciences. And when the intelligent one having truth for his strength recited the Vedas, there was nothing he would not then give to the Brahmanas. At that time Indra, the originator of all things, moved by the desire of benefiting his own son Arjuna, assumed the guise of a Brahmana, came to him, and begged of the hero his earrings and natural armor. And the hero taking off his earrings and armor gave them unto the Brahmana. And Sakra, accepting the gift, presented to the giver a dart, surprised at his open-handedness, and addressed him in these words, O invincible one, amongst the celestials, Asuras, men, Gandharvas, Nagas, and Rakshasas, he at whom thou hurlest this weapon, that one shall certainly be slain. And the son of Surya was at first known in the world by the name of Vasasana. But for his deeds, he subsequently came to be called Karna. And because that hero of great fame had taken off his natural armor, therefore was he the first son of Pritha called Kama. And O best of kings, the hero began to grow up in the Sudha caste. And, O king, know thou that Kama, the first of all exalted men, the foremost of all wielders of weapons, the slayer of foes, and the best portion of the maker of day, was the friend and counselor of Duryodhana. And he, called Vasudeva, endued with great valor, was among men a portion of him called Narayana, the god of gods eternal. And Baladeva of exceeding strength was a portion of the Naga, Sesha. And, O monarch, know that Pradyumna of great energy was Sanatkumara. And in this way the portion of various other dwellers in heaven became exalted men in the race of Vasudeva, increasing the glory thereof. And, O king, the portions of the tribe of Apsaras which I have mentioned already, also became incarnate on earth according to Indra's commands, and 16,000 portions of those goddesses became, O king, in this world of men, the wives of Vasudeva. And a portion of Shri herself became incarnate on earth for the gratification of Narayana, in the line of Bhishmaka. And she was by name the chaste Rukmini. And the faultless Draupadi, slender-waisted like the wasp, was born of a portion of Saki, the queen of the celestials, in the line of Drupada. And she was neither low nor tall in stature. And she was of the fragrance of the blue lotus, of eyes large as lotus petals, of thighs fair and round, of dense masses of black curly hair. And endued with every auspicious feature and of complexion like that of the emerald, she became the charmer of the hearts of 5 foremost of men. And the 2 goddesses Siti and Driti became the mothers of those 5, and were called Kunti and Madri. And she who was Mati became the daughter, Gandhari, of Subala. Thus, O king, have I recited to thee all about the incarnation, according to their respective portions, of the gods, the Asuras, the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, and of the Rakshasas. They who were born on earth as monarchs invincible in battle, those high-souled ones who were born in the wide-extended line of the Yadis, they who were born as mighty monarchs in other lines, they who were born as Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaisyas, have all been recited by me duly. And this account of the incarnation, of superior beings according to their respective portions capable of bestowing wealth, fame, offspring, long life, and success, should always be listened to in a proper frame of mind. And having listened to this account of incarnation, according to their portions, of gods, Gandharvas, and Rakshasas, the hero becoming acquainted with the creation, preservation, and destruction of the universe and acquiring wisdom, is never cast down even under the most engrossing sorrows. Section L Xvii. Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O Brahmana, I have, indeed, heard from thee this account of the incarnation, according to their portions, of the gods, the Danavas, the Rakshasas, and also of the Gandharvas and the Apsaras. I, however, again desire to hear of the dynasty of the Kuras from the very beginning. Therefore, O Brahmana, speak of this in the presence of all these regenerate rishis. Vaisampayana said, O exalted one of Bharata's race, the founder of the Paurava line was Dushmanta, gifted with great energy. And he was the protector of the earth, bounded by the 4 seas. And that king had full sway over 4 quarters of this world. And he was the lord also of various regions in the midst of the sea. And that great oppressor of all foes had sway over the countries even of the Malekshas. And during his rule there were no men of mixed castes, no tillers of the soil, for the land, of itself, yielded produce, no workers of mines, for the surface of the earth yielded in abundance, and no sinful men. All were virtuous, and did everything from virtuous motives, O tiger among men. There was no fear of thieves, O dear one, no fear of famine, no fear of disease. And all 4 orders took pleasure in doing their respective duties and never performed religious acts for obtaining fruition of desires. And his subjects, depending upon him, never entertained any fear. And Parjanya, Indra, poured showers at the proper time, and the produce of the fields was always pulpy and juicy. And the earth was full of all kinds of wealth and all kinds of animals. And the Brahmanas were always engaged in their duties, and they were always truthful. And the youthful monarch was endued with wonderful prowess and a physical frame hard as the thunderbolt, so that he could, taking up the mountain Mandara with its forests and bushes, support it on his arms. And he was well skilled in 4 kinds of encounters with the mace, hurling it at foes at a distance, striking at those that are near, whirling it in the midst of many, and driving the foe before. And he was skilled also in the use of all kinds of weapons and in riding elephants and horses. And in strength he was like unto Vishnu, in splendor like unto the maker of day, in gravity like unto the ocean, and in patience like unto the earth. And the monarch was loved by all his subjects, and he ruled his contented people virtuously. Section LXIX. Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, I desire to hear from thee about the birth and life of the high-souled Bharata and of the origin of Sakuntala. And, O Holy One, I also desire to hear all about Dushmanta, that lion among men, and how the hero obtained Sakuntala. It behoveth thee, O knower of truth and the first of all intelligent men, to tell me everything. Vaisampayana said, once on a time, King Dushmanta, of mighty arms, accompanied by a large force, went into the forest. And he took with him hundreds of horses and elephants. And the force that accompanied the monarch was of four kinds: foot soldiers, car warriors, cavalry, and elephants, heroes armed with swords and darts and bearing in their hands maces and stout clubs. And surrounded by hundreds of warriors with lances and spears in their hands, the monarch set out on his journey. And with the leonine roars of the warriors and the notes of conchs and sound of drums, with the rattle of the car wheels and shrieks of huge elephants, all mingling with the neighing of horses and the clash of weapons of the variously armed attendants in diverse dresses, there arose a deafening tumult while the king was on his march. And ladies gifted with great beauty beheld from the terraces of goodly mansions that heroic monarch, the achiever of his own fame. And the ladies saw that he was like unto Sacrith, the slayer of his enemies, capable of repulsing the elephants of foes, and they believed that he was the wielder of the thunderbolt himself. And they said, "This is that tiger among men who in battle is equal unto the Vassus in prowess, and in consequence of the might of whose arms no foes are left." And saying this, the ladies from affection gratified the monarch by showering flowers on his head. And followed by foremost of Brahmanas uttering blessings all the way, the king in great gladness of heart went towards the forest, eager for slaying the deer. And many Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, and Sudras followed the monarch, who was like unto the king of the celestials seated on the back of a proud elephant. The citizens and other classes followed the monarch for some distance, and they at last refrained from going farther at the command of the king. And the king, then, ascending his chariot of winged speed, filled the whole earth and even the heavens with the rattle of his chariot wheels. And, as he went, he saw around him a forest like unto Nandana itself, the celestial garden. And it was full of bilwa, arka, kadira, kateku, kapitha, wood apple, and daba trees. And he saw that the soil was uneven and scattered over with blocks of stone loosened from the neighboring cliffs. And he saw that it was without water and without human beings, and lay extended for many yahanas around. And it was full of deer, and lions, and other terrible beasts of prey. And King Dushmanta, that tiger among men, assisted by his followers and the warriors in his train, agitated that forest, killing numerous animals. And Dushmanta, piercing them with his arrows, felled numerous tigers that were within shooting range. And the king wounded many that were too distant, and killed many that were too near with his heavy sword. And that foremost of all wielders of darts killed many by hurling his darts at them. And well conversant with the art of whirling the mace, the king of immeasurable prowess fearlessly wandered over the forest. And the king roamed about, killing the denizens of the wilderness sometimes with his sword and sometimes by fast descending blows of his mace and heavy club. And when the forest was so disturbed by the king possessed of wonderful energy and by the warriors in his train delighting in warlike sports, the lions began to desert it in numbers. And herds of animals deprived of their leaders, from fear and anxiety began to utter loud cries as they fled in all directions. And fatigued with running, they began to fall down on all sides, unable to slake their thirst, having reached river beds that were perfectly dry. And many so falling were eaten up by the hungry warriors, while others were eaten up after having been duly quartered and roasted in fires lit up by them. And many strong elephants, maddened with the wounds they received and alarmed beyond measure, fled with trunks raised on high. And those wild elephants, betraying the usual symptoms of alarm by urinating and ejecting the contents of their stomachs and vomiting blood in large quantities, trampled, as they ran, many warriors to death. And that forest which had been full of animals, was by the king with his bands of followers and with sharp weapons soon made bereft of lions and tigers and other monarchs of the wilderness. Section LXX. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, then the king with his followers, having killed thousands of animals, entered another forest with a view to hunting. And attended by a single follower and fatigued with hunger and thirst, he came upon a large desert on the frontiers of the forest. And having crossed this herbless plain, the king came upon another forest full of the retreats of ascetics, beautiful to look at, delightful to the heart, and of cool agreeable breezes. And it was full of trees covered with blossoms, the soil overgrown with the softest and greenest grass, extending for many miles around, and echoing with the sweet notes of winged warblers. And it resounded with the notes of the male kokila and of the shrill sakala. And it was full of magnificent trees with outstretched branches forming a shady canopy overhead. And the bees hovered over flowery creepers all around. And there were beautiful bowers in every place. And there was no tree without fruits, none that had prickles on it, none that had no bees swarming around it. And the whole forest resounded with the melody of winged choristers. And it was decked with the flowers of every season. And there were refreshing shades of blossoming trees. Such was the delicious and excellent forest that the great bowman entered. And trees with branches beautified with clusters began to wave gently at the soft breeze and rain their flowers over the monarch's head. And the trees, clad in their flowery attires of all colors, with sweet-throated warblers perched on them, stood there in rows with heads touching the very heavens. And around their branches hanging down with the weight of flowers the bees tempted by the honey hummed in sweet chorus. And the king, endued with great energy, beholding innumerable spots covered with bowers of creepers decked with clusters of flowers, from excess of gladness became very much charmed. And the forest was exceedingly beautiful in consequence of those trees ranged around with flowery branches twining with each other and looking like so many rainbows for gaudiness and variety of color. And it was the resort of bands of Siddhas, of the Charanas, of tribes of Gandharvas, and Apsaras, of monkeys and kinnaras drunk with delight. Delicious, cool, and fragrant breezes, conveying the fragrance from fresh flowers, blew in all directions as if they had come there to sport with the trees. And the king saw that charming forest gifted with such beauties. And it was situated in a delta of the river, and the cluster of high trees standing together lent the place the look of a gaudy pole erected to Indra's honor. And in that forest which was the resort of ever-cheerful birds, the monarch saw a delightful and charming retreat of ascetics. And there were many trees around it, and the sacred fire was burning within it, and the king worshipped that unrivaled retreat. And he saw seated in it numerous Yotis, Balakilias and other munis. And it was adorned with many chambers containing sacrificial fire, and the flowers dropping from the trees had formed a thick carpet spread over the ground. And the spot looked exceedingly beautiful with those tall trees of large trunks. And by it flowed, O king, the sacred and transparent Malini with every species of waterfowl playing on its bosom. And that stream infused gladness into the hearts of the ascetics who resorted to it for purposes of ablutions. And the king beheld on its banks many innocent animals of the deer species and was exceedingly delighted with all that he saw. And the monarch, the course of whose chariot no foe could obstruct, then entered that asylum which was like unto the region of the celestials, being exceedingly beautiful all over. And the king saw that it stood on the margin of the sacred stream which was like the mother of all the living creatures residing in its vicinage. And on its banks sported the Chakravaka, and waves of milk-white foam. And there stood also the habitations of chimeras. And monkeys and bears too disported themselves in numbers. And there lived also holy ascetics engaged in studies and meditation. And there could be seen also elephants and tigers and snakes. And it was on the banks of that stream that the excellent asylum of the illustrious Kassapa stood, offering a home to numerous rishis of great ascetic merit. And beholding that river, and also the asylum washed by that river which was studded with many islands and which possessed banks of so much beauty, an asylum like unto that of Nara and Narayana laved by the water of the Ganga, the king resolved to enter into that sacred abode. And that bull among men, desirous of beholding the great rishi of ascetic wealth, the illustrious Kanwa of the race of Kassapa, one who possessed every virtue and who, for his splendor, could be gazed at with difficulty, approached that forest resounding with the notes of maddened peacocks and like unto the gardens of the great Gandharva, Chitraratha, himself. And halting his army consisting of flags, cavalry, infantry, and elephants at the entrance of the forest, the monarch spoke as follows: I shall go to behold the mighty ascetic of Kassapa's race, one who is without darkness. Stay ye here until my return. And the king, having entered that forest which was like unto Indra's garden, soon forgot his hunger and thirst. And he was pleased beyond measure. And the monarch, laying aside all signs of royalty, entered that excellent asylum with but his minister and his priest, desirous of beholding that rishi who was an indestructible mass of ascetic merit. And the king saw that the asylum was like unto the region of Brahman. Here were bees sweetly humming, and there were winged warblers of various species pouring forth their melodies. At particular places that tiger among men heard the chanting of Rik hymns by first-rate Brahmanas according to the just rules of intonation. Other places again were graced with Brahmanas acquainted with ordinances of sacrifice, of the Angas and of the hymns of the Yajurveda. Other places again were filled with the harmonious strains of Saman hymns sung by vow-observing rishis. At other places the asylum was decked with Brahmanas learned in the Atharvan Veda. At other places again Brahmanas learned in the Atharvan Veda, and those capable of chanting the sacrificial hymns of the Saman were reciting the Samhitas according to the just rules of voice. And at other places again, other Brahmanas well acquainted with the science of orthopy were reciting mantras of other kinds. In fact, that sacred retreat resounding with these holy notes was like unto a second region of Brahman himself. And there were many Brahmanas skilled in the art of making sacrificial platforms and in the rules of krama and sacrifices, conversant with logic and the mental sciences, and possessing a complete knowledge of the Vedas. There were those also who were fully acquainted with the meanings of all kinds of expressions, those that were conversant with all special rites, those also that were followers of moksha dharma, those again that were well skilled in establishing propositions, rejecting superfluous causes, and drawing right conclusions. There were those having a knowledge of the science of words, grammar, of prosody, of nirukta, those again that were conversant with astrology and learned in the properties of matter and the fruits of sacrificial rites, possessing a knowledge of causes and effects, capable of understanding the cries of birds and monkeys, well read in large treatises, and skilled in various sciences. And the king, as he proceeded, heard their voices. And the retreat resounded also with voice of men capable of charming human hearts. And the slayer of hostile heroes also saw around him learned Brahmanas of rigid vows engaged in japa, the repeated muttering of the names of gods, and homa, burnt offering. And the king wondered much on beholding the beautiful carpets which those Brahmanas offered to him respectfully. And that best of monarchs, at the sight of the rites with which those Brahmanas worshipped the gods and the great rishis, thought within himself that he was in the region of Brahman. And the more the king saw that auspicious and sacred asylum of Kassapa protected by that rishi's ascetic virtues and possessing all the requisites of a holy retreat, the more he desired to see it. In fact, he was not satisfied with his short survey. And the slayer of heroes at last, accompanied by his minister and his priest, entered that charming and sacred retreat of Kassapa, inhabited all around by rishis of ascetic wealth and exalted vows. Section LXXI. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, the monarch then, as he proceeded, left even his reduced retinue at the entrance of the hermitage. And entering quite alone he saw not the rishi Kanwa, of rigid vows. And not seeing the rishi and finding that the abode was empty, he called loudly, saying, What ho, who is here? And the sound of his voice was echoed back. And hearing the sound of his voice, there came out of the Rishi's abode a maiden beautiful as Shri herself but dressed as an ascetic's daughter. And the black-eyed fair one, as she saw King Dushmanta, bade him welcome and received him duly. And showing him due respect by the offer of a seat, water to wash his feet, and arghya, she inquired about the monarch's health and peace. And having worshipped the king and asked him about his health and peace, the maiden reverentially asked, "What must be done, O king?" "I await your commands." The king, duly worshipped by her, said unto that maiden of faultless features and sweet speech, "I have come to worship the highly blessed Rishi Kanwa. Tell me, O amiable and beautiful one, where has the illustrious Rishi gone?" Sakuntala then answered, "My illustrious father hath gone away from the asylum to fetch fruit. Wait but a moment and thou wilt see him when he arrives." Vaisampayana continued, the king not seeing the Rishi and addressed thus by her, beheld that the maiden was exceedingly beautiful and endued with perfect symmetry of shape. And he saw that she was of sweet smiles. And she stood decked with the beauty of her faultless features, her ascetic penances, and her humility. And he saw that she was in the bloom of youth. He therefore asked her, "Who art thou? And whose daughter, O beautiful one? Why hast thou come into the woods also? O handsome one, gifted with so much beauty and such virtues, whence hast thou come? O charming one, at the very first glance hast thou stolen my heart. I desire to learn all about thee, therefore tell me all." And thus addressed by the monarch, the maiden smilingly replied in these sweet words, "O Dushmanta, I am the daughter of the virtuous, wise, high-souled, and illustrious ascetic Kanwa." Dushmanta, hearing this, replied, "The universally worshipped and highly blessed Rishi is one whose seed hath been drawn up. Even Dharma himself might fall off from his course, but an ascetic of rigid vows can never fall off so. Therefore, O thou of the fairest complexion, how hast thou been born as his daughter? This great doubt of mine it behoveth thee to dispel." Sakuntala then replied, "Hear, O king, what I have learnt regarding all that befell me of old and how I became the daughter of the Muni. Once on a time, a Rishi came here and asked about my birth. All that the illustrious one, Kanwa, told him, hear now from me, O king. My father Kanwa, in answer to that Rishi's inquiries, said, Viswamitra, of old, having been engaged in the austerest penances, alarmed Indra, the chief of the celestials, who thought that the mighty ascetic of blazing energy would, by his penances, hurl him down from his high seat in heaven. Indra, thus alarmed, summoned Manaka and told her, Thou, O Manaka, art the first of celestial apsaras. Therefore, O amiable one, do me this service. Hear what I say. This great ascetic Viswamitra, like unto the sun in splendor, is engaged in the most severe of penances. My heart is trembling with fear. Indeed, O slender-waisted Manaka, this is thy business. Thou must see that Viswamitra of soul wrapped in contemplation and engaged in the austerest penances, who might hurl me down from my seat. Go and tempt him, and frustrating his continued austerities accomplish my good. Win him away from his penances, O beautiful one, by tempting him with thy beauty, youth, agreeableness, arts, smiles and speech. Hearing all this, Manaka replied, The illustrious Viswamitra is endued with great energy and is a mighty ascetic. He is very short-tempered too, as is known to thee. The energy, penances, and wrath of the high-souled one have made even thee anxious. Why should I not also be anxious? He it was who made even the illustrious Vasistha bear the pangs of witnessing the premature death of his children. He it was who, though at first born as Kshatriya, subsequently became a Brahmana by virtue of his ascetic penances. He it was who, for purposes of his ablutions, created a deep river that can with difficulty be forded, and which sacred stream is known by the name of the Kausiki. It was Viswamitra whose wife, in a season of distress, was maintained by the royal sage Matanga, Trisanku, who was then living under a father's curse as a hunter. It was Viswamitra who, on returning after the famine was over, changed the name of the stream having his asylum from Kausik into Para. It was Viswamitra who, in return for the services of Matanga, himself became the latter's priest for purposes of a sacrifice. The Lord of the Celestials himself went through fear to drink the Soma juice. It was Viswamitra who in anger created a second world and numerous stars beginning with Sravana. He it was who granted protection to Trisanku smarting under a superior's curse. I am frightened to approach him of such deeds. Tell me, O Indra, the means that should be adopted so that I may not be burnt by his wrath. He can burn the three worlds by his splendor, can, by a stamp of his foot, cause the earth to quake. He can sever the great Meru from the earth and hurl it to any distance. He can go round the 10 points of the earth in a moment. How can a woman like me even touch such a one full of ascetic virtues, like unto a blazing fire, and having his passions under complete control? His mouth is like unto a blazing fire, the pupils of his eyes are like the sun and the moon, his tongue is like unto Yama himself. How shall, O chief of the celestials, a woman like me even touch him? At the thought of his prowess Yama, Soma, the great Rishis, the Sadyas, the Viswas, Valakilyas, are terrified. How can a woman like me gaze at him without alarm? Commanded, however, by thee, O king of the celestials, I shall somehow approach that Rishi. But, O chief of the gods, devise thou some plan whereby, protected by thee, I may safely move about that Rishi. I think that when I begin to play before the Rishi, Marut the god of wind had better go there and rob me of my dress, and Manmata the god of love had also, at thy command, better help me then. Let also Marut on that occasion bear thither fragrance from the woods to tempt the Rishi. Saying this and seeing that all she had spoken about had been duly provided, Menaka went to the retreat of the great Kausika. Section LXXII. Sambhava Parva continued. Kanwa continued, and Sakrit thus addressed by her, then commanded him who could approach every place, viz. the god of the wind, to be present with Menaka at the time she would be before the rishi. And the timid and beautiful Menaka then entered the retreat and saw there Viswamitra who had burnt by his penances all his sins, and was engaged still in ascetic penances. And saluting the rishi, she then began to sport before him. And just at that time Marut robbed her of her garments that were white as the moon. And she thereupon ran, as if in great bashfulness, to catch hold of her attire, and as if she was exceedingly annoyed with Marut. And she did all this before the very eyes of Viswamitra, who was endued with energy like that of fire. And Viswamitra saw her in that attitude. And beholding her divested of her robes, he saw that she was a faultless feature. And that best of Munis saw that she was exceedingly handsome, with no marks of age on her person. And beholding her beauty and accomplishments, that bull amongst rishis was possessed with lust and made a sign that he desired her companionship. And he invited her accordingly, and she also of faultless features expressed her acceptance of the invitation. And they then passed a long time there in each other's company. And sporting with each other, just as they pleased, for a long time as if it were only a single day, the rishi begat on Menaka a daughter named Sakuntala. And Menaka, as her conception advanced, went to the banks of the river Malini, coursing along a valley of the charming mountains of Himavat. And there she gave birth to that daughter. And she left the newborn infant on the bank of that river and went away. And beholding the newborn infant lying in that forest destitute of human beings but abounding with lions and tigers, a number of vultures sat around to protect it from harm. No Rakshasas or carnivorous animals took its life. Those vultures protected the daughter of Menaka. I went there to perform my ablution and beheld the infant lying in the solitude of the wilderness surrounded by vultures. Bringing her hither, I have made her my daughter. Indeed, the maker of the body, the protector of life, the giver of food, are all three, fathers in their order, according to the scriptures. And because she was surrounded in the solitude of the wilderness by Sakunta's birds, therefore, hath she been named by me Sakuntala, bird protected. O Brahman, learn that it is thus that Sakuntala hath become my daughter. And the faultless Sakuntala also regards me as her father. This is what my father had said unto the rishi, having been asked by him. O king of men, it is thus that thou must know I am the daughter of Kanwa. And not knowing my real father, I regard Kanwa as my father. Thus have I told thee, O king, all that hath been heard by me regarding my birth. Section LXXIII. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana continued. King Dushmanta, hearing all this, said, Well spoken, O princess, this that thou hast said. Be my wife, O beautiful one. What shall I do for thee? Golden garlands, robes, ear-rings of gold, white and handsome pearls, from various countries, golden coins, finest carpets, I shall present thee this very day. Let the whole of my kingdom be thine today, O beautiful one. Come to me, O timid one, wedding me, O beautiful one, according to the Gandharva form. O thou of tapering thighs, of all forms of marriage, the Gandharva one is regarded as the first. Sakuntala, hearing this, said, O king, my father hath gone away from this asylum to bring fruit. Wait but a moment, he will bestow me on thee. Dushmanta replied, O beautiful and faultless one, I desire that thou shouldst be my life's companion. Know thou that I exist for thee, and my heart is in thee. One is certainly one's own friend, and one certainly may depend upon one's own self. Therefore, according to the ordinance, thou canst certainly bestow thyself. There are, in all, 8 kinds of marriages. These are Brahma, Deva, Arsha, Prajapatya, Asura, Gandharva, Rakshasa, and Pasacha, the 8th. Manu, the son of the self-create, hath spoken of the appropriateness of all these forms according to their order. Know, O faultless one, that the first 4 of these are fit for Brahmanas, and the first 6 for Kshatriyas. As regards kings, even the Rakshasa form is permissible. The Asura form is permitted to Vaisyas and Sudras. Of the first 5 the 3 are proper, the other 2 being improper. The Pasacha and the Asura forms should never be practiced. These are the institutes of religion, and one should act according to them. The Gandharva and the Rakshasa form are consistent with the practices of Kshatriyas. Thou needst not entertain the least fear. There is not the least doubt that either according to any one of these last mentioned forms, or according to a union of both of them, our wedding may take place. O thou of the fairest complexion, full of desire I am, thou also in a similar mood mayest become my wife according to the Gandharva form. Sakuntala, having listened to all this, answered, If this be the course sanctioned by religion, if, indeed, I am my own disposer, hear, O thou foremost one of Puru's race, what my terms are. Promise truly to give me what I ask thee. The son that shall be begotten on me shall become thy heir apparent. This, O king, is my fixed resolve. O Dushmanta, if thou grant this, then let our union take place. Vaisampayana continued. The monarch, without taking time to consider at once, told her, Let it be so. I will even take thee, O thou of agreeable smiles, with me to my capital. I tell thee truly, O beautiful one, thou deservest all this. And so saying, that first of kings wedded the handsome Sakuntala of graceful gait, and knew her as a husband. And assuring her duly, he went away, telling her repeatedly, I shall send thee, for thy escort, my troops of 4 classes. Indeed, it is even thus that I shall take thee to my capital, O thou of sweet smiles. Vaisampayana continued, O Janamejaya, having promised so unto her, the king went away. And as he retraced his way homewards, he began to think of Kasyapa. And he asked himself, what will the illustrious ascetic say, after he has known all? Thinking of this, he entered his capital. The moment the king had left, Kanwa arrived at his abode. But Sakuntala, from a sense of shame, did not go out to receive her father. That great ascetic, however, possessed of spiritual knowledge, knew all. Indeed, beholding everything with his spiritual eye, the illustrious one was pleased, and addressing her, said, Amiable one, what hath been done by thee today in secret, without having waited for me, viz., intercourse with a man hath not been destructive of thy virtue. Indeed, union according to the Gandharva form, of a wishful woman with a man of sensual desire, without mantras of any kind, it is said, is the best for Kshatriyas. That best of men, Dushmanta, is also high-souled and virtuous. Thou hast, O Sakuntala, accepted him for thy husband. The son that shall be born of thee shall be mighty and illustrious in this world. And he shall have sway over the sea. And the forces of that illustrious king of kings, while he goeth out against his foes, shall be irresistible. Sakuntala then approached her fatigued father and washed his feet. And taking down the load he had with him and placing the fruits in proper order, she told him, It behoveth thee to give thy grace to that Dushmanta whom I have accepted for my husband, as well as his ministers. Kanwa replied, O thou of the fairest complexion, for thy sake I am inclined to bless him. But receive from me, O blessed one, the boon that thou desirest. Vaisampayana continued, Sakuntala, thereupon, moved by desire of benefiting Dushmanta, asked the boon that the Kaurava monarchs might ever be virtuous and never deprived of their thrones. Section L Xlvi. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, after Dushmanta had left the asylum having made those promises unto Sakuntala, the latter of tapering thighs brought forth a boy of immeasurable energy. And when the child was 3 years old, he became in splendor like the blazing fire. And, O Janamejaya, he was possessed of beauty and magnanimity and every accomplishment. And that first of virtuous men, Kanwa, caused all the rites of religion to be performed in respect of that intelligent child thriving day by day. And the boy gifted with pearly teeth and shining locks, capable of slaying lions even then, with all auspicious signs on his palm, and broad expansive forehead, grew up in beauty and strength. And like unto a celestial child in splendor, he began to grow up rapidly. And when he was only 6 years of age, endued with great strength, he used to seize and bind to the trees that stood around that asylum, lions and tigers and bears and buffaloes and elephants. And he rode on some animals, and pursued others in sportive mood. The dwellers at Kanwa's asylum thereupon bestowed on him a name. And they said, because he seizes and restrains an animals however strong, let him be called Sarvadamana, the subduer of all. And it was thus that the boy came to be named Sarvadamana, endued as he was with prowess, and energy and strength. And the rishi, seeing the boy and marking also his extraordinary acts, told Sakuntala that the time had come for his installation as the heir apparent. And beholding the strength of the boy, Kanwa commanded his disciples, saying, Bear ye without delay this Sakuntala with her son from this abode to that of her husband, blessed with every auspicious sign. Women should not live long in the houses of their paternal or maternal relations. Such residence is destructive of their reputation, their good conduct, their virtue. Therefore, delay not in bearing her hence. These disciples of the rishi thereupon, saying, So be it, went towards the city named after an elephant, Hastinapura, with Sakuntala and her son ahead of them. And then she of fair eyebrows, taking with her that boy of celestial beauty, endued with eyes like lotus petals, left the woods where she had been first known by Dushmanta. And having approached the king, she with her boy resembling in splendor the rising sun was introduced to him. And the disciples of the rishi having introduced her, returned to the asylum. And Sakuntala having worshipped the king according to proper form, told him, This is thy son, O king. Let him be installed as thy heir apparent. O king, this child, like unto a celestial, hath been begotten by thee upon me. Therefore, O best of men, fulfill now the promise thou gavest me. Call to mind, O thou of great good fortune, the agreement thou hadst made on the occasion of thy union with me in the asylum of Kanwa. The king, hearing these her words, and remembering everything, said, I do not remember anything. Who art thou, O wicked woman in ascetic guise? I do not remember having any connection with thee in respect of Dharma, Kama and Arthas. Go or stay or do as thou pleasest. Thus addressed by him, the fair-colored innocent one became abashed. Grief deprived her of consciousness and she stood for a time like an wooden post. Soon, however, her eyes became red like copper and her lips began to quiver. And the glances she now and then cast upon the king seemed to burn the latter. Her rising wrath, however, and the fire of her asceticism, she extinguished within herself by an extraordinary effort. Collecting her thoughts in a moment, her heart possessed with sorrow and rage, she thus addressed her lord in anger, looking at him, knowing everything, O monarch, how canst thou, like an inferior person, thus say that thou knowest it not? Thy heart is a witness to the truth or falsehood of this matter. Therefore, speak truly without degrading thyself. He who being one thing representeth himself as another thing to others, is like a thief and a robber of his own self. Of what sin is he not capable? Thou thinkst that thou alone hast knowledge of thy deed. But knowest thou not that the ancient, omniscient one, Narayana, liveth in thy heart? He knoweth all thy sins, and thou sinnest in his presence. He that sins thinks that none observes him, but he is observed by the gods and by him also who is in every heart. The sun, the moon, the air, the fire, the earth, the sky, water, the heart, Yama, the day, the night, both twilights, and Dharma, all witness the acts of man. Yama, the son of Surya, takes no account of the sins of him with whom Narayana, the witness of all acts, is gratified. But he with whom Narayana is not gratified is tortured for his sins by Yama. Him who degrades himself by representing his self falsely, the gods never bless. Even his own soul blesseth him not. I am a wife devoted to my husband. I have come of my own accord, it is true. But do not, on that account, treat me with disrespect. I am thy wife and, therefore, deserve to be treated respectfully. Wilt thou not treat me so, because I have come hither of my own accord? In the presence of so many, why dost thou treat me like an ordinary woman? I am not certainly crying in the wilderness. Dost thou not hear me? But if thou refuse to do what I supplicate thee for, O Dushmanta, thy head this moment shall burst into 100 pieces. The husband entering the womb of the wife cometh out himself in the form of the sun. Therefore is the wife called by those cognizant of the Vedas as Jaya, she of whom one is born. And the son that is so born unto persons cognizant of the Vedic mantras rescueth the spirits of deceased ancestors. And because the son rescueth ancestors from the hell called Put, therefore, hath he been called by the self-create himself as Putrat the rescuer from Put. By a son one conquereth the three worlds. By a son's son, one enjoyeth eternity. And by a grandson's son great-grandfathers enjoy everlasting happiness. She is a true wife who is skillful in household affairs. She is a true wife who hath borne a son. She is a true wife whose heart is devoted to her Lord. She is a true wife who knoweth none but her Lord. The wife is a man's half. The wife is the first of friends. The wife is the root of religion, profit, and desire. The wife is the root of salvation. They that have wives can perform religious acts. They that have wives can lead domestic lives. They that have wives have the means to be cheerful. They that have wives can achieve good fortune. Sweet-speeched wives are friends on occasions of joy. They are as fathers on occasions of religious acts. They are mothers in sickness and woe. Even in the deep woods to a traveler a wife is his refreshment and solace. He that hath a wife is trusted by all. A wife, therefore, is one's most valuable possession. Even when the husband leaving this world goeth into the region of Yama, it is the devoted wife that accompanies him thither. A wife going before waits for the husband. But if the husband goeth before, the chaste wife followeth close. For these reasons, O king, doth marriage exist. The husband enjoyeth the companionship of the wife both in this and in the other worlds. It hath been said by learned persons that one is himself born as one son. Therefore, a man whose wife hath borne a son should look upon her as his mother. Beholding the face of the son one hath begotten upon his wife, like his own face in a mirror, one feeleth as happy as a virtuous man, on attaining to heaven. Men scorched by mental grief, or suffering under bodily pain, feel as much refreshed in the companionship of their wives as a perspiring person in a cool bath. No man, even in anger, should ever do anything that is disagreeable to his wife, seeing that happiness, joy, and virtue, everything dependeth on the wife. A wife is the sacred field in which the husband is born himself. Even rishis cannot create creatures without women. What happiness is greater than what the father feeleth when the son running towards him, even though his body be covered with dust, claspeth his limbs? Why then dost thou treat with indifference such a son, who hath approached thee himself and who casteth wistful glances towards thee for climbing thy knees? Even ants support their own eggs without destroying them, then why shouldst not thou, a virtuous man that thou art, support thy own child? The touch of soft sandal paste, of women, of cool water is not so agreeable as the touch of one's own infant son locked in one's embrace. As a Brahmana is the foremost of all bipeds, a cow, the foremost of all quadrupeds, a protector, the foremost of all superiors, so is the son the foremost of all objects, agreeable to the touch. Let therefore, this handsome child touch thee and embrace. There is nothing in the world more agreeable to the touch than the embrace of one's son. O chastiser of foes, I have brought forth this child, O monarch, capable of dispelling all thy sorrows after bearing him in my womb for full 3 years. O monarch of Puru's race, he shall perform 100 horse sacrifices. These were the words uttered from the sky when I was in the lying-in room. Indeed, men going into places remote from their homes take up their others' children on their laps and smelling their heads feel great happiness. Thou knowest that Brahmanas repeat these Vedic mantras on the occasion of the consecrating rites of infancy. Thou art born, O son, of my body. Thou art sprung from my heart. Thou art myself in the form of a son. Live thou to 100 years. My life dependeth on thee, and the continuation of my race also, on thee. Therefore, O son, live thou in great happiness to 100 years. He hath sprung from thy body, this second being from thee. Behold thyself in thy son, as thou beholdest thy image in the clear lake. As the sacrificial fire is kindled from the domestic one, so hath this one sprung from thee. Though one, thou hast divided thyself. In course of hunting while engaged in pursuit of the deer, I was approached by thee, O king, I who was then a virgin in the asylum of my father. Urvasi, Purvachiti, Sahahanya, Manaka, Viswaki and Gratachi, these are the 6 foremost of Apsaras. Amongst them again, Manaka, born of Brahman, is the first. Descending from heaven on earth, after intercourse with Viswamitra, she gave birth to me. That celebrated Aspara, Manaka, brought me forth in a valley of Himavat. Bereft of all affection, she went away, cast me there as if I were the child of somebody else. What sinful act did I do, of old, in some other life that I was in infancy cast away by my parents and at present am cast away by thee? Put away by thee, I am ready to return to the refuge of my father. But it behoveth thee not to cast off this child who is thy own. Hearing all this, Dushmanta said, O Sakuntala, I do not know having begot upon thee this son. Women generally speak untruths. Who shall believe in thy words? Destitute of all affection, the lewd Menaka is thy mother, and she cast thee off on the surface of the Himavad as one throws away, after the worship is over, the flowery offering made to his gods. Thy father too of the Kshatriya race, the lustful Viswamitra, who was tempted to become a Brahmana, is destitute of all affection. However, Menaka is the first of Apsaras, and thy father also is the first of Rishis. Being their daughter, why dost thou speak like a lewd woman? Thy words deserve no credit. Art thou not ashamed to speak them, especially before me? Go hence, O wicked woman in ascetic guise. Where is that foremost of great rishis, where also is that Aspara Menaka? And why art thou, low as thou art, in the guise of an ascetic? Thy child too is grown up. Thou sayest he is a boy, but he is very strong. How hath he soon grown like a sala sprout? Thy birth is low, thou speakst like a lewd woman. Lustfully hast thou been begotten by Menaka. O woman of ascetic guise, all that thou sayest is quite unknown to me. I don't know thee, go whithersoever thou choosest. Sakuntala replied, Thou seest, O king, the fault of others, even though they be as small as a mustard seed. But seeing, thou noticest not thy own faults even though they be as large as the Vilwa fruit. Menaka is one of the celestials. Indeed, Menaka is reckoned as the first of celestials. My birth therefore, O Dushmanta, is far higher than thine. Thou walkest upon the earth, O king, but I roam in the skies. Behold, the difference between ourselves is as that between the mountain, Meru and a mustard seed. Behold my power, O king. I can repair to the abodes of Indra, Kubera, Yama, and Varuna. The saying is true which I shall refer to before thee, O sinless one. I refer to it for example's sake and not from evil motives. Therefore, it behoveth thee to pardon me after thou hast heard it. An ugly person considereth himself handsomer than others until he sees his own face in the mirror. But when he sees his own ugly face in the mirror, it is then that he perceiveth the difference between himself and others. He that is really handsome never taunts anybody, and he that always talketh evil becometh a reviler. And as the swine always look for dirt and filth even when in the midst of a flower garden, so the wicked always choose the evil out of both evil and good that others speak. Those, however, that are wise, on hearing the speeches of others that are intermixed with both good and evil, accept only what is good, like geese that always extract the milk only, though it be mixed with water. As the honest are always pained at speaking ill of others, so do the wicked always rejoice in doing the same thing. As the honest always feel pleasure in showing regard for the old, so do the wicked always take delight in aspersing the good. The honest are happy in not seeking for faults. The wicked are happy in seeking for them. The wicked ever speak ill of the honest. But the latter never injure the former, even if injured by them. What can be more ridiculous in the world than that those that are themselves wicked should represent the really honest as wicked? When even atheists are annoyed with those that have fallen off from truth and virtue and who are really like angry snakes of virulent poison, what shall I say of myself who am nurtured in faith? He that having begotten a son who is his own image, regardeth him not never at aneth to the worlds he coveteth, and verily the gods destroy his good fortune and possessions. The Pitras have said that the son continueth the race and the line and is, therefore, the best of all religious acts. Therefore, none should abandon a son. Manu hath said that there are 5 kinds of sons, those begotten by oneself upon his own wife, those obtained as gift from others, those purchased for a consideration, those reared with affection and those begotten upon other women than upon wedded wives. Sons support the religion and achievements of men, enhance their joys, and rescue deceased ancestors from hell. It behoveth thee not therefore, O tiger among kings, to abandon a son who is such. Therefore, O Lord of earth, cherish thy own self, truth, and virtue by cherishing thy son. O lion among monarchs, it behoveth thee not to support this deceitfulness. The dedication of a tank is more meritorious than that of 100 wells. A sacrifice again is more meritorious than the dedication of a tank. A son is more meritorious than a sacrifice. Truth is more meritorious than 100 sons. 100 horse sacrifices had once been weighed against truth, and truth was found heavier than 100 horse sacrifices. O king, truth, I ween, may be equal to the study of the entire Vedas and ablutions in all holy places. There is no virtue equal to truth, there is nothing superior to truth. O king, truth is God himself, truth is the highest vow. Therefore, violate not thy pledge, O monarch. Let truth and thee be even united. If thou placest no credit in my words, I shall of my own accord go hence. Indeed, thy companionship should be avoided. But thou, O Dushmanta, that when thou art gone, this son of mine shall rule the whole earth surrounded by the 4 seas and adorned with the king of the mountains. Vaisampayana continued, Sakuntala having spoken to the monarch in this wise, left his presence. But as soon as she had left, a voice from the skies, emanating from no visible shape, thus spoke unto Dushmanta as he was sitting surrounded by his occasional and household priests, his preceptors, and ministers. And the voice said, The mother is but the sheath of flesh, the son sprung from the father is the father himself. Therefore, O Dushmanta, cherish thy son, and insult not Sakuntala. O best of men, the son, who is but a form of one's own seed, rescued ancestors from the region of Yama. Thou art the progenitor of this boy. Sakuntala hath spoken the truth. The husband, dividing his body in twain, is born of his wife in the form of son. Therefore, O Dushmanta, cherish, O monarch, thy son born of Sakuntala. To live by forsaking one's living son is a great misfortune. Therefore, O thou of Puru's race, cherish thy high-souled son born of Sakuntala, and because this child is to be cherished by thee even at our word, therefore shall this thy son be known by the name of Bharata, the cherished. Hearing these words uttered by the dwellers in heaven, the monarch of Puru's race became overjoyed and spoke as follows unto his priests and ministers, Hear ye these words uttered by the celestial messenger. I myself know this one to be my son. If I had taken him as my son on the strength of Sakuntala's words alone, my people would have been suspicious and my son also would not have been regarded as pure. Vaisampayana continued, The monarch then, O thou of Bharata's race, seeing the purity of his son established by the celestial messenger, became exceedingly glad. And he took unto him that son with joy. And the king with a joyous heart then performed all those rites upon his son that a father should perform. And the king smelt his child's head and hugged him with affection. And the Brahmanas began to utter blessings upon him and the bards began to applaud him. And the monarch then experienced the great delight that one feeleth at the touch of one's son. And Dushmanta also received Mat wife of his with affection. And he told her these words, pacifying her affectionately, O goddess, my union with thee took place privately, therefore I was thinking of how best to establish thy purity. My people might think that we were only lustfully united and not as husband and wife, and therefore, this son that I would have installed as my heir apparent would only have been regarded as one of impure birth. And dearest, every hard word thou hast uttered in thy anger, have I, O large-eyed one, forgiven thee. Thou art my dearest. And the royal sage Dushmanta, having spoken thus unto his dear wife, O Bharata, received her with offerings of perfume, food, and drink. And King Dushmanta, then, bestowed the name of Bharata upon his child, and formally installed him as the heir apparent. And the famous and bright wheels of Bharata's car, invincible and like unto the wheels of the cars owned by the gods, traversed every region, filling the whole earth with their rattle. And the son of Dushmanta reduced to subjection all kings of the earth. And he ruled virtuously and earned great fame. And that monarch of great prowess was known by the titles of Chakravarti and Sarvabhauma. And he performed many sacrifices like Sakra, the lord of the Maruts. And Kanwa was the chief priest at those sacrifices, in which the offerings to Brahmanas were great. And the blessed monarch performed both the cow and the horse sacrifices. And Bharata gave unto Kanwa 1,000 gold coins as the sacerdotal fee. It is that Bharata from whom have emanated so many mighty achievements. It is from him that the great race called after him and his race are called after him. And in the Bharata race there have been born many godlike monarchs gifted with great energy, and like unto Brahman himself. Their number cannot be counted. But, O thou of Bharata's race, I shall name the principal ones that were blessed with great good fortune, like unto the gods, and devoted to truth and honesty. Section LXXV. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, Hear now, as I recite the recorded genealogy, that is sacred and subservient to religion, profit and pleasure, of these royal sages Daksha, the lord of creation, Manu, the son of Surya, Bharata, Ruru, Puru, and Ajamita. I shall also recite to thee, O sinless one, the genealogies of the Yadavas and of the Kuras and of the king of the Bharata line. These genealogies are sacred and their recitation is a great act of propitiation. That recitation conferreth wealth, fame and long life. And, O sinless one, all these I have named shone in their splendor and were equal unto the great rishis in energy. Prachetas had 10 sons who were all devoted to asceticism and possessed of every virtue. They burnt, of old, by the fire emanating from their mouths, several plants of poisonous and innumerable large trees that had covered the earth and became a source of great discomfort to man. After these 10, was born another named Daksha. It is from Daksha that all creatures have sprung. Therefore is he, O tiger among men, called the grandfather. Born of Prachetas the Muni Daksha, uniting himself with Varini, begat 1,000 sons of rigid vows, all like himself. And Narada taught these 1,000 sons of Daksha the excellent philosophy of Sankhya as a means of salvation. And, O Janamejaya, the lord of creation, Daksha, then, from the desire of making creatures, begat 50 daughters. And he made all of them his appointed daughters, so that their sons might be his sons also for the performance of all religious acts. And he bestowed 10 of his daughters on Dharma, and 13 on Kassipa. And he gave 27 to Chandra, who are all engaged in indicating time. And Kassipa, the son of Marichi, begat on the eldest of his 13 wives, the Adityas, the celestials endued with great energy and having Indra as their head and also Vivaswat the son. And of Vivaswat was born the lord Yama. And Martanda, Vivaswat, also begat another son after Yama, gifted with great intelligence and named Manu. And Manu was endued with great wisdom and devoted to virtue. And he became the progenitor of a line. And in Manu's race have been born all human beings, who have therefore been called Manavas. And it is of Manu that all men including Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and others have been descended, and are, therefore, all called Manavas. Subsequently, O monarch, the Brahmanas became united with the Kshatriyas. And those sons of Manu that were Brahmanas devoted themselves to the study of the Vedas. And Manu begat 10 other children named Vana, Drishnu, Narashayan, Nabhaga, Ikshvaku, Karusha, Saryati, the 8th, a daughter named Ila, Prishadru the 9th, and Navagarishta, the 10th. They all betook themselves to the practices of Kshatriyas. Besides these, Manu had 50 other sons on earth. But we heard that they all perished, quarreling with one another. The learned Pururavas was born of Ila. It hath been heard by us that Ila was both his mother and father. And the great Pururavas had sway over 13 islands of the sea. And, though a human being, he was always surrounded by companions that were superhuman. And Pururavas intoxicated with power quarreled with the Brahmanas and little caring for their anger robbed them of their wealth. Beholding all this, Sanatkumara came from the region of Brahman and gave him good counsel, which was, however, rejected by Pururavas. Then the wrath of the great rishis was excited, and the avaricious monarch, who intoxicated with power, had lost his reason, was immediately destroyed by their curse. It was Pururavas who first brought from the region of the Gandharvas the 3 kinds of fire for sacrificial purpose. And he brought thence the Aspara Urvasi also. And the son of Ila begat upon Urvasi 6 sons who were called Ias, Demat, Amavasu and Dridhayas, and Vanayas, and Satyas. And it is said that Ias begat 4 sons named Nahusha, Vritasarman, Rajangaya, and Ananas, on the daughter of Swarvanu. And, O monarch, Nahusha, of all the sons of Ias, being gifted with great intelligence and prowess, ruled his extensive kingdom virtuously. And King Nahusha supported evenly the Pitras, the Celestials, the Rishis, the Brahmanas, the Gandharvas, the Nagas, the Rakshasas, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaisyas. And he suppressed all robber gangs with a mighty hand. But he made the Rishis pay tribute and carry him on their backs like beasts of burden. And, conquering the very gods by the beauty of his person, his asceticism, prowess, and energy, he ruled as if he were Indra himself. And Nahusha begat 6 sons, all of sweet speech, named Yati, Yayati, Sanyati, Ayati, and Dhruva. Yati, betaking himself to asceticism, became a muni like unto Brahman himself. Yayati became a monarch of great prowess and virtue. He ruled the whole earth, performed numerous sacrifices, worshipped the Pitras with great reverence, and always respected the gods. And he brought the whole world under his sway and was never vanquished by any foe. And the sons of Yayati were all great bowmen and resplendent with every virtue. And, O king, they were begotten upon his 2 wives, Devayani and Sarmishta. And of Devayani were born Yadu and Turvasu, and of Sarmishta were born Rahu, Anu, and Puru. And, O king, having virtuously ruled his subjects for a long time, Yayati was attacked with a hideous decrepitude, destroying his personal beauty. And attacked by decrepitude, the monarch then spoke, O Bharata, unto his sons Yadu and Puru and Turvasu and Rahu and Anu these words, Ye dear sons, I wish to be a young man and to gratify my appetites in the company of young women. Do you help me therein? To him his eldest son born of Devayani then said, What needest thou, O king? Dost thou want to have your youth? Yayati then told him, Accept thou my decrepitude, O son. With thy youth I would enjoy myself. During the time of a great sacrifice I have been cursed by the Muni Usanas, Sukra. O son, I would enjoy myself with your youth. Take any of you this my decrepitude, and with my body rule ye my kingdom. I would enjoy myself with a renovated body. Therefore, ye my sons, take ye my decrepitude. But none of his sons accepted his decrepitude. Then his youngest son Puru said unto him, O king, enjoy thyself thou once again with a renovated body and returned youth. I shall take thy decrepitude and at thy command rule thy kingdom. Thus addressed, the royal sage, by virtue of his ascetic power, then transferred his own decrepitude unto that high-souled son of his, and with the youth of Puru became a youth, while with the monarch sage Puru ruled his kingdom. Then, after 1,000 years had passed away, Yayati, that tiger among kings, remained as strong and powerful as a tiger. And he enjoyed for a long time the companionship of his 2 wives. And in the gardens of Chitraratha, the king of Gandharvas, the king also enjoyed the company of the Aspara Viswaki. But even after all this, the great king found his appetites unsatiated. The king then recollected the following truths contained in the Puranas, truly, one's appetites are never satiated by enjoyment. On the other hand, like sacrificial butter poured into the fire, they flame up with indulgence. Even if one enjoyed the whole earth with its wealth, diamonds and gold, animals and women, one may not yet be satiated. It is only when man doth not commit any sin in respect of any living thing, in thought, deed, or speech, it is then that he attaineth to purity as that of Brahman. When one feareth nothing, when one is not feared by anything, when one wisheth for nothing, when one injureth nothing, it is then that one attaineth to the purity of Brahman. The wise monarch, seeing this and satisfied that one's appetites are never satiated, set his mind at rest by meditation, and took back from his son his own decrepitude. And giving him back his youth though his own appetites were unsatiated, and installing him on the throne, he spoke unto Puru thus, Thou art my true heir, thou art my true son by whom my race is to be continued. In the world shall my race be known by thy name. Vaisampayana continued, Then that tiger among kings, having installed his son Puru on the throne, went away to the mount of Bhrigu for devoting himself to asceticism. And, having acquired great ascetic merit, after long years, he succumbed to the inevitable influence of time. He left his human body by observing the vow of fasting, and ascended to heaven with his wives. Section LXXVI. Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O thou of the wealth of asceticism, tell me how our ancestor Yayati, who is the 10th from Prajapati, obtained for a wife the unobtainable daughter of Sukra. I desire to hear of it in detail. Tell me also, one after another, of those monarchs separately who were the founders of dynasties. Vaisampayana said, the monarch Yayati was in splendor like unto Indra himself. I will tell thee, in reply to thy question, O Janamejaya, how both Sukra and Vrishaparvan bestowed upon him, with due rights, their daughters, and how his union took place with Devayani in special. Between the celestials and the Asuras there happened, of yore, frequent encounters for the sovereignty of the three worlds with everything in them. The gods, then, from desire of victory, installed the son of Angiras, Brahaspati, as their priest to conduct their sacrifices, while their opponents installed the learned Usanas as their priest for the same purpose. And between those two Brahmanas there are always much boastful rivalry. Those Danavas assembled for encounter that were slain by the gods were all revived by the seer Sukra by the power of his knowledge. And then starting again, into life these fought with the gods. The Asuras also slew on the field of battle many of the celestials. But the open-minded Brahaspati could not revive them, because he knew not the science called Sanjivani, revivification, which Kavya endued with great energy knew so well. And the gods were, therefore, in great sorrow. And the gods, in great anxiety of heart and entertaining a fear of the learned Usanas, then went to Kacha, the eldest son of Brahaspati, and spoke unto him, saying, We pay court to thee, be kind to us and do us a service that we regard as very great. That knowledge which resides in Sukra, that Brahmana of immeasurable prowess, make thy own as soon as thou canst. Thou shalt find the Brahmana in the court of Vrishaparvan. He always protects the Danavas but never us, their opponents. Thou art his junior in age, and, therefore, capable of adoring him with reverence. Thou canst also adore Devayani, the favorite daughter of that high-souled Brahmana. Indeed, thou alone art capable of propitiating them both by worship. There is none else that can do so. By gratifying Devayani with thy conduct, liberality, sweetness, and general behavior, thou canst certainly obtain that knowledge. The son of Brahaspati, thus solicited by the gods, said, So be it, and went to where Vrishaparvan was. Kacha, thus sent by the gods, soon went to the capital of the chief of the Asuras, and beheld Sukra there. And beholding him, he thus spoke unto him, Accept me as thy disciple. I am the grandson of the Rishi Angiras and son of Brahaspati. By name I am known as Kacha. Thyself becoming my preceptor, I shall practice the Brahmacharya mode of life for 1,000 years. Command me, then, O Brahmana. Sukra, hearing this, said, Welcome art thou, O Kacha. I accept thy speech. I will treat thee with regard, for by so doing, it is Brahaspati who will be regarded. Vaisampayana continued, Kacha commanded by Kavya or Usanas himself, called also Sukra, then said, So be it, and took the vow he had spoken of. And, O Bharata, accepting the vow of which he had spoken, at the proper time, Kacha began to conciliate regardfully both his preceptor and his daughter, Devayani. Indeed, he began to conciliate both. And as he was young, by singing and dancing and playing on different kinds of instruments, he soon gratified Devayani who was herself in her youth. And, O Bharata, with his whole heart set upon it, he soon gratified the maiden Devayani who was then a young lady, by presents of flowers and fruits and services rendered with alacrity. And Devayani also with her songs and sweetness of manners used, while they were alone, to attend upon that youth carrying out his vow. And when 500 years had thus passed of Kacha's vow, the Danavas came to learn his intention. And having no compunctions about slaying a Brahmana, they became very angry with him. And one day they saw Kacha in a solitary part of the woods engaged in tending his preceptor's kine. They then slew Kacha from their hatred of Brahaspati and also from their desire of protecting the knowledge of reviving the dead from being conveyed by him. And having slain him, they hacked his body into pieces and gave them to be devoured by jackals and wolves. And when twilight came, the kine returned to the fold without him who tended them. And Devayani, seeing the kine returned from the woods without Kacha, spoke, O Bharata, unto her father thus. Thy evening fire hath been kindled. The sun also hath set, O father. The kine have returned without him who tendeth them. Kacha is, indeed, not to be seen. It is plain that Kacha hath been lost, or is dead. Truly do I say, O father, that without him I will not live. Sukra hearing this said, I will revive him by saying, Let this one come. Then having recourse to the science of reviving the dead, Sukra summoned Kacha. And summoned by his preceptor, Kacha appeared before him in the gladness of heart carrying by virtue of his preceptor's science the bodies of the wolves that had devoured him. And asked about the cause of his delay, he thus spoke unto Bhargava's daughter. Indeed, asked by that Brahman's daughter, he told her, I was dead. O thou of pure manners, burdened with sacrificial fuel, kusa grass, and logs of wood, I was coming towards our abode. I sat under a banyan tree. The kine also, having been brought together, were staying under the shade of that same banyan tree. The Asuras, beholding me, asked, Who art thou? They heard me answer, I am the son of Brahaspati. As soon as I said this, the Danavas slew me, and hacking my body into pieces gave my remains to jackals and wolves. And they then went home in the gladness of heart. O amiable one, summoned by the high-souled Bhargava, I after all come before thee fully revived. On another occasion, asked by Devayani, the Brahmana Kacha went into the woods. And as he was roving about for gathering flowers, the Danavas beheld him. They again slew him, and pounding him into a paste they mixed it with the water of the ocean. Finding him long still in coming, the maiden again represented the matter unto her father. And summoned again by the Brahmana with the aid of his science, Kacha appearing before his preceptor and his daughter told everything as it had happened. Then slaying him for the third time and burning him and reducing him to ashes, the Asuras gave those ashes to the preceptor himself, mixing them with his wine. And Devayani again spoke unto her father, saying, O father, Kacha was sent to gather flowers. But he is not to be seen. It is plain he hath been lost, or has died. I tell thee truly, I would not live without him. Sukra hearing this said, O daughter, the son of Brahaspati hath gone to the region of the dead. Though revived by my science, he is thus slain frequently. What, indeed, am I to do? O Devayani, do not grieve, do not cry. One like thee should not grieve for one that is mortal. Thou art indeed, O daughter, in consequence of my prowess, worshipped thrice a day during the ordained hours of prayer, by Brahmanas, the gods with Indra, the Vasas, the Aswins, the Asuras, in fact, by the whole universe. It is impossible to keep him alive, for revived by me he is often killed. To all this Devayani replied, Why shall I, O father, not grieve for him whose grandfather is old Angiras himself, whose father is Brahaspati, who is an ocean of ascetic merit, who is the grandson of a rishi and the son also of a rishi. He himself too was a Brahmacharan and an ascetic, always wakeful and skilled in everything. I will starve and follow the way Kacha has gone. The handsome Kacha is, O father, dear unto me. Vaisampayana continued, the great Rishi Kavya, then, afflicted by what Devayani said, cried in anger, Certainly, the Asuras seek to injure me, for they slay my disciple that stayeth with me. These followers of Rudra desire to divest me of my character as a Brahmana by making me participate in their crime. Truly, this crime hath a terrible end. The crime of slaying a Brahmana would even burn Indra himself. Having said this, the Brahmana Sukra, urged by Devayani, began to summon Kacha who had entered the jaws of death. But Kacha, summoned with the aid of science, and afraid of the consequence to his preceptor, feebly replied from within the stomach of his preceptor, saying, Be graceful unto me, O Lord. I am Kacha that worshippeth thee. Behave unto me as to thy own dearly loved son. Vaisampayana continued, Sukra then said, By what path, O Brahmana, hast thou entered my stomach, where thou stayest now? Leaving the Asuras this very moment, I shall go over to the gods. Kacha replied, By thy grace, memory hath not failed me. Indeed, I do recollect everything as it hath happened. My ascetic virtues have not been destroyed. It is, therefore, that I am able to bear this almost insufferable pain. O Kavya, slain by the Asuras and burnt and reduced to powder, I have been given to thee with thy wine. When thou art present, O Brahmana, the art of the Asuras will never be able to vanquish the science of the Brahmana. Hearing this, Sukra said, O daughter, what good can I do to thee? It is with my death that Kacha can get his life back. O Devayani, Kacha is even within me. There is no other way of his coming out except by ripping open my stomach. Devayani replied, Both evils shall, like fire, burn me. The death of Kacha and thy own death are to me the same. The death of Kacha would deprive me of life. If thou also deest, I shall not be able to bear my life. Then Sukra said, O son of Brahaspati, thou art, indeed, one already crowned with success because Devayani regards thee so well. Accept the science that I will today impart to thee, if, indeed, thou be not Indra in the form of Kacha. None can come out of my stomach with life. A Brahmana, however, must not be slain, therefore, accept thou the science I impart to thee. Start thou into life as my son, and possessed of the knowledge received from me, and revived by me, take care that, on coming out of my body, thou dost act gracefully. Vaisampayana continued, receiving the science imparted to him by his preceptor the handsome Kacha, ripped open his stomach, came out like the moon at evening on the 15th day of the bright fortnight. And beholding the remains of his preceptor lying like a heap of penances, Kacha revived him, aided by the science he had learned. Worshipping him with regard, Kacha said unto his preceptor, Him who poureth the nectar of knowledge into one's ears, even as thou hast done into those of myself who was void of knowledge, him do I regard both as my father and mother. And remembering the immense service done by him, who is there so ungrateful as to injure him. They that, having acquired knowledge, injure their preceptor who is always an object of worship, who is the giver of knowledge, who is the most precious of all precious objects on earth, come to be hated on earth and finally go to the regions of the sinful. Vaisampayana continued, the learned Sukra, having been deceived while under the influence of wine, and remembering the total loss of consciousness that is one of the terrible consequences of drink, and beholding too before him the handsome Kacha whom he had, in a state of unconsciousness, drunk with his wine, then thought of effecting a reform in the manners of Brahmanas. The high-souled Usanas rising up from the ground in anger, then spoke as follows, the wretched Brahmana who from this day, unable to resist the temptation, will drink wine shall be regarded as having lost his virtue, shall be reckoned to have committed the sin of slaying a Brahmana, shall be hated both in this and the other worlds. I set this limit to the conduct and dignity of Brahmanas everywhere. Let the honest, let Brahmanas, let those with regard for their superiors, let the gods, let the three worlds, listen. Having said these words that high-souled one, that ascetic of ascetics, then summoning the Danavas who had been deprived by fate of the good sense, told them these words, Ye foolish Danavas, know ye that Kacha hath obtained his wishes. He will henceforth dwell with me. Having obtained the valuable knowledge of reviving the dead, that Brahmana hath, indeed, become in prowess even as Brahman himself. Vaisampayana continued, Bhargava having said so much cut short his speech. The Danavas were surprised and went away to their homes. Kacha, too, having stayed with his preceptor for a full 1,000 years, then prepared to return to the abode of the celestials, after having obtained his preceptor's permission. Section LXXVII. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, after the expiry of the period of his vow, Kacha, having obtained his preceptor's leave, was about to return to the abode of the celestials, when Devayani, addressing him, said, O grandson of the Rishi Angiras, in conduct and birth, in learning, asceticism and humility, thou shinest most brightly. As the celebrated Rishi Angiras is honored and regarded by my father, so is thy father regarded and worshipped by me. O thou of ascetic wealth, knowing this, listen to what I say. Recollect my conduct towards thee during the period of thy vow, Brahmacharya. Thy vow hath now been over. It behoveth thee to fix thy affections on me. O accept my hand duly with ordained mantras. Kacha replied, Thou art to me an object of regard and worship even as thy father. O thou of faultless features, thou art, indeed, even an object of greater reverence. Thou art dearer than life to the high-souled Bhargava, O amiable one. As the daughter of my preceptor, thou art ever worthy of my worship. As my preceptor Sukra, thy father, is ever deserving of my regards, so art thou, O Devayani. Therefore, it behoveth thee not to say so. Hearing this, Devayani replied, Thou too, art the son of my father's preceptor's son. Therefore, O best of Brahmanas, thou art deserving of my regards and worship. O Kacha, when thou wert slain so many times by the Asuras, recollect today the affection I showed for thee. Remembering my friendship and affection for thee, and, indeed, my devoted regard also, O virtuous one, it behoveth thee not to abandon me without any fault. I am truly devoted to thee. Hearing all this, Kacha said, O thou of virtuous vows, do not urge me into such a sinful course. O thou of fair eyebrows, be gracious unto me. Beautiful one, thou art to me an object of greater regard than my preceptor. Full of virtuous resolves, O large-eyed one, of face as handsome as moon, the place where thou hadst resided, viz. The body of Kavya, hath also been my abode. Thou art truly my sister. Amiable one, happily have we passed the days that we have been together. There is perfect good understanding between us. I ask thy leave to return to my abode. Therefore, bless me so that my journey may be safe. I must be remembered by thee, when thou recallest me in connection with topics of conversation, as one that hath not transgressed virtue. Always attend upon my preceptor with readiness and singleness of heart. To all this, Devani answered, solicited by me, if, indeed, thou truly refusest to make me thy wife, then, O Kacha, this thy knowledge shall not bear fruit. Hearing this, Kacha said, I have refused thy request only because thou art the daughter of my preceptor, and not because thou hast any fault. Nor hath my preceptor in this respect issued any command. Curse me if it please thee. I have told thee what the behavior should be of a rishi. I do not deserve thy curse, O Devayani. But yet thou hast cursed me. Thou hast acted under the influence of passion and not from a sense of duty. Therefore, thy desire will not be fulfilled. No rishi's son shall ever accept thy hand in marriage. Thou hast said that my knowledge shall not bear fruit. Let it be so, but in respect of him it shall bear fruit to whom I may impart it. Vaisampayana continued, that first of Brahmanas, Kacha, having said so unto Devayani, speedily wended his way unto the abode of the chief of the celestials. Beholding him arrived, the celestials with Indra ahead, having first worshipped him, spoke unto him as follows, Thou hast indeed performed an act of great benefit for us. Wonderful hath been thy achievement. Thy fame shall never die. Thou shalt be a sharer with us in sacrificial offerings. Section LXXVIII. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, the dwellers in heaven became exceedingly glad in welcoming Kacha who had mastered the wonderful science. And, O bull of Bharata's race, the celestials then learnt that science from Kacha and considered their object already achieved. And assembling together, they spoke unto him of 100 sacrifices, saying, The time hath come for showing prowess. Slay thy foes, O Purandara. And thus addressed, Magavit, then accompanied by the celestials, set out saying, So be it. But on his way he saw a number of damsels. These maidens were sporting in a lake in the gardens of the Gandharva Chitraratha. Changing himself into wind, he soon mixed up the garments of those maidens which they had laid on the bank. A little while after, the maidens, getting up from the water, approached their garments that had, indeed, got mixed up with one another. And it so happened that from the intermingled heap, the garments of Devayani were appropriated by Sarmishta, the daughter of Vrishaparvan, from ignorance that it was not hers. And, O king, thereupon, between them, Devayani and Sarmishta, then ensued a dispute. And Devayani said, O daughter of the Asura chief, why dost thou take my attire, being, as thou art my disciple? As thou art destitute of good behavior, nothing good can happen to thee. Sarmishta, however, quickly replied, Thy father occupying a lower seat, always adoreth with downcast looks, like a hired chanter of praises, my father, whether he sit at his ease or reclineth at full length. Thou art the daughter of one that chanteth the praises of others, of one that accepteth alms. I am the daughter of one who is adored, of one who bestoweth alms instead of ever accepting them. Beggar woman as thou art free to strike thy breast, to use ill words, to vow enmity to me, to give way to thy wrath. Acceptress of alms, thou weepst tears of anger in vain. If so minded, I can harm thee, but thou canst not. Thou desirest to quarrel, but know thou that I do not reckon thee as my equal. Vaisampayana continued. Hearing these words, Devayani became exceedingly angry and began to pull at her clothes. Sarmisha thereupon threw her into a well and went home. Indeed, the wicked Sarmisha, believing that Devayani was dead, bent her steps homewards in a wrathful mood. After Sarmisha had left, Yayati the son of Nahusha soon came to that spot. The king had been out a-hunting. The couple of horses harnessed to his car and the other single horse with him were all fatigued. And the king himself was thirsty. And the son of Nahusha saw a well that was by, and he saw that it was dry. But in looking down into it, he saw a maiden who in splendor was like a blazing fire. And beholding her within it, the blessed king addressed that girl of the complexion of the celestials, soothing her with sweet words. And he said, Who art thou, O fair one, of nails bright as burnished copper, and with ear-rings decked with celestial gems? Thou seemest to be greatly perturbed. Why dost thou weep in affliction? How, indeed, hast thou fallen into this well covered with creepers and long grass? And, O slender-waisted girl, answer me truly whose daughter thou art. Devayani then replied, I am the daughter of Sukra who brings back into life the Asuras slain by the gods. He doth not know what hath befallen me. This is my right hand, O king, with nails bright as burnished copper. Thou art well born, I ask thee to take and raise me up. I know thou art of good behavior, of great prowess, and of wide fame. It behoveth thee, therefore, to raise me from this well.